How's it going, everyone? Today we're going to be going through everything you need to know on how to learn and master Jax. And a Jax guide was actually the first video that I ever made, so of course we had to remake it bigger and better than ever, and make the best Jax guide ever created, going through the laning, the builds, even going through every single matchup that you're ever going to verse in top lane. And for those of you new to the channel, I was a pro player for 8 years and hit Challenger on 5 different servers. Now I've moved on to coaching full time, and Jax has been one of my best champions throughout my entire journey. So today I'm going to be going through everything and giving you all the secret sauce that you need to know. So let's get started. First up, we're going to be covering the runes in detail. Now, Jax has 2 pages to choose from: the grass page, which is your more standard default setup, and lethal tempo, which is better in certain volatile matchups. Now, I know there are other rune pages that Jax players like to take, but they're just all completely terrible, and I'm going to break down why at the end of the section, and we'll throw that propaganda out the window. So starting with the grass page, this is going to be your default if you're ever unsure what to take, and you should be taking this most of the time. I'd say maybe 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 of your games. And with this rune page, you're going to be taking Demolish every game. Of course, the other runes don't have value, and Demolish is just so good on this champion. Now for our secondary rune, you're going to be deciding between Second Wind and Bone Plating. Never take the scaling one, focus purely on getting good at your lane. So between Second Wind and Bone Plating, Second Wind you're going to be taking it around 90 or 95% of the time, because most Bone Plating matchups, lethal tempo is actually better. So for example, matchups like Garen, matchups like Darius, you will take Bone Plating, but you'll take lethal tempo as well. But there are some exceptions. So a matchup like Riven, you can take Grasp and Bone Plating, that's quite good. But if you're ever unsure which rune to take, default to Second Wind. Now for our rune down below, between Overgrowth and Unflinching, it depends on your matchup. So Unflinching is great into matchups with a lot of CC, slows and stuns, like Gragas or like Kennen. Of course, most champions that counter Jax have a lot of CC, so Unflinching does feel quite good, but Overgrowth is just your standard default scaling setup if you feel confident, or if your matchup doesn't really have that much CC. Now for our secondary runes, so you're going to be taking Cosmic Insight and Cookies every game with Grasp. I know some people like to take Mana Flow Band, but Jax, you only have mana problems if you're making mistakes in your lane. So don't put the training wheels on, just learn to ride the bike, fall off a few times, because Cosmic Insight is so good on this champion, as he's a really good champion in side lane and in team fights, so having TP up more often, really valuable, really good for your lane as well. Since Jax is such a resource-hungry champion, having TP shorter is definitely noticeable, and Flash is so OP on him as well for comboing, for team fighting, stuff like that. So having a lower cooldown Flash is great, and you do go cooldown boots a lot of the time, so you can get your Flash to a really low cooldown. Now for Cookies, they have been nerfed, of course, but I still recommend them over free boots. The reason for that is because you want to be doing well in your lane. Doing well in your lane is the best scaling, and Cookies give you the best chance of doing that. The extra max HP is noticeable as well, so I would just recommend going Cookies every time, unless you're just really confident, like you just always beat up, what's a good example, maybe like Malphite or something. You feel like you're going to be fine just scaling, you can take free boots, I guess, but I would just recommend Cookies. I feel like the extra laning power is still good, even though they have been nerfed. They went from being completely broken, and you're trolling if you're not taking them, to pretty strong, so you should still run them. Now for the shards down below, some Jaxes like to go Adaptive Force. I prefer attack speed, especially after the attack speed buff recently. It feels even better, but you can go double adaptive if you're already used to it. Now for scaling between flat HP, I'd recommend flat HP for the main reason: if you take scaling HP, you have the wrong mindset going into your lane. You want to take flat HP, you want to play quite aggressive early game, because the 1-3, 1-4 is very, very important on Jax, so you want to be giving yourself as much early game power as possible, especially if you play volatile lanes. But again, if you feel really confident, you're just going to farm against a Tahm Kench or something, you can take scaling. Now for our second rune page, Lethal Tempo. This is better in matchups where you are forced to fight them, you're forced to all in them, and you can't really take short trades very easily. So some good examples is Darius, where this Darius, if you take Grasp, you're not going to have enough threat to all in and kill him before he ramps up 5 stacks and chops your head off. So Lethal Tempo is going to be really good into that type of matchup. Another example would be a lane like Kayle or a lane like Yorick, where you want to be able to fight them for a long time. So I'm going to go through later on in this guide, of course, in the matchup section, what rune to take into every single lane. So if you ever in Champ Select and run into that, you can skip to it, but just keep in mind lethal tempo is better into volatile melee matchups that you fight a lot, like a Yone or a Yasuo, something like that. But Grasp is better into range tops, tanks, or anything that you can't really get a long trade into, like an Ambessa. Now, on this tree, you're going to be taking Presence of Mind or Triumph. I like Presence of Mind here, even though playing well is the best way to save mana. Having Presence of Mind allows you to play a bit more aggressive, and with lethal tempo you are playing very, very aggressive in lane, so Presence of Mind does feel really good with this setup. Now for the secondary rune, you'll take Alacrity every time. It's pretty hard, to be honest, to build attack speed on Jax, and he uses it so well, so Alacrity feels a lot better than Haste in my opinion. Now for our final rune, just go Last Stand every game. Jax is a great champion at fighting people to the death, low HP scraps, and Last Stand just gives you a lot more value. And for our secondary runes, you have two options. You can take Cosmic or Cookies. So this is going to be in matchups where you don't really feel bone plating that much. So for example, up against a Garen, bone plating will feel really good. But up against a matchup like a Yorick, for example, he can pop bone plating very easily. You don't really need to take it. You can greed the extra scaling of Cosmic Insight, extra early game power from Cookie. But if you're versus a lane that has really high value from bone plating, then you can just run that. And for our rune shots down below, exact same. Attack speed, especially on lethal tempo, even more important. Flat AD, and definitely go the flat HP. With the grass page, I would let it slide a little bit if you took scaling sometimes, but with lethal tempo, you need to run flat, as you're going to be fighting and bashing the head into the death, level 1, level 2, so you don't want to put yourself at a disadvantage. Now, other than these two rune pages, there are 3 more that I see people take that I just straight up don't agree with. So I'll quickly go through why, starting with the fleet page. So the reason you never want to take this, even if you do versus a really brutal range top counter pick, like a Teemo or an Aurora, this rune has just been nerfed into the ground. It's been nerfed way too many times, to the point where it's not worth taking anymore. You're better off having the extra early game trading power from Grasp, and the benefit of Grasp as well, is you can take the Cookies and Cosmic Insight as your secondary, which does feel quite good, especially if you can mismatch your flash. So say you flash onto Aurora, burn her flash, now you're going to have 1 extra minute where your flash is up and hers isn't. So that's going to be an avenue for you to punish her. Where with Fleet, you're going to have to take Resolve secondary anyway to have second win, so you're not going to have access to Cookies and Cosmic. Now for the next rune page, it's going to be Conqueror, and this one I've been asked about a lot, and the reason this rune is just terrible, there is no matchup you're going to play in where lethal tempo or grasp isn't better for your lane. So of course, short trading matchups like Malphite or like Gragas, you want grasp, and extended trading matchups like Yone or like Gwen, you need lethal tempo. And even though Conqueror might technically scale better in the late game, the best scaling in top lane is winning your lane. So take lethal tempo, dominate your lane, play for early solo kills, or take grasp and take nice short trades, proc demolish. Don't just take Conqueror and just get shit on in lane and rely on that little bit of extra scaling where it's not even that much more noticeable compared to lethal tempo anyway. You're better off taking a stronger laning setup. And for our final page, Phase Rush. So I'm going to go through this one in more detail in the items section because Phase Rush is normally combined with full AP, but I've seen the Phase Rush setup with AD as well into matchups like Olaf, matchups like Darius. Again, another set of training wheels. Take them off. We're big boys now. We do not need training wheels. So even if you play up against an Olaf, if you use good Q usage, you don't need Phase Rush. If you lead with movement, auto WE, even if he has his ulti, disengage with your Q well, you're not going to need to rely on Phase Rush, so you need to be playing better instead of relying on these runes that don't really have that much value in lane at all. Moving on to our summoner spells. Now, TP and Flash is going to be our default most of the time, but you can take Ignite Flash into certain volatile matchups. But a good rule of thumb to follow if you're taking Grasp is you should take TP every time, but with Lethal Tempo you have the option for Ignite. The reason for that is the matchups you do take lethal tempo in are very, very volatile. So for example, if you play up against a Gwen or an Olaf or a Darius, these champions have to fight you. They have to all in. They don't have a choice, especially the ones with 2 combat summoner spells like Darius or Olaf. They must fight you from close range or their champ's going to have low value. So Ignite will give you a lot of extra early game power, all in threat as well with lethal tempo, not just for lane, but for side laning as well. So Ignite has high value into those lanes. Where other lethal tempo matchups like Kayle, you don't need to take Ignite, you're going to win the all-in anyway. Even like Yorick, you can go either way. So it's not necessarily tempo always Ignite, but if you are taking tempo and you are into a really volatile lane, especially Olaf, Darius, other double combat summoner champions, Ignite value is really high. There's one more variable that I keep in mind before deciding between them, and it's mainly based around the enemy mid-jungle champions and my own. So for example, if I've got Kayn jungle, our good old friend Kayn that never ganks, mid's playing like a Lux or a Kassadin, something weak, and they've got Galio mid or Talon mid, something that's going to roam a lot. Their jungle is playing a ganking champion like Lee Sin or Rek'Sai, something like that, I'm probably going to go TP. I know they're going to have the advantage in terms of jungle mid pressure, so if top lane's really spicy, low HP, heavy trading, and I've got a Kayn just clearing raptors on cooldown, probably is not going to benefit me as much compared to if I had, equals pressure from my mid jungle, or if they were a strong early game as well. But if you don't want to overcomplicate it, just take your TP with Grasp every time, and take Ignite into these really volatile matchups, especially if they have double combat summoner spells as well. Next up, we're going to be covering the item build. So for our starting item between D-Shield and D-Blade, it really depends on your matchup. So D-Shield should be the default, this item's just a little bit OP, but D-Blade is great if you can get away with it, so if you feel real confident in your matchup, or just in lanes where you're forced all in them early game, especially combined with lethal tempo, so up against a Darius or a Garen, something like that, D-Blade can have quite high value. Now for your first buy, so if you take Grasp, you should try to get Sheen if you can. Don't miss your back time and have a bad lane state for it, of course, but if you can get Sheen Sheen on your first recall with Grasp, really solid. But if you can't afford it, or if you take lethal tempo, double longsword refill or one sword refill is the way to go. Now, there are also certain matches where Merc Trade Rush can be quite good, like a Gragas or a Kennen, but if you base with not enough money for it, as they're so expensive now compared to how they used to be, you can just go Sheen anyway. So other than that, you don't want to be rushing your boots for any reason at all. The reason for that, Tabby's not that good on Jax, to be honest. Your E blocks auto attacks anyway, so it's kind of counterintuitive. And cooldown boots Swifties, you don't really want to be delaying your Triforce for those. So typically you're only delaying Triforce for Merc Treads if they're really high value, like Gragas or Kennen, as it completely changes the trading aspect. Or maybe you're just versus a heavy AP comp with a lot of CC early game. Now, for your first item, Triforce every game no matter what. There's no exception to that. I have seen some experimenting with Ravenous Hydra first and with Iceborne first, but just ignore that. Of course, if they've got 5 AD champions, maybe Iceborne's fine, but that's not really realistic, so just go Triforce pretty much every single game that you play. And Ravenous Hydra, the reason I don't like this that much is it delays your spike way too much, and even though, yeah, when you got Ravenous Hydra and if you're up against a Malphite or a Gragas, sure, the extra sustain feels great, but you're not getting Ravenous Hydra till 11 or 12 minutes anyway, so it doesn't really matter that much. You're not going to get that sustain until lane phase is pretty much done anyway. And the big benefit of Triforce is if anything goes well for you, where if you have Triforce early, around 11 minutes, 12 minutes, the chance you win a skirmish or you win a 1v1 is better. If anything goes well, you can just completely annihilate the tower, get all those tower plates. Ravenous Hydra, you're not really going to have that option. It's mainly just for sustain. And even though it might feel better being able to eat golems and stuff like that, it's a bad habit to get into. Triforce is just the best. Now, for your second item, between Sundered Sky being your default, there are some alternatives. So just default to Sundered Sky, especially if they have a bunch of melee champions, or if you ever don't know what to build. But the exception to this rule is in games where you want to be winning through side lane. So normally you snowball, you know you can play for tier 2. If you can make progress 1v1, then tier mid items can be quite good. So the Stride Breaker is better into range chops if you feel like you can make progress, or range top jungle especially, can be quite good. And Titanic Hydra is good if you can just make progress versus melees. So let's say you're up against an Aatrox and you get fed, maybe get 2 or 3 solo kills, you know that you can play for tier 2 top, tier 2 bottom, stuff like that. Titanic Hydra will be a great pickup, but maybe in that very same game you go 0-0 or 0-1, just default to Sundered Sky, especially in games where there's going to be a lot of team fights, which is pretty much every game that you play, Sundered Sky is going to be your go-to. Now, for the resistances, so Frozen Heart is actually a really underrated great second item on Jax, especially if they have heavy auto attackers because it's so cheap and you get a lot of ability haste as well. Jax is a really good haste user, and if you verse champions like Tryndamere top, Yone, especially if they have an AD jungler, doesn't have to be the best game in the world for it, like a Tryndamere Graves, they might just have a Vi jungle and then attack damage top, like a Camille or something, then Frozen Heart can still be great for you. So I would just make sure that if you're ever verse heavy AD top jungle, especially if their mid lane's behind, Frozen Heart is in your options, I would say, to pick up, and don't just default to Sundered Sky every time if they have a heavy AD comp, especially if they have auto attackers. Now, for Kainic Rukun, this is something I've been cooking up a little bit recently, and I found a really high success into certain matchups, AP side laners. So there's not many of them, but champions like Vladimir or champions like Gwen, this is a game changer. Because if you don't build this, if you build, let's say, Sundered Sky, you're not getting any MR till 3 items, which is around 24-25 minutes. So that's pretty much the whole side laning portion of the game. Then it's Baron, then you're team fighting anyway. So being able to beat a Gwen or a Vladimir 1v1 in side lane and get pressure gives you so many options in the game. So even in games where I've been behind up against Gwen, as soon as I've got this Kainic Rukun spike, I feel like I can beat her in side lane. So definitely a great pickup, especially if they have AP top jungle as well. Now, for Blade of the Ruined King, one thing I want to make very clear, don't go Bork and Wit's End very often. This should be very rare. The best matchups for Bork is Dr.Mundo and Mordekaiser. Other than then, very rare. The only time I would build this when I'm not up against those champions is if there's just no way I can teamfight. If my team is behind, maybe I'm behind as well, and I need to be able to kill side lane, maybe like a Darius or something, then I will go Blade of the Ruined King. Never into tanks. It might seem counterintuitive, but Bork, you're going to beat the Gragas, you're going to beat the Malphite anyway, and if you're so far behind, you're not going to beat them with Bork anyway. So Bork is better into bruises, HP stacking bruises in games where you can't teamfight at all, or just into Dr.Mundo because that guy's a bit too beefy and he's always going to be side laning up against you. Now for Hullbreaker, this is quite good into matchups like Gragas and stuff like that. You don't really need MR, or maybe matchups like Rumble if you get a good lead, because they can't deal with the Hullbreaker and Heart's minion very often. Even Ornn as well is another good one, so you can just break the tower in front of them, and with Demolish and Hullbreaker, you pretty much just break the tier 2 tower in about 5-6 seconds, especially if it grubs as well. So definitely an underrated second item in games where you just know you can break expected second tower in front of them. And for boots, I would say stay away from Swifties after the nerf. You can, of course, if they've got Ashe, Olaf, stuff like that, but typically you're deciding between Mercury Treads and Ionian boots. So Merc Tread should be the one that you actually prioritize the highest. It actually doesn't mean that you build it the most. You build cooldown boosts the most, as Jax uses CDs really well, uses Flash and TP really well, and they're really, really cheap. But the reason you want to prioritize Merc Treads higher is not having Merc Treads is so much worse than not having cooldown boots in the wrong game. So if you verse Leona, Lissandra, a bunch of CC, you need to go Merc Treads even if your lane opponent is physical damage. Just make sure you don't build them until after your Triforce if your lane opponent's not AP. Now, for the rest of our build tip, actually I'll touch on tabbies as well. The reason you don't want to go tabbies very often is because your E blocks auto attack, so it's not really that efficient. So it's better for you to only go tabbies if it's extreme. If they have Tryndamere Graves or something crazy like that, full AD comp, maybe Yasuo mid, you versus an AD carry top like Quinn, sure, tabbies will be great in that situation, but other than the extreme cases, just default to cooldowns or Merc Treads. Now, moving on to the third and fourth item, rounding off our build, so Zhonya's. This is going to be in your 6-item build every single game, and I'd say 90% of the time, your third item. This item is just so good on Jax for team fighting. You really feel the second awakening on this champion, level 16 with Zhonya's, and even the mini spike of Seekers, really, really good as well. You can go in, make a lot of space, burn your cooldowns, Zhonya's, and get another rotation of Q and E up, so you can buy a lot of time in fights and get your full combo down without risk of just getting CC'd and blown up. So really, really valuable on him. Even in games where you're side laning, if you think about it, your side laning build, your second item, your third, by the time you get your third item, it's around Baron time anyway. Baron, Dragon Soul, so you don't really want to be building a hull break of third very often, unless, of course, you're going to be winning the game through side very, very clearly. So maybe up against that Ornn, that Gragas, you're really progressing the game, you feel like you can get inhibs, then a hull breaker will be a great pickup, or if you just feel strong enough and tanky enough, the enemy's low threat that you don't need Zhonya's, then you don't have to do it. But I would just say any close game, any losing game, and even in most winning games, just go Zhonya's most of the time. But I'll go through one by one when you wouldn't go it. So for Kanik Rukin, of course, if they have heavy AP threat. So maybe you went Sundered Sky second, but they have AP jungle mid. Of course, you need Kanik Rukin at that point. Now for Frozen Heart, this is just a third item alternative to Zhonya's, where you don't need Zhonya's, where you feel like you're not going to die, you're not going to get bursted, you feel so strong, or if you base with enough gold to one-shot a Frozen Heart, that's a really good condition as well, then it's a really good pickup. Now for Hull Breaker, like we just touched on, if you're playing up against Ornn, if you're playing up against Gragas or something like that, Kennen, and you just want to pull them away from the fight, especially if the champion you're versing is more useful than you in a team fight like a Kennen, then Hull Breaker can give you a ton of value. And for Bork Wits End, so these attack speed items, it's pretty much the reasoning I gave before. So Mundo into Mordekaiser can be quite good. Wits End, very, very rare. You typically want a tanky MR item if you need MR, and Wits End, it just doesn't feel like you're building anything. That's the problem with this item. If you want more 1v1 threat, you go Bork. If you want MR, just go Kanik Rukin. The reason I have it in here is because there will be some cases where you need tenacity and MR, and you're not really that scared of getting bursted. So for example, maybe up against like a Lissandra, and they're merely top jungle support, where you're going to be auto-attacking and bashing a lot, and you couldn't go Merc Treads for whatever reason. Maybe you needed tabbies in that game or something, or you just base with enough for cooldown boots, you can go Wits End. But to be honest, I don't want this on the list. The reason I have it here is just because you do build it some games. It's not a never, but stay away from these attack speed items. I don't want to see you building them very often. Now for the rest of our build, same reasoning as before. The only new item you'll see here is Riftmaker. This can be a good last item, especially if your team is lacking AP, as it gives you a bit of HP as well. Good in the extended trades, but you don't really want to be building full AP. Just as one AP item can be fine. And other than that, Titanic Hydra can be good later on when you already have a ton of HP from the rest of your build. Now to finish off, I want to be going through items that I don't recommend that you build. So these items that I just think are bad on Jax, it might be a 1 in 1,000, 1 in 500 game where you build them, but typically you should be staying away from them. Now, Iceborne Rush. So I briefly mentioned that, but this item is good into full AD comp, maybe. So if you verse Yasuo mid, Graves jungle, Tryndamere top, sure, you can slam Iceborne, of course it's going to be great, but I wouldn't build it unless that's the condition that's met. Now for Black Cleaver, so this item is bad. Jax is actually around half magic damage, maybe a little bit less, so it's not really that efficient of a buy. The item is just pretty weak in general as well, so even if you build versus a tank, this is not the item that you want to be building. And for Terminus, I wouldn't say this is necessarily bad, I'd just say it's more of a for fun item, so there's never going to be a game where you would build this over another item, but if you're just carrying the game, if you're really fit, it can be a little bit of fun. And for Randuin's, the reason I don't like this one is just because your E blocks auto attacks anyway, so it's very inefficient. It's better to build Frozen Heart. So whenever you would build Randuin's, Frozen Heart would be a better buy. Maybe an extreme case, like if you wish Yone, Yasuo, Tristana, same comp, whatever, anything like that, but that's never going to happen, so just default to Frozen over Randuin's. And for Shojin, So Spear of Shojin I have experimented with a lot, because in my head it should be good on Jax, it should feel good, but it just doesn't. There's no situation that I've come into where Shojin is a better buy than either Titanic Hydra or Zhonya's or a full tank item, so I'll just stay away from it. I don't really see a situation where this would be better than another alternative that I've mentioned in this guide. And for GA, the reason you don't want GA is because Zhonya's is just better, so there's no reason to prioritize Guardian Angel over Zhonya's. Now for Flicker Blades. This one I'm close to putting on the list, the reason I'm not, again, it's another for fun item. You're going to beat your opponent 1v1 inside, whether you have this item or not. It's really, really rare. It's going to be the difference maker. And if you verse a champion that you want to spend all your gold on purely combat power, again, like a Mundo or like a Mordekaiser, then Blade of Rune King is going to be better. So I don't see a situation where Flicker Blades is better than that. But again, it is pretty fun. So if you're really fed and you verse a heavy auto-attacking team, you can go this. But in a normal game, even if you do verse a heavy auto-attacking team, Frozen Heart will be better. And for the final one, full AP. So this is probably, unfortunately, one of the most common questions I get asked about Jax builds. When should you go full AP? Is full AP good? The short answer to that is no. You should never be building full AP on Jax. The reason for that is full AP Jax isn't really a build to make the champion stronger in certain situations. It's a build that really accentuates Boss's playstyle. So of course he's the one that started the full AP Jax, and the reason it's good on him, he does the proxying, the high tempo def recall, dying with good tempo, getting high farm per minute, dying inside, stuff like that. Full AP is better for that because the wave clear is significantly higher. If Boss build AD, he wouldn't be able to proxy, he wouldn't be able to clear the waves properly, so he needs to build it. That doesn't mean that you can't do it, of course, but just like you've never seen a Scion player in League, the Inting Scion that's done well, a full AD Scion, apart from Boss, you're never going to see an AP Jax that does well either, so I'll just recommend stay away from it, learn Jax the more standard way, and get really good at the default rune and item setups. Moving on to abilities, tips, and tricks, and starting with the passive, something to keep in mind for this one is before you take a big level 1 trade, in a really volatile matchup, or an all-in, anything like that, if you can stack up your passive on the wave before you go, that's going to make it more optimal, especially versus strong level 1 champions like Darius or Olaf, anything like that. If you can stack up your passive before you go, your chance of success will be way higher, especially with the lethal tempo setup. Now with the ability maxing, you're going to be maxing W every game, then E, then Q, and of course putting a point in ulti whenever you can. So moving on to the Q. So the Q is relatively straightforward, a point click jump, but there are some things you need to know about it, starting with the auto attack cancel. So if you auto attack just as the damage goes through, use your Q, you can cancel that auto animation and still get the damage off, which can be quite useful for autoing people and jumping away, or just maximizing your damage. You can also QW at the same time, and that's going to proc your W damage onto them, but it's not really recommended unless that's going to kill them, because Q auto W is going to be more damage, of course, getting in that extra auto attack. You can also QW and then Zhonya, and you'll get the full QW damage onto them, and Zhonya's in the air, and even though you'll be golden, you'll still get that damage down. They can be useful if you feel like you're going to die or get CC'd while you're in midair. That's the only real use for it, but other than that, don't waste your Zhonya unless you absolutely need to. Now, one thing to keep in mind for the Q is when you're chasing people, I see this mistake a lot, because E cooldown is higher than Q. But if you're chasing someone, that doesn't mean you just want to Q onto their head the second it comes back up. Sometimes you want to be holding onto your Q until your E is up, so syncing your Q and your E together, so that when you jump onto them, you can stun them, instead of just Q, auto, they walk away, or use a little movement speed booster, and then your E comes back up, but you don't have your Q. Try to sync your Q and your E together while chasing if possible. Now, another thing to keep in mind as well is if somebody is face checking you, or even if you can't, they're not face checking, but even if you can just lead with movement, you should always try to do that. If you can walk towards somebody, auto WE, and hold onto your Q until they dash away or flash away, anything like that, it's going to be a way more optimal use of the spell, because you never want to just Q out of the bush, they flash, and now you have nothing left to really chase them, or you have to waste your own flash. One thing to keep in mind as well, we mentioned it briefly, the auto attack cancel. You can also do that with W. So if you utilize your W, so W someone and then Q away, you can get a damage animation cancel, but still get that W damage going through. This one can be more useful versus champs like Set, champs like Darius, where you might want to whack them on the head with your W and Q away before you get pulled back in. Now for your W being an auto attack reset is one of the most important things about it, so make sure you're always auto cancelling while trading, taking towers, anything like that. You can also buff your W through crowd control. This is one of the most important parts of the skill by far, and if you can't do this, you're going to lose a lot of matchups that could be winnable, like Gragas or like Riven, where they're very CC and disengage reliant, their trade patterns, but if you can buff your W, especially with Sheen or with Grasp, you can imagine how much extra free damage you're going to be getting while you're CC'd. So make sure you're always trying to buffer W3CC if you can. Even if Camille's eating you off the wall, you can still get it. So make sure you do it as much as possible. The W also works on towers now. It's not a new change by any means, but just something to keep in mind. So while you're taking a tower, you just want to be using your W and your auto take reset as much as possible. You can also W flash. It's pretty rare that you want to do this. Maybe you're killing somebody and flashing ability at the same time or something, but it is something that you can do. And I'd say one of the most important things to keep in mind for this ability for lane is the trade pattern with it. Where a lot of Jaxes I see, they don't trade unless they're queuing. You don't need to queue every time. If your opponent goes up for a CS and you can use the W's a little bit of extra range to give them a whack on the head, especially when you have Sheen and the grass playstyle, that's going to be the best trade possible. Because you can imagine if Gragas walks up, hits a minion and you just whack him with W and click away and take no damage yourself, that's going to be a great trade. But if you queue onto his head, he's going to E you before you can get your W down, you're going to lose that trade. So it doesn't matter what matchup you're playing, if you can just whack them on the head with W as they go for a minion, it's a nice short trade, especially with Grasp or with Sheen. That's going to be a really good trade pattern for you to get the hang of, especially in the more volatile close matchups. Now for Jax's E, not only will this ability block auto attacks completely, you'll also take reduced damage from AoE abilities by 25%, so definitely worth using if you're getting bursted. It also works on Karthus ulti, which is quite a notable one, and you'd be surprised how many times that saved me, so make sure you put it up before you get Karthus ulted if you're low HP. Just be prepared to get missing ping by your teammates. I haven't watched this guide, as they might think you're trying to block it completely, but trust me, it's going to be worth surviving. Now, one tip I really like to teach for using your E in the early game for wave control, especially for trying to hard push, is using it more like a spirit bomb. So what I mean by that, if you just E just straight away without any help, it's going to do almost no damage if you just cast E on the wave. You need to be absorbing damage, auto attack, so 5 of them is the maximum you can do, but that includes minion aggro as well. So the way you can do it, if you're pushing towards your opponent and you want to hard push, jump on their head, auto attack them once, or Q or auto W, be more optimal. All the minions are going to turn onto you, they're going to attack you, you put your E up, you absorb that damage, you're going to do way more damage to your opponent, but also the wave as well. And even if your opponent does dodge your E, maybe they dash away or something, it's worth having that extra wave clear, because without it, it's very hard to hard push a wave in the early game. Also, in a situation where you're looking to flash and kill your opponent, I always recommend, if you're walking towards them with E, to flash E. The reason for that is QE is way easier for them to flash away or to dodge it, anything like that, but flash E is instant, so walk towards them, flash E, and then Q away, or Q follow after they flash is way better than queuing after them and having to flash follow, because Q is a point click, the range is extra long, and it's easier to react to. You can also use your E while recalling. The only situation this is useful is if you're killing, I'd say, golems or something like that. You can put up your E, press the B button, just as the small golems fall down, they're going to start hitting you. Your E will kill the golem, save you a couple extra seconds. Doesn't do a lot, but definitely gives you extra style points in the game. Now, for my favorite tip for his E, I like to call this one the slick back, where you want to be walking towards your opponent with your E up. Of course, your chest is out, you look scary. They're probably going to flash away or dodge it and be really prepared. So what you want to do is actually click backwards, turn your back, give them that fake sense of confidence, and then just flash or cube onto them after that to give them less time to react. Because if Jack's running towards you with E, very scary, but if his back is turned, their chance to react to what you want to do is going to be significantly lower. This is also important when you're tower diving them, something like that. You walk towards them with E, you click away, you pretend you're calling off the dive, and then you go back in. Way harder for them to react to it than someone that just tries to run you down with that anger in their eyes. And finally, your E, blocking crowd control. So this one is one of the most important parts of the ability, depending on the comp you're playing up against. So the E blocks crowd control if it's an auto attack based ability, not just CC, but the CC is the ones that you need to know about the most. Of course, auto attack enhancements like Camille Q, you can block that, but the CC ones are the big dogs. So I'll put them all on the screen now. But abilities like Twisted Fate W, Leona Q, really important that you utilize your E to block them. Even big abilities like Viego ulti that applies on-hit effects. I know it's not really, hard CC, anything like that. You can use it as well. And I'll have the big list on the screen, but there are some really important ones that you need to know about that I'll highlight. So make sure you're utilizing your E to block them whenever you can. And for Jax's ultimate, as soon as you level up this ability, you gain the passive on your third auto attacks every 3 autos. You'll gain bonus magic damage, but when you cast the ulti, that's going to change to every second. So make sure when you go for an extended trade or an all-in, you're ulting as early as possible to get as many Aatrox as you can. This is extremely important with the lethal tempo build as well, as you're going to be auto attacking very frequently. So try to R before you use your auto W, because that's 2 auto attacks that you're going to be missing if you ulti after it, and I see that mistake quite a lot. You can also use your ulti in midair, so you can Q and then R while you're in the air. It's going to hit them as you land, which can be quite important. So Q, you can cast your E in the air as well. So E2, so they're stunned in the air and hit ulti at the same time, and then auto W feels very smooth. You can also R and then flash, one of my personal favorites, so make sure you're utilizing that, because R has a brief cast time, so R flash is the best way to hit your opponent, catch them off guard. R flash auto W, quite a lot of burst as well, so you can catch a lot of people off guard with that. Now, the more people you hit with your ulti, the more armor and magic resist you gain, so make sure you're kind of using it like a budget Illaoi ulti, trying to hit as many people as possible. I mean, you should be doing that anyway, because it does damage, but just keep that in mind, the more people hit, the tankier you'll get, so always try to hold on to it in the fight, instead of using it on one guy, if you're going to see an opening later on, especially in these 5v5s. Moving on to combos, and for laning, Jax has 3 basic trading combos that you want to be utilizing. The first one being E, Q, E2, Auto W. This is your standard one when you feel like you have a power advantage over your opponent and they can't really fight you back. But if they can, notably up against champions like Darius or champs like Set, where they're going to pull you back in and beat you up, you want to be ending your turn CC by using E, then Q, then Auto W, and then stunning them and walking away. Don't greed that extra auto attack, or Darius is going to pull you right back in and chop your head off. Now, another way you can trade into these strong champions, or just in a matchup where maybe you're a little bit behind, is leading with movement. So walk towards your opponent, auto WE, and then auto E2, and then either Q away or use your Q to follow them if you feel like you're going to win the trade. But that's a really good trading pattern, especially up against champions with dashes or disengage abilities like Gragas. Lead with movement is going to be really important for you, even in favorable matchups. If you can get behind them when they go for a minion and use this combo, you can be very flexible with how you use your Q. Now, once you have your ulti, the comboing changes a little bit, of course. So EQR is going to be pretty standard for you. You can also use your E in the air, so EQRE is going to be really good for you because your R is going to hit them, they're going to be stunned, and then auto W, so you're going to get the R proc from just the 2 autos, the auto plus the W auto reset, so EQRE2, auto W, that's going to be a quick bursting combo, but the fastest one of all to catch them off guard is, of course, R flash auto W, or E, R flash E2 auto W. The reason you'd use the previous one is if you don't have your E up, or if they're low enough to one-shot, because when you put your E up, they're going to be in a defensive mindset, so R flash auto W can really catch them off guard. But if you have your E, or if you feel like you need a bit of extra damage, E, R flash E, auto WQ, and your Q can be to chase them down, or to Q away, maybe out of tower range, anything like that. These are going to be the most important combos at all once you have your ulti, so make sure you practice these ones in Training Tool. Moving on to the laning phase, and before I go through some examples, I'm going to be quickly going through the top 5 most important laning reference points for you to keep in mind. These are going to have the biggest impact by far across any lane that you play if you can add them to your skill set, so definitely worth prioritizing. So number 1, leading with movement. There are so many matchups that you play where if you just QE onto their head, they're either going to retrade onto you or destroy you, or you're not going to do enough meaningful damage, they might disengage you, or just sustain it back, and you're going to go in pretty quickly. But if you lead with movement, start fighting them, then use your E, keep fighting them, and then use your Q either to disengage or keep chasing them, the trades are going to be a lot more meaningful. This applies level 1 quite a lot as well, where you don't have your Q yet. Lead with movement, make them walk through you to get to the tower. Because if you just walk at them and use your E and hit them, they're going to click backwards and your trade is going to be very tiny. But if you go with movement first, walk behind them, start fighting them, then use your E, they have to run through you to get back to their tower, especially if you utilize the bushes or just walk behind when they go for a minion, your trade is going to be a lot more significant. Now, decisively crashing waves. This doesn't just apply for the first 4 waves, although that's probably the most important, but every time you're pushing towards your opponent, you need to ask yourself, am I slow pushing or hard pushing? And if the answer is hard pushing, try to utilize your E like a spirit bomb. Use the help from the minions, hit your opponent, Q auto W, put your E up, you're going to absorb that minion aggro, and the damage is going to be a lot more significant for your trade, but also for hitting the wave as well. So that's the best way for you to hard crash a wave, especially in the early game. Now, W procking. So a lot of Jaxes, when you take Grasp, when you take Sheen, they still play as if Jax was, back in the good old days where you could just jump on people's head and beat them down. But there are so many matchups that you're going to play now, Ambessa, Cassante, all these really balanced champions, where you need to be using your W just as kind of a one and done. So if you have your Grasp up, you get Sheen first recall, they walk up for a minion, you whack them with W and click away. They can't really force onto you. You still have your Q, you still have your E. And that's a really good way to just slowly chip away at your opponent without really taking that much damage yourself. Even if they hit you back with their Cassante Q. Of course, W with, 3 points W at that point with Sheen and Grasp, the damage is going to be a lot more significant. So just whacking them on the head with W, getting them lower and lower every time they go for a minion, and then going for a committal trade is going to be a viable strategy, especially against champions where, like Cassante or like Gragas, or if you jump on their head, they're just going to beat you up and just disengage you and CC you. So it's important that you utilize the skill set when you have that Grasp mentality. Now, the biggest thing I would say for the early game, especially in volatile auto-attack based matchups, like Gwen or like Fiora, is if your E is on cooldown, it needs to be a switch in your mind. You need to play completely different when your Jack's E is on cooldown. Now, it's a really long cooldown, so make sure you use it well, but if that spell is down, you need to be willing to give a couple of minions, because if you get a good trade, let's say on a Fiora, with your E, and then you walk away, and then you see a nice juicy 14 gold from a caster minion, walk up to hit it, she Q autos you, and like or Q auto E's just beats you up. Of course, when your E is back up, you're going to be too low to play the game. So when your E is down, you need to respect, unless of course your opponent's so low that you kill them anyway. You need to play differently and maintain high HP. Be willing to give minions when your E is down. And for our final reference point, don't be afraid to tank auto attacks. So what I mean by that is level 1, I would say every Jax I've seen below Master, maybe below Diamond, they will try to E the first auto. But if your opponent tries to bait it, fake auto, or even if they just hit you once and click away, you're not going to get the most value of it. For starters, you don't want to be full HP anyway. If you tank a damage, give your second win, give your Darn Shield a job to do, that's going to be a bit more optimal. But if you tank an auto or two, and just keep hitting them and they're running away, you might get free autos, or you might even be able to hold your E, which if you remember our previous reference point is really important. If your E is down, you have to respect. But let's say you're versing Gwen and you fight her, you auto attack her a few times, and she just runs back to town, you can hold your E, now she's kind of stuck, she doesn't really know what to do. If she walks up, you still have E, especially with lethal tempo, it's a bit scary as well. So holding onto your E in these volatile situations, until you know they're committed, until you know the trade will go for a long time, or until you're in a great position, is going to be a really important skill for you to learn. It's pretty unintuitive though, so it's really something that you're going to have to practice, and hopefully this guide, when I show some examples, will help you with that. But it's definitely something to keep in mind. Do not try to eat the first auto attack, hold on to it for the right moment. Moving on to our laning examples, in this game I'm playing up against a Dr.Mundo, and it's going to be a pretty common champion that you play up against. It's a pretty good pick into Jax, but also somebody recently has made Mundo's play rate go up. I don't want to name any names, but it's definitely an important matchup for you to know how to play it. So as you can see from my setup, Lethal Tempo, Ignite, Full Aggression. Ignite is definitely optional, but I really rate Lethal Tempo in this matchup, as you can't really take short trades against him. You need to be able to force all in, as you'll see in this game. So level 1, you can see I'm trying to put pressure onto him, but without your Q, there's not much you can do to stop him just sitting 2 screens away and chucking cleavers. So my goal is to slow push, build the biggest wave that I can, and hard crash my wave cleanly to make wave 4, ideally bounce back to the center, and then I can Q onto his head whenever I want. So just really gently, last hitting, you can see him, don't want to do anything too crazy. If I jumped onto him now and drew aggro from the casters, my wave would push a bit too quickly. So I'm just trying not to do that and just push it very slowly. There I only use my Q for the farm because he's not going to walk up anyway, so might as well not miss out on that CS, but if he was walking up, of course I would have taken it. Now here I'm going to be trying to Q onto him to use my E like that Spirit Bomb, absorb the minion aggro, but he's sitting under tower. So of course nothing I can really do about that. So I'm just going to hit it as fast as I can here. You can see bursting in the minions. Even if I miss one or two, that's kind of brutal. We don't want to see that. But even if you miss a couple, you need to get the wave in quickly. So here I went for a Demolish proc just because I can. I built the big wave. Nothing really happened early game. So I might as well take the free chunk there. And now I'm going to go ward because I'm planning to play aggressive on this bounce back. The reason I warded the dot push, not the try, is because I'm letting the wave come back in. So I thought it would be fine. So now here you can see, trying to keep my passive stacked up. Ideally I want to stack 2 waves at a time, so crash wave 4 and 5 together, but because he's chucking Qs I can hit the wave a little bit without having to worry about crashing this wave too much. And I'm blocking the cannon minion here, he ended up missing anyway, so not a big problem. So you can see early in this matchup it's pretty boring because it's in his control if he wants to let you beat him up or not, but I'm just playing the wave control aspect, trying to get good farm, and other than the couple that we missed, it has been pretty good so far. So you can see here I'm trying to fishing for a Q, and there I saw an angle where I could Q onto him without just being in tower range. So you need to be watching him closely and see if he mispositions out of tower range, like he just stepped forward there, so I can get a trade onto him, and then clicking away because your stun doesn't really stun him, it just procs passive, and now I turn and fight him. I got lethal tempo, I know I can take this, Q auto W ignite, and this is why ignite does feel quite good in this matchup, if you can take it so that you can burst him from low HP there. So if we go back to this, how did it go from nothing happening to killing him in about a second? So from our earlier trade and proccing Demolish, I did get a bit of his HP there, and the second he stood out from tower range, because I let my wave bounce back to the center from crashing it cleanly, I was able to get the chunk, bring it back here, and if he tries to give me this extended trade, I'm going to go for it. I was also able to bait his cleaver. You can see there my movement, pretend to go down, and then click up at the last second. I'm faking that I'm going down, so I can dodge his cleaver, and then because I've got lethal tempo, Jax passive, I know I'm going to win that extended trade, and we're able to pick up a nice kill, and then get our recall off, and we're in a really good position in this matchup. So on our way back to lane here, you can see I went Sheen as my first item. Normally with Lethal Tempo, I like Longsword stacking, but it is Mundo, it's kind of hard to beat him down. He's going to sit so far away, so Sheen is going to be fine, and I can just take little chunky trades with it, and then all in him later on. So here, if you touch this Kennen minion, I'm going to go, so big trade here. Just keep hitting him, keep rocking Lethal Tempo. You can see here, I'm feeling really confident. If you have Grasp, you can't play this way. Imagine I have Grasp here, I'm going to lose this trade, and he's going to be fine. I need Lethal Tempo, I need the ability to force this type of trade. And you can see here, burn his flash, and now he has to recall, because he knows I can just flash QW him whenever I want. So he can't play the game anymore, so I just trim the wave a little bit, and base on my freeze, and he loses a lot. So already it was 5 minutes into the game, getting a massive lead. If you can't get a lead before Mundo gets level 6, it does get pretty difficult, so make sure your early game wave control is on point in this matchup, and you're always looking for opportunities to punish him when you bounce your wave back and he leaves that tower range. Next up, we have the Ambessa matchup, and I'm actually going to showcase 2 examples of this one, because I verse it pretty frequently in Korean solo queue, and it's a pretty tough matchup. I definitely struggled with it at the beginning, but now I feel very, very confident in this one, so we're going to be going through a couple of examples. So pretty much in this matchup, level 1, you need to be very careful with your E. You can see I'm not using my E straight away, I'm waiting for her. She has the priority here, the agency. If she queues onto me, then I can E her. If she doesn't use her Q, I just need to chill. I just need to hit the wave, get prone, because if I use my E and she dodges it with her Q, then I'm really vulnerable with my E on cooldown. So you can see as soon as she Qs onto me, I use my E, and I'm able to get a good trade. You also want to be fishing for grasp auto attacks whenever you can. Not really Ambessa specific, but definitely in this matchup. So you can see if you touch this minion, I'm going to hit you, and get a nice little free grasp proc there. So now maintaining priority. The most important thing is crashing your wave cleanly. Here I'm going for a grass proc. Don't try that at home. I was very, very keen for it, but just out of range there. As long as I crash wave 3 cleanly though, it's not going to be a problem. So you can see I know her Q is up, so I'm chilling, waiting before my level 2 before I use my E. Pretty good thing as well to keep in mind, you don't want to desync your E, your second E with your Q very often. It's pretty rare unless they're forcing onto you. So here if I E'd, then I'd get level 2 and I'd have my Q available without E. Not really ideal. So I wait for my level 2 and now I go. So nice trade here, and then click away, ending that trade in CC so that she can't really retrade onto me. And now I can see I want to crash wave 3. So you want to be trying to kill the last minion of wave 2. As wave 3 arrives there, I had to dodge her Q2 first. But now I want to be bursting this wave. So of course it's time to use our E like a Spirit Bomb, auto, Q auto, absorb this minion aggro. And even though I'm going to miss my E on her here, you can see my E chunked a big chunk of this wave. Ideally I would have hit a little bit more, but that was my opportunity to go in. And now I can get this wave in very quickly, utilizing my empowered E. So get the wave in, get my ward down, and now my wave bounces back to here, so that I can actually trade onto it. Compared to if the wave was here, I wouldn't be able to do anything. So waiting for my grasp before I go in, dodge the Q2, and now it's go time. So with my E here, notice I'm not stunning straight away. Notice I'm not queuing straight away. I'm waiting for the shield to drop off. I use my E to block her shield bash auto attack and grasp proc passive. So I'm holding my E for the shield to drop off. Now it drops off, I get the bow plating, little auto there. And you can see I'm holding my W till the end because W has extra range. It will follow her dashing as well. So a lot of little details go into this matchup. So bait out the Q there, another one, just to hit you with 5 little details back to back. But it's really important for Ambessa and other matchups like Aatrox or Mordekaiser, baiting them to use their skill shots. So here I walk towards her, click backwards, baiting it out, pre-dodging it in advance, and now her Q is on cooldown, I can play the game. So you can see I'm slow pushing this wave. You normally stack 2 waves at a time and then pressure them when they walk up for fun. That's the pattern you want to follow. So if you touch this cannon minion, I'm going to go exactly what I do here. Big trade, absorb that minion aggro. You can see how much extra damage it does after absorbing the creeps. So I'm able to get prime and chunk her. Now, unfortunately, even though this looks good, her champion came out after us, so she doesn't have mana, and we do. So we have to recall. But as long as you get the first recall and TP back to lane, really important. Don't walk back to lane thinking, oh, I'll save it in case I get chunked again. You need to maintain control. Now she's in a really weird spot. If she bases, she's going to lose 3 minions of XP. But if she stays, she can't really pressure me, which is really, really good for me. The reason I'm not going in right now, I'm kind of waiting for her to use an ability. So now that her Q is down to Q2, now it's time to go. If you touch this minion, I'm going to go. You can see always guarding minions, but I don't want to use my E. It's really important that if you know they're going to dash away with like a Gwen E or a Fiora Q, anything like that, just Q auto W them, hold on to your E, and then use your E with your next Q when their dash is on cooldown. Most champions' dashing ability will be longer cooldown than Jax's Q, and Bess is a little bit of an exception because she has 3 dashing spells, but same thing applies. If you're going to Q E and she dashes away and dodges it, you might as well just not use your E, hold it for the second rotation of trading. So there she had to stop her recall. I really didn't want her to base here. So I used my E and pretended like I was going to Q or flash onto it, so she had to stop base, and then I just hard shoved this wave here. So because my wave was so big and she was so low, I felt confident to go for a tower plate. I could have played a little bit better, I could just Q away now, but a little bit greedy for an extra hit for no reason. So pull the wave back out here. So you can see I'm trying to get a free W of Grass Proccin just as the tower shoots. I'm going to hit her, so boom and Q out, so I don't take a tower shot, but I can get a little bit of extra damage onto her. So now I'm kind of thinking I want to get this wave in really quickly because it's stuck inside of her tower. I really don't like that. So I'm trying to hard shove it, but then she used an ability. She chunked the wave a bit. So now I can just chill. This wave will bounce back to me. So that's exactly what I let it do. But now I need to rush level 6. That's why I W this minion. I need 6 before she does. If she got 6 before me, I'd be in a tricky spot. So I had to match that level 6. And now it's time to go. So QE ulti. Ulti before auto W, so I get the 2-hit passive, dodge her Q2, and now flash for the kill. So a lot of little details went into this matchup, definitely a tricky one, but hopefully this gave you a good example of how to play out the trades and the wave control in the early lane. So I'll show one more example of this matchup into a slightly worse opponent who played the level 1 better. So a bit of different learning from this one. So you can see level 1, she actually queued but hopped in a good direction. So I'm not going to be able to use my E, which is perfectly fine. It's better to not use your E than to use it in a bad way. Of course, that sounds very straightforward, the Korean advice, but a lot of people make that mistake. You feel pressure to use E just because they take damage, but I can give my D shield in second wind a job to do, take that little bit of poke and be perfectly fine. So I'm holding on to E here. Just kind of chilling and waiting for my level 2 so I can abuse my 2 vs 1 spike. Now in this matchup, actually, this was before the one you just watched, so my wave control is a little bit worse, trying to do it better every time. But you can see here my cleanly crashed wave was not as clean as I would have liked. I still got a level 2 vs 1 trade, so it's not the end of the world. If your wave control is not perfect but the trades are good, it's normally not too bad, but it's still pretty ugly. I'd rather cleanly crash wave 3 in this matchup. But still going to be fine. So I just need to get this wave in, kill the melees, and then let the casters bounce back to me, and then take a trade if she walks up. So we can see here, I held onto my E until she overdashed, and then I used it, got an extra trade. So just keep hitting her, and now I try to get the extra W, use that extra range if she walks up. Never mind, just letting the wave come back into the center. So the thing about this matchup as well, you don't want to let your wave come back to your side of the tower as if you're like an Olaf or something. The reason for that is because you want to maintain prio and maintain the XP and minion advantage. So you'll see really shortly in these trades how important that can be. So I trade onto her here just to burn her spells, go for an E trade, nice little chunk, and then she retrades onto me. But I bring her back to my minions. You can see I've got the XP lead, I've got the minion wave advantage. So if she goes on to me here, she's taking so much damage from this cannon wave, where if I try to let the wave come back to my tower for some reason to run her down, which is not realistic for Ambessa, too many dashes and poke, she would have minion wave advantage and XP lead, should be able to crash the wave very easily. So I'm maintaining prio, trying to cleanly crash waves and have a bounce back, and then force a trade every time I have an XP advantage. You can see they're level 4 vs 3, and able to collect this nice kill. For our next matchup, we have Darius, and this is definitely one of the most volatile matchups you're going to play in, and I really recommend and love the setup that I'm running in this game, in this matchup. So Lethal Tempo, Bone Plating, and Ignite is really good in this lane because the best defense is a good offense. You need to be able to fight them out. Where if you have Grasp and TP, your trades are so little, your all-in is so weak, you don't really have the combat power needed to fight them early game. You'll see really shortly why I rate this setup so highly. So level 1 straight away, I'm hitting the wave to get prime, but also to stack up my Jax passive. Versus a strong champion like Darius, even the little thing of having your passive stacked up ahead of time can make a big difference. Here I tried to walk inside the queue, but he spaced it well, walled the bush, and E his first auto attack. So now I keep hitting him and click backwards because I have a bleed stack on me, but now I turn again and just keep fighting him out. So you can see him, I'm willing to fight him level 1 because it's really hard for him to stack his Q. 2 stack is passive level 1 with only 1 ability, so you need to make it a bit volatile early. So this is exactly what I do. I'm always moving between autos, trying to dodge inside of his Q range, do that here, and you can see already off to a really good start. I've secured prio, I've won the trade, and we're in a really good position here, but because I made it volatile and pissed off the wave, I do have to crash wave 2, which is not the end of the world. Normally in this situation, I would try to bring a minion up here, try to draw that aggro, but versus Darius, I'm really scared of getting hooked on the tower, so I just let it come in naturally. So here I want to get level 3 before him, and this is where I made my big mistake in the early lane. I actually missed an XP level 1, and I didn't notice it in the moment because the wave was so weird looking. So here I killed the second minion, which normally gets you level 3, and jumped on his head. I'm pretty sure I even hit W here, but it didn't go off because of course I'm not level 3. So that was a mistake there, but we're still able to get a decent trade here. So this is where the Ignite comes into play. Without Ignite, I can't win this. I can hold my ground, and I'm able to trade 1-for-1 here. Not the prettiest 1-for-1 in the world, but you can see the waves coming back towards me. He doesn't have TP. He's going to lose way more than me. And if I played the level 3 better, if I realized I missed the XP, I could have gone a 1-for-0, or just let the wave come back in and kill him with Lee Sin, which is what happens after this point. So make sure when you play against Darius, the most common mistake I see is playing too passively. You need to be willing to fight him, get pro, and make it volatile level 1, or you're just going to lose. For our next matchup, we have Gragas, which is a really common counter pick you're going to run into. And this was my most recent VOD. It did start a little bit late the recording, but you didn't really miss much. Now, some of you'll notice in this lane is I've actually started W, because you want to be buffering your W through his E. If you use E and walk towards him, he's going to knock you back, but with W, you can buffer it through. So you'll see really shortly what I mean by that, where here, if he E's me as I go for this trade, really, maybe on the next one, if he E's me as I go for it, my W will still hit him. So guarding the minion here. So even if he E's me right now, my W would still proc, I'd still get my grasp, but he E'd me late because he tried to space it first. So he knows my W can buffer, which is why he held his E. But typically W start is better in this matchup so that you can buffer it. That's why you missed in the level 1 trade. But of course, as usual, we need to be crashing wave 3 as quickly as we can, or wave 2 depending on the matchup. So here I'm pushing it as quickly as I can. And then I'm going to Q, even though he's going to E me, I still want to use my E to push the wave in, and I'm able to get a nice clean crash. So now we bounce the wave back towards us. So the early point of this matchup is actually not that tricky. The main thing is making your Darn Shield and second wind work overtime, and just make sure you take short trades and burn out his mana pool. So we can see here a little trick as well for your grasp. I tanked this minion 1 auto, just one little auto there, to get my grasp stacking, get the second one, and now it's time for a W buffer, but he made a mistake here. So we had to hit him with the little slick back here. You can see pretend to walk away and they Q onto him last second. So he wasn't really ready to E my E because I gave him that little slick back turn around there. So playing it slow, going for a W, but you can see he's playing around it well. This is not a bad player. He knows that if he walks up and I get a free W, it's not going to be great for him. And then here, he's got a minion and XP advantage, so I just clicked away. But you can see we're already off to a really good start. He's low mana, half HP. I still got my potion, wave's in a great state. So mainly focusing on the wave control and buffering your W, as you can see here. So E his W. A little trick as well, if he doesn't EU straight away, you want to pop your E early. He should stun me right now, but because he didn't, I insta-E'd as quickly as I could have, so that I can get that free, the damage and the stun, extra auto as well, and then Q to follow him, and then here I pretended like I was going to flash auto him, to burn his flash, and now we're already off to a really, really good start. So we hard push this wave. I'm not going to go through the whole matchup. You can see it's already pretty stable. After this, it gets tricky. Your main goal is to maintain pro, use W to buffer your grasp through his E, burn out his mana pool, and then get Sheen on your first recall. If you can do that, you're going to be perfectly fine in this lane. And for our final matchup, we have Cassante, and try not to get flashbanged by the map. This VOD was on a previous patch, but it's still going to be the same thing. In fact, Jax is even stronger at the moment. So the main thing about this matchup is the way you use your W and baiting to him to use his Q. So baiting Qs, dodging it, and trying to get free W procs onto him, especially when you have your Sheen. So you can see a big E absorbing all that minion aggro because I really want to get prio, and then taking the grass proc there. So you want to auto him, absorb that minion aggro, use the spirit bomb, and I wanted to guarantee prio here no matter what. So exactly what we did here. So hit all 3 casters and him. So off to a good start, and then turning for our grass proc. So playing it quite slow here. The hard thing about this matchup is once he has his W, you can pretty much never Q onto his head with E. You want to lead with movement, E him, and then your W, and then you Q away. That's going to be a future trading pattern. But early game, you just want to get prio and make sure your E is hitting him in the wave so that you can crash cleanly. So you can see here slowing down my push, just trying to get it in cleanly without missing CS, and now the next wave will bounce back towards me. So because my E hit the wave, I think twice, I had to go for a wave 2 crash, which is not the end of the world here. So big trade here, Q follow his E, level 2 he probably won't go W, if he does I can Q away, if he goes E I hold my Q to Q follow him. So you can see you start with movement, use your E, and then use your Q to either follow him or Q away depending on the situation. So trying to get my level 3 here. Really slowly, level 3, and then W him for just a grass proc. And this is where, when he gets his 3, this is where the matchup gets a bit tricky. So pretty much, just to simplify it, you want to be bonking him on the head with W whenever you can, and then use E to disengage like that. So walk towards him with your movement, put your E up, and then you Q to dodge his W. You should never tank that W, you just take way too much damage. He can W, auto Q, auto you, and you just get annihilated. So it's better just to Q away from it, unless he's low enough for the kill or anything like that. So here we can see, playing it a bit patiently, get my minion, I'm going to go for a W proc probably pretty shortly. But because he's going to get level 4 here, it's not going to be anytime soon. So dodge the Q. You can see I don't want to take a big trade here in this wave, especially on weak side, and even double, especially with a must-eat. I'm not going to get any ganks anytime soon. So let the wave come in, just playing it quite patiently, because I didn't know if Lee Sin was top or bottom until right now, but at this point he's level 4 with a big wave, so I didn't want to make it too volatile. So just here, we're going to go for a trade, because I don't want to give the cannon minion, of course. So walk up with E, auto W, and try to Q away. He learned, and I made a mistake there. He W'd a lot faster, so it didn't end up going too well. But it's not the end of the world. So the wave comes in, we farm it, we hard shove this next wave, and then base and TP. So another matchup, pretty much any matchup where you take Grasp, if you can get Sheen on your first recall, very, very good, but especially up against melee matchups like this one, where you can't really take extended trades very easily. So we don't want to look at this TP. He could have pushed me into tower. I think he mistimed it. So lucky us there. Normally you TP in a safe location, like my ward would have been fine. So here you can see, waiting for my grasp, and this is the main point I wanted to showcase with this lane. The way I'm utilizing W and Sheen, so waiting for his shield to drop off, hit him with a slick back there as well, click backwards and then Q onto him. And now I'm going to be looking to hit fish for W's here, so boom, little W with grasp and Sheen, click away. And then every time my W is up, if you touch this minion, you can see going for it, and then Q away to dodge this Q3. So you can see the intention there. So E, click onto him, auto W, click away. You can see the mindset, these nice little short trades ending in CC, or just a W proc and walk away. Trying to chip away at him, get him lower and lower before I go for my all-in. So here as well, going to go for another one now that my E is going to be back up shortly. So really soon here, dodge out his Q, and then go in for the kill. So go for a W proc, click backwards. You can see now he's low enough that I'm fishing for my all-in before he gets level 6 here. So you can see here, I walk towards him, W one more time, click backwards, use my E really shortly. Where is it here? Absorb some minion aggro, flash E, auto W for the burst combo. So if we go back to this, how did he go from half HP to 0 in about 2 seconds? It's all this Sheen usage. So walk towards him, bait him to use his Q, and then go for a Sheen proc when it's on cooldown. So able to get that there. And then here as well, I'm pretty sure, yeah, I went for one more. If you touch this minion, you can see I'm leading with movement, walking around the back of him. If you want to respect the minion, run back here and bleed CS, fine by me. If you want to farm, I'm going to get a little W proc like that. And then here, because I don't want to get W'd or E'd, a fast combo, R-flash E, auto W. It's a really fast combo then. If I Q'd onto him, he would have definitely W'd in time. So that's why I always recommend using flash E over QE in these situations where you want to be bursting them. And now for the moment you've all been waiting for, we're going to be moving on to the matchups. Now, not only am I going to be going through my matchup tier list, I'm going to be going through every single matchup one by one, breaking down the runes, the summoner spells, and your general game plan in that matchup, how to play it out, and I'll be timestamping every champion down below, so that when you load into champ select, loading screen, see what you're playing up against, you can skip to that section and get a rough layout of what you should be running, and your game plan in that matchup. But I'll quickly go over the tier list, so we can see here this is more of a high-low tier list, as if you're playing in silver or gold, you probably don't have to worry about Aurora and Jayce's that much. But I would say, to be honest on Jax, the difference between a high-low and a low-low tier list in terms of matchup spread is not really going to be significantly different. There'll be small differences, like Malphite might be quite hard in silver or bronze compared to in higher ranks, and then Jayce might be a bit easier, but I'd say on average most of these champions would be in a similar position, which is why I only made the high-low list. So the hard matchups are all champions that can poke you down, and you don't really have any trading options to get onto them. If they play well, if they pilot their champion at the highest level, you don't really have any options in that matchup. But of course, everyone makes mistakes and junglers exist, so there are some things you can keep in mind. And then for the opponent favored, these are normally champions that have good disengage, so champs like Gragas or champs like Poppy, but they can't really guarantee advantages against you the way a Kennen or a Vladimir could if they played extremely well. So in the opponent favored tier, you don't have to worry. These are matchups that you can go even or just slightly behind. If you play well, they just have the advantage against you. If you make mistakes, they can punish heavily. If they make you take a bad back, or maybe get solo killed by something like Riven, and get behind, it will be quite tricky, but you have a lot of agency in these ones, and we'll go through them shortly. Now for skill matchup, these are the ones you should be winning consistently, and a lot of these matchups are a bit easier in lower ranks, I would say. So versus a bad Gwen player, a bad Darius, a bad Mordekaiser, if you run the setups I'm going to be teaching you, you're going to have a big advantage. So keep that in mind. The more common champs in lower ranks, Jax can actually do quite well into them if you know what to look out for. But these champions, if they play well, they can go even. A lot of them, champs like Warwick, it's pretty even for easy for both of you to go even. Same with Malphite, can kind of neutralize you. You might be able to get a plate and a slight lead, but I wouldn't really worry about these matchups too much. Now for the Jax favored ones, these are ones where you can be playing for kills in lane. Pretty much all of them, you're either playing for kills, or the matchups like Udyr or like Cho'gath, you can maybe play for tower plates, but these are the ones where you should be getting leads consistently, and if you're not, you're going to have to put a bit of extra time into learning the matchup. And then for free, these are the ones where even if you're behind, you can just sort of beat them up. That's not to say you can play completely terribly and ignore them, but if you play around your E cooldown against any champion in free, and the majority of champions in Jack's favored, you're going to have a really good time up against most of them. Now, before I go through every single matchup one by one thing I want to clear up: if I only recommend one rune page or summoner spell setup for a certain champion, I strongly recommend you take that one. If I recommend both, the one on the left is going to be the one that I recommend slightly more, but both options are perfectly fine. It depends on the game or how comfortable you are in the matchup, but I'll explain the variables as I go. So starting with Aatrox. So this is a matchup where you can run Lethal Tempo and Grasp, both of them are perfectly fine. I would say at the top level of Aatrox, you should take Grasp. I learned that the hard way recently versus the best Korean Aatrox player on the server. But I would say for the average player, playing below Master Tier, Lethal Tempo is actually better in this matchup, as you can play for early solo kills consistently, and he can't just ignore your damage later on, level 7, level 9, you actually have meaningful kill threat. Now for summoner spells, I would say Ignite is slightly preferred in lower ranks, TP preferred in higher ranks, but it just depends on your personal preference and how comfortable you are in that matchup. Both options are quite good. Now, my advice for playing up against this matchup: your early game needs to be on point. Your 1 to 4 is Jack's favored, 5 to 9 is terrible, level 9 at Triforce you can beat him. So that means your 1 to 4 has to go very well, or you're going to have a miserable first 12 minutes of the game. So what I recommend: level 1, you get prior no matter what. You try to close the gap, don't dodge his Qs outwards, dodge inwards, try to close that gap. Try to get an extended trade level 1 if you can, and dodge the center part of Q3. Now with your prior, you take a level 2 vs 1 trade, getting your Q level 2, and then you crash either wave 2 cleanly or wave 3 cleanly, depends on how the first trade goes. If he sat back on his tower, sitting on his hand, you can crash wave 3. If you got a big trade and you beat up the wave a bunch, you can crash wave 2. Just make sure it's crashed cleanly. Do not let that wave get stuck outside of his tower, or it's going to take a miracle to get it unstuck. So crash your wave cleanly, bounce it back to the center, and then I'd say after you crash wave 4 or 5, you probably need to recall, get your longsword refillable, and then you kill him as he tries to push towards you. That's going to be your last solo kill threat. Level 5, level 7 gets very difficult. Now you should also be trying to Q him when he Qs you, and when his E is on cooldown, that is go time. If he ever Q1 E's towards you, he can't do that. You Q onto his head straight away, you're going to destroy him, but if he has Q2 and E loaded, he can disengage you very easily, so you do have to respect that. So just keep in mind, if you're even or slightly behind around level 5 to 9, you're mainly playing for good farm, nice short trades, trying to get your Triforce unscathed, but 1 to 4 you need to be driving the matchup and trying to get an early game lead. Next up we have Akali, and for this matchup I definitely recommend going TP, Doran Shield, Second Wind, and Grasp. This matchup is not going to be easy, however the early game is not too bad. The level 1 to 4, level 1 to 5, perfectly fine. There's 2 approaches to it. You can go Q start, and then Q auto her every time your Grasp is up, make it a bit more volatile. Make sure no matter what you're doing you're getting priority though, that's very important. Or you can do E start if she makes a spacing mistake or you get behind her level 1. So versus a good Akali, you'll need to go Q start, bad one you can E, really depends what they do straight away, so just hold on to that skill point and see what they do. Now, because you're getting pro, try to use your level 2 vs 1. The trade pattern normally goes, you Q onto her with E, and she'll shuriken away, your stun will drop off, and then she'll jump back in and you get wrecked. So to avoid that, level 2 vs 1, she won't have her shuriken, that's when a good time to go. And later on, when she does have shuriken, you need to either lead with movement, so get near her with your E, start fighting her, and then Q follow when she E's. Or you just need to Q onto her head, not use E, just Q auto W and click away. Try to bait her to use E, try to bait her to use Shroud, and then you can fight her when it's down. When Shroud is on cooldown, so if she uses Shroud during the fight, just Q away, just run away. Do not fight her when her Shroud is down, you're going to take damage unnecessarily. Be really careful with that. For this matchup, you can also go Hex Drinker as your first item. This is perfectly optional, but I even recommend just a cheeky Null Magic Mantle by itself is perfectly fine, because with no MR it's quite brutal. So let's say they have Akali and an AP jungler, Hex Drink would be great. If it's solo AP Akali top, then just chill on a Null Magic Mantle, get to your Triforce. Of course, if you get Sheen first recall, that's great, but normally Akali's going to poke you down so much, you have to base before that. Just make sure you're the one getting the first recall, not her. So maybe crashing wave 5, wave 6, really depends what's going on, how low you get. But if you can keep the lane going for a long time, before she recalls, get Sheen on your first recall, that is okay. Typically that's not going to happen though, so just look to get an early Null Magic Mantle, and play mainly to farm, and punish her when her abilities are on cooldown. Now for Akshan, just take Grasp and D-Shield and TP. You're going to still play aggressive, but having that extra sustain means you can make the lane more volatile and not worry too much about his poke. So you want to be using bush control really well. Take over the second lane bush level 1, out of the bush hit a minion, get your Grasp stacked up, and then Q onto his head level 1. Q auto back to the bush. Q auto back to the bush. Every time your Grasp is up, get him lower and lower. Just make sure no matter what, you respect his level 2. He's going to get Pro up against you. Respect his level 2, him just spinning onto you. But when you're level 2 as well, or maybe 3v3, you can just jump onto him, and even though you don't have lethal tempo, you'll win the extended trade. Just make sure you're not doing this situation where you E, Q, and he is a way to dodge your E. Make sure you're queuing onto his head and holding E for a bit, or maybe preloading E, so that you can stun him straight away and knock him off the wall, and then you just bash his head in. For our next matchup, we have Ambessa, and for this one, you're going to be wanting to run the standard grass page with second wind, and definitely starting Doran Shield no matter what. Now, Ambessa, I would say this matchup, the most important thing is to get early game prio. Make sure you're crashing your wave cleanly. If she blocks away from crashing and has the wave half under her tower, half out, you're going to have a really bad time. So try to cleanly crash, I'd say wave 3 most of the time. Some games wave 2 depending on what she does, and then have the wave bounce back towards you. Now, the thing about this matchup is Jax does win the extended trades. So if Ambessa uses abilities onto you to poke you down, and then walks up to farm, that's going to be your moment to go. If you Q onto her and she has everything up, the trade's not going to go well, but if she Qs you a couple times, you know, EQ dashes away or something, and then walks up to farm and you can find an opportunity to get a long trade, that is going to be the best case for you. Now, no matter what, the thing about this matchup is, the lane is hard, it's not in Jax's favor, but if you get to Triforce and you're even, you can just run her down. Ambessa is really bad at all-ins and extended trades, especially later on at one item, so side lane as well is going to be really good for you. Just the early lane is hard, but if you can do really good wave control, crash waves cleanly, and punish her when her abilities are on cooldown, and just make sure you don't get behind during that level 5 to 9 timer, which can be quite tricky, you're going to be in a really good position. Moving on to Aurora, and in this matchup, you're going to definitely want to run D-Shield second wind no matter what. So Grasp Rampage with TP, and the way you want to play this one is you can just stack your Grasp level 1 on the wave, use bush control really well, so out of the bush hit the minion once, back in, out for the second time, and then every time your Grasp is up, Q auto. The reason that's fine, even though she's going to auto Q auto you, and you're going to slightly lose the trade, you want to play the resource battle into her. D-Shield second wind is going to get a lot of work done here. So make sure you're taking trades as much as you can. Early game before she gets level 2, she's going to get power on this one. Just Q auto back into the bush, Q auto back in the bush, and make her bleed a lot of resources. She has to use mana and HP to trade back with you, and you're going to be regenning with D-Shield and second wind, and she's not. Now, if she has bone plating, make sure you heavily play around that cooldown. So keep your left click tracker on the top left corner. When her bone plating is up, you might just want to Q and run away, or Q auto W, something like that, and not commit your E until bone plating is on cooldown. Now later on in this matchup, if you jump onto her with E, she's going to kick you in the head and disengage it, and then run you down the lane when your E is on cooldown. So you want to be Q auto Wing her and clicking backwards, holding onto your E, so that she can't, and if she E's away, then you can engage onto her the next time your Q is up, and your E is still going to be available. You can play it like that, or you can just E when she chases you down and block all that auto attacks, because it's not worth using E if she's going to cancel the stun anyway with her E, and then chase you down. You can use it more defensively, and just trade onto her with Q auto W. Now, it's all about the resource battle, so try to burn her mana as much as you can. Make sure you're baiting abilities too, so pretend to go for the minion, click backwards the last second, juke to the side, try to dodge her Q, and when you're farming under tower, she might try to QE you, so same thing as well, click to the minion, jump to the side, or be ready to dodge with your Q if you can. That'd be a good play as well. If you can dodge your combo with your Q, really good. Play the resource battle, drain her mana, drain her HP as much as you can, and then when she has low resources, then you can play a bit more aggressive. Moving on to Camille, and for this matchup, you can run Grasp or Lethal Tempo. I'd recommend Grasp if you're in higher brackets, Master Plus, maybe even Diamond Plus, and Lethal Tempo if you're in Emerald or below. And your goal in this matchup, the early game is actually not as good for Jax as you'd imagine. It gets a lot better for you at level 6, because you have an ultimate and she doesn't really in terms of 1v1 power. So you need to be getting prior level 1, make sure she doesn't bait your E out if she pretends to go for you, and clicks to the side and you lose your E, that's going to be a big problem. So get prio, play early game mainly for good farm, try to get a good level 2 vs 1 trade of course if you can, and cleanly crash your wave. No, don't let the wave in the Camille zone as much as possible, so the zone near her tower, where she can double tap E onto and you don't really have much time to react with E, that's going to be quite brutal. So try to cleanly crash wave 3 in this matchup, I recommend. Wave 4 bounce back to the middle, and then you can fight her. Now the trick to this one with your E, if you Q auto W her and you E straight away, before she hits you, before she gets her passive down, she's going to try to E away. But if you time it, so just as she hits her hook on the wall, you cast E2, that's going to rip her off the wall completely. If you stun her before her hook hits the wall, she's going to get pulled to safety. So you need to be really on point with your timing there, and make sure you don't give it the opportunity to disengage. Now, if you're just taking a normal trade, not cancelling your E, with your E, just make sure you jump onto her head, E early, auto W stun, and end your trade in CC. That's really important, because if you stun her, and your E's on cooldown, and then she kicks your head in with Q and her grasp and her passive, that trade's not going to be that good for you. Another thing as well, she's probably going to take bone plating, play around that, really important. If you can ever block her bone plating with just an auto attack or a W when she walks up to farm, that's going to be really, really optimal. So try to do that as much as you can. And then at level 6, if you have Sheen with Grasp or double longsword lethal tempo, try to bounce the way back to your side, run her down, because it takes her a long time to get to her wall. And then when she finally does, if you can pull her off the wall, it's just going to be a free kill, especially if she's an Ignite TP Camille, which is very common. So you're going to be fine in that lane. This matchup's really hard if you get behind, and pretty easy if you're even or ahead. So make sure you don't actually make this one too volatile early game, 1 to 5. Try to play it a lot more controlled. Focus mainly on good farm and the wave control, and try not to make any big mistakes in the early game, because getting behind it's really hard to come back in terms of the laning phase. Moving on to Cassio. Now for this matchup you have two options. You can go Grasp with Q start and try to beat her up level 1, Q auto whenever you can, because level 1 Cassio is pretty weak, because she can't machine gun you after hitting a Q, she only has one ability. Level 2 Cassio is going to one-shot you, so make sure if you do take Grasp, you're trying to get pro, you're trying to hit her early game, and make it volatile early. Or you can go lethal tempo, play a little bit more reserved early game, but have a lot better all-in, because versus a Cassio with Conqueror, if you jump onto her head, she is going to just completely obliterate you. Because with short trading rune with Grasp, you don't have the damage necessary to chew through her, but with lethal tempo, if you feel confident in your movement, dodging your Qs, you can beat her down. I'd say Grasp is slightly better though, so take this if you're ever unsure. But if you do take tempo, you need second wind. As this matchup without second wind, it's pretty sad, and go Doran Shield no matter what. Now, the thing about Cassiopeia, it's all about the movement, it's all about baiting spells. Click towards a minion, click to the side, pretend to walk towards her, click backwards, and when her Q is on cooldown, you want to be queuing onto her head straight away if you can, because you're not going to be able to machine gun you after that. You can also play the War of Attrition, try to burn out her mana. If her mana pool gets low, it's going to be really good for you. But to be honest, that champion doesn't really go that much unless she's burning her spells and making mistakes. But 99% of Cassio players will do that. So if you can make her and then put on the gas, play aggressive, that's going to be good for you. I wouldn't say you want to build Emara in this matchup unless they have AP jungler as well. You don't want to delay your Triforce, because if you have enough damage to burst her before she just one-shots you with Conqueror, then that's going to be good for you. And try to be very involved with communication around your jungler. Don't just cry for ganks the whole game, but if, let's say, you're on red side, your jungler's doing raptors, doing golems, Cassiopeia is playing aggressive, poking you onto tower, ping for a gank, point click, jump on their head with a stun, they're going to die to any gank, so try less about trying to dominate her 1v1 or do anything crazy. If the Cassio seems competent, try to get your jungler involved, it'll be a lot easier for you. Moving on to Cho'gath, and for Chogs, I'd say Grasp and Lethal Tempo. It's pretty much equally as good, so let the rest of the enemy team comp dictate which one I'd want you to use. So if they have a melee team comp like a Jarvan or a Vi jungle, where Lethal Tempo is going to go crazy, then run that. If they've got some ranged champion jungle or like an assassin like Kha'Zix, ranged mid laner, just go Grasp, both options are fine. Now you want to go D-Shield in this matchup as he has way too much poke. It's quite hard to get effective use from D-Blade against him, way too many poking tools. Make sure you get prior no matter what. Very important, and you need to be moving in an unpredictable way to dodge his Q. So when you Q onto his head with stun, most Jax players will walk behind you. Of course, he's going to be anticipating that, use his Q, so you can jump onto him and actually click backwards towards your minion wave and dodge his Q, stun him, and then bash him down a little bit. That'll be quite good. Just make sure if he has Halo Blade, you're not tanking the 3 E's when your E is on cooldown. Heavily play around their cooldown of your own E, but this matchup you should be perfectly fine. If he Qs the wave, you Q onto his head. If you jump onto him when he walks up, just try to move in a way that's unpredictable to dodge his Q, and you're going to be perfectly fine in this one. If you take the grass page, you can play for tower plates as well. Stack 2 big waves together, your cannon wave with a regular one, and go for a demolish proc, and then just try to dodge his skill shots or Q away at the last second, and you're going to have a pretty good time in this matchup. And just make sure if you get behind, you are going to get outscaled a bit in side lane, so you can go Blade of the Ruined King second in this lane. If you get behind and you feel like you want to be able to beat him up 1v1, especially if he's building full tank and HP stacking. Next up, we have Darius, and this matchup's a complete banger. I recommend taking Doran's Blade, Lethal Tempo, Bone Plating, and Ignite. So the best defense is a good offense. You need to be willing to fight him back and go for a big level 1 all-in. Don't use your E straight away. You can tank an auto, you can tank 2 autos, it's fine, but you cannot do a bad E. So fight him level 1, walk behind him, make him run through you to get back to town, and hold your ground. Use your bone plating well, don't let him chip it for free if you can avoid it, and make sure you're getting prior. If he respects you or you get the big trade, you get prior, you get level 2 vs 1, level 3 vs 2, you're going to be in a really good position. Now later on in the matchup, when he has access to his hook, the way the trade pattern will go if you play it wrong, if you jump onto his head with E, he's going to E you, he's going to do a little bit of a moonwalk, Michael Jackson you, dodge the E, and then come back in and run you down. So to avoid that, you lead with movement. You walk towards him, auto WE. If he E's you, you can Q away. Or you can just Q onto his head, auto W, and hold on to your E. This can only work if you have lethal tempo or if he's low HP. Fight him and hold on to your E until later on, until hopefully after he uses his hook, and you'll be in a really good position. Moving on to the Doctor, and for Mundo, I recommend Doran's Blade, Lethal Tempo, and Second Wind with Demolish. It's realistic they can proc Demolish in this matchup, and Second Wind is great, he has a lot of short trades. Now I recommend taking Ignite as well. This is optional, it depends how confident you are in the matchup, but Ignite definitely feels good because you do not want to build Healing Cut early game. If you choose to go TP, finish your Triforce first, then go your Healing Cut, do not delay Triforce 800 gold, but it's perfectly fine either way. I just recommend Ignite because you want to be getting a hit against this champion early game, because if he gets to Warmogs, he's completely even, he's just going to headbutt your tower and ignore you, and that's not fun for anyone. So Lethal Tempo Ignite, play really volatile early game. If he's a good Mundo and he sits 2 screens away and farms with Q and tries to poke you down, crash wave 3. Really important that you crash wave 3, because wave 4 bounce back to the middle, and you'll just slowly bleed out CS. Now the trade pattern is you Q auto W stun him, run away after your stun, if he's not fighting you back, and then you're going to pop his passive. Then when his passive's on cooldown, then you take a trade as well. So keep him left click, track his passive cooldown, make sure you know when it's up or down. But if he tries to fight you back after you jump onto him, this is where lethal tempo is important. This is why Grass makes the matchup kind of hard, because he can ignore your damage and just bash or hit him. But if you have tempo, he has to cut the trade a bit early and run away, or you're just going to become lethal. So Ignite feels really good as well for bursting him when he's low. But if he's just playing super respectful, chilling, chucking Qs, blow up his tower. That's what the Demolish is for. You're going to be fine. And in this matchup, I'd recommend probably 8 games out of 10 going Blade of the Ruined King second, as being able to kill Mundo in side lane is very important. If you can do that, his champion has 0 value. If he can staunch you, his champion has a lot of value. So make sure you're building so that you can beat him. Moving on to Fiora. Now for this matchup, you can run both pages. I slightly prefer Lethal Tempo at the moment, where last patch I preferred Grasp, so you can kind of see how close it is. Either page is fine. Just make sure you're playing to your identity. So with Grasp, D-Shield is going to be better, and with Lethal Tempo you want D-Blade, but no matter what rune page you take, you must get Prio in this lane. It's so important that you get push early game. If you don't get push, it's unplayable, completely unplayable. You need to get Prio and get level 2 before her, so that you can jump onto her hit. If she has level 2 with parry, and you've just got E, you are going to get annihilated, so you need to go level 2 vs 1 trade onto her. Now the trick to this matchup is actually having insane amounts of E discipline. She's going to Q you, she's going to be annoying. She's going to poke you down. You need to just stick out your chest and tank the poke, because if she max range Qs you and you E, and she walks away, even if you hit the stun, you're barely going to scratch her, get her bone plating, then she's going to Q auto you whenever she can, and that 17 seconds that your E is on cooldown is going to feel like 200 years, so you need to be very careful with your E usage. Only use it if you know her Q's on cooldown, or you get behind her, you know you can get an extended trade, then you can use your E. If not, some games, I'd say the majority of games versus great Fiora players, I'm not even using my E until level 2, because they're spacing or queuing me in a way where if I use it, I'm not going to do that much damage to her, and then it's unplayable. Made that mistake too many times before. But for the average player, if you verse a bad Fiora that just queues onto your head, like they're playing Jax and they're trying to jump on you, you can just use E and bash her hidden. Of course, it'll be perfectly fine. Just keep in mind from the very beginning of the matchup, don't go into it with that mindset. Now with this matchup, the trick to it later on is to walk towards her with E, try to bait her to use her parry and pre-dodge it. Pre-dodge it, so even if she parries your stun, if she got the timing perfectly, you're going to dodge it, or if you know it's going to hit you, you Q away. So you have to be quite quick. Of course, your versus Fiora, it's not going to be easy, but make sure you're really playing around dodging your parry. Even if it's not the stun, if it's the slow, dodging it with Q is going to be ideal, because if you Q onto her with E, she's going to parry you right on the head, and then Q away, and then you're going to be a sitting duck. So make sure you're leading with movement in this matchup, unless you already have an advantage. If you're full HP and she's 40%, sure, Q onto her head, or if you have a level up timer or something. But if it's even, or you're slightly losing, do not Q onto it, lead with movement, bash her down, and then Q follow, or Q away if you need to. Also, make sure your E timing is unpredictable. Sometimes hold it for the full duration. Sometimes cut it really early. Don't do the same pattern twice in a row. Just keep mixing up your pattern. Make it really annoying for her to ever match your timing, because she cannot react to your E2. She has to predict it unless you hold it the whole duration. So make sure you're being very unpredictable in that aspect. Next up, we have Galio, and make sure in this matchup you run Grasp and D-Shield and Second Wind, and you're always trying to buffer your W through his CC. So always be looking for that, and if you walk towards him with E, and he responds by Eing towards you, Q to dodge it, Q off to the side to a minion, dodges E, and then you can look to bash him down on his way back to the tower. So make sure you're not just queuing onto his head, getting E'd, Q'd, and he walks backwards. Really try to avoid that trade pattern. Leading with movement is crucial, and you can go Merc trades early on in this matchup. I wouldn't do it if it's solo AP Galio or something like that, but if they have a bunch of other CC in their comp, especially from jungle, Merc trades early can be quite good for this one. Next up, we have Gangplank, and this champion's pretty much a range top, so you want to be running D-Shield with Grasp and Second Wind, and making sure you get priority no matter what. Never let him single barrel you, make him take 2 barrels every time he wants to hit you with it, because then your D-Shield and Second Wind will just get to work, and out-sustain that, you'll be perfectly fine. So it's pretty hard to get a good E-trade onto him level 1 if he's playing for the trade. Of course, if he walks up and hits a minion, go crazy, walk behind him, get the big E-trade, that's going to be great, but if he's playing well, then you need to get level 2 before him, jump onto his head and beat him up. I also recommend trying to 3-wave crash in this matchup, so that wave 4 bounces back near the middle, and he can't just freeze and have a barrel camp under his tower, and then when wave 4's in the middle, you can take one more big trade against him, and then crash either, ideally wave 5 would be great, and then recall, come back to lane, have your item advantage, and then try to kill him on the timer, because he's going to want to greed for Sheen. You know he's not going to go anywhere before Sheen, so if you have full HP and he's around half from your earlier trades, and you got that longsword advantage refillable, then you can look to beat him up. Now this matchup gets a bit tricky after he gets Sheen, 5 to 9, but when you have Triforce, you win the extended trade. You win the extended trade pretty much the whole time, if you can get it, but with Triforce is a lot more clear, so don't worry too much about this matchup. If you don't get behind a Triforce, you can just run him down in side lane. Really hard for him to really play around it when your cooldowns get a bit lower and your damage gets a bit higher. Moving on to Garen, and I actually didn't like playing this matchup when I took Grasp, but running lethal tempo into it, it definitely feels doable. So go lethal tempo with Bone Plating and Doran's Blade. You can even run Ignite in this one, matches Ignite perfectly fine, and try to go for extended trades. You want short trades, you want long trades. The trade pattern's going to be, you take a big trade level 1, you try to get Prio, try to get a level 2 versus 1 trade before he can skill his W, because when he has W, your E loses a lot of value, and then just make sure you're never tanking his Q. Your E will block his Q, so if you walk towards him with movement, E, auto W, and then you stun him, and Q away after, he can never hit his Q onto you. Of course, if he's a bad Garen, and he starts with Q, and you block with E, you can have a great time, but you can also just stun him and click away when his E is spinning, and then you can re-engage onto him after if you wanted to. It really depends on the situation. But leading with movement is important, because if you Q onto him and stun him, and he times his W correctly, which is very easy for him to do by the way, then he can Q you directly after, so leading with movement is going to be ideal, unless you have a big advantage. If he's 40%, you feel like you can burst him and kill him before you burst you, that's perfectly fine, but if it's pretty even, lead with movement, auto WE, stun him and then Q away, and not let him get that free damage with the Q onto you, and then when his W is on cooldown, his W cooldown is longer than your E. You are hunting like a hunting dog there. You really want to be getting that trade onto him when his W is on cooldown, because it's really hard for him to do anything in that situation. Moving on to Gnar, and this matchup is a very even skill matchup. What I recommend that you do is run Grasp with Second Wind and D-Shield, start Q level 1, and every time you get Grasp stacked up, so hit the wave straight away, get your Grasp stacked up, Q auto back into the bush, Q auto back into the bush, do that pattern, get him as low as possible, and make it volatile. His condition for winning the matchup is getting Ninja Tabby on his first recall. If he can do that, you're going to have a really tough time. But if he can't, you're going to be in a great position, so keep doing that, Q auto back into the bush, respect his mega timing like crazy, do not take a trade when he's mega, you're going to get obliterated, but when he's mini, especially when he's freshly mini, you jump onto his head, bash him down with stun. Now, keep in mind, your stun, if he jumps away, it's not going to cancel the hop, but the stun and the damage will still go through, so you might want to pop your E early when you're fighting him and anticipate that stun, but then his E cooldown is very long, so if you can bait him to use his E with just Q auto W, or even just Q with a stun, and then fight him during that timer when his E's on cooldown, it's solo kill time. So that's the timer we want to be looking to go, or you jump onto him with your stun, fight him down and burn his E, and then you can flash onto him later on, flash follow when he E's, anything like that. You have a few options in this one. Just make it as volatile as possible early game, and don't let him get 1200 gold on his first base. Next up, we have Gragas, and if you're going to play Jax long term, you need to learn how to play this matchup. It's a very common counter pick. So D-Shield, Grasp, Second Wind, and W start in this lane. You want to be buffering your W every time he E's. If you E and walk towards him, he's going to body slam you and walk away. So you just want to buffer W through his E every time. Keep chipping away at him. Of course, every time you have Grasp up, you should be hunting for it. Don't really go for a W without Grasp, it's not very efficient. So play around that Grasp cooldown. Make sure you get priority no matter what, and maintain control. Your goal here is to bleed out his resources. If he burns mana to disengage you, or to heal himself up, eventually he's going to go and try to keep him stuck in lane for a long time. If you can get Sheen first recall, really nice, because you're buffering W with Sheen proc and Grass proc, the damage really adds up. Or if you can get Murktrid's first recall, even better. But they are so expensive now that's unrealistic, so Sheen is going to be the goal. Base TP back with Sheen, and then you can look to beat him up a lot more. Just make sure you're the trading pattern, you never Q onto his head. You just can't. If he sits 2 screens away and he pokes you and farms with Q, then you just use your Q to dodge his Q, and it's even, it's fine. He's counterpicking you, and you're getting free farm. That's perfectly fine. But if he walks up and hits some minions, or walks up to play aggressive, you lead with movement, put your E up, buffer your W through his E, and then try to Q follow him. But if he times his E well, you can't do that. So you need to get Murktrid's before you can wait out the ECC. So with Murktrid, you can walk towards him, get E'd, and then Q follow him. Without it, you just E so you don't tank his W and buffer W through his E, and that's perfectly fine as well. And then always be looking to dodge his Q poke with your Q onto a different minion, and just don't take any damage unnecessarily, and try to bleed out his mana pool. Next up, we have Gwen, and for this matchup, I strongly recommend that you run Lethal Tempo. It's really important unless you're playing in a pro game, something like that, you could get away with Grasp, but Lethal Tempo and solo queue up against Gwen, I would say is mandatory. Now, if you run TP and Flash, go Cosmic and Cookies. If you run Ignite, go Bone Plating and Demolish. Now, when to do each one, I normally let the jungler influence that. So if my jungler is playing a useful champion, like Pantheon, or Lee Sin, or Xin Zhao, or Rek'Sai, something like that, I'll go Ignite. If they're playing some useless jungler, like Graves or Kayn, and I'm not going to see them on my screen until 25 minutes, then I'll run Teleport. It really depends on that situation, how volatile I want it to be. Now for this matchup, you want to take a big level 1 trade without using your E if she starts E. If she auto-attacks you once and she gets 1 stack of her Q, you know she started Q, you can slap your E up, that's fine, and beat her up. If you auto-attack her once each, and she doesn't get that stack, you know she started E, so you need to hold on to your E. You cannot let her get the situation where you get cast your counter-strike, she dodges it with your E, and then your A sitting duck. So try to fight her away from your caster minions, chase her down to her tower. Just bash her down with Lethal Tempo, just make it volatile early game. She wants short trades, you want long trades, you need to play off that mindset. Now you also want to get Prime, but the most important thing, I've said it a lot throughout this guide, but this matchup it's even more important, crash a wave cleanly. Wave 2 or wave 3, it doesn't matter, but get that wave in as cleanly as you can. Do not let her poke you from under the tower, because even taking 1 or 2 extra Gwen Qs, where you shouldn't have to, because the wave is near her tower, can be the difference maker in this lane. It's really important that you don't let that happen. Now, you always want to be leading with movement when she has level 6. If you Q onto her head, she's going to Q, R you, and just kill you with Ignite. So lead with movement, bash her up, get her low, Q away after the stun, ending the train CC. And then when she's low enough, then you can burst her down before she can ramp up her ulti and her Conqueror stacks. That's when you go for the kill. But if you jump into her full HP versus full HP, even with Lethal Tempo, if you're not ahead, you're going to lose, so keep that in mind. And for this matchup in the mid game, I recommend going Kayn Grukin as your second item, unless you're already super fed, so that you can continuously beat her in side lane. Moving on to Illaoi, everyone's favorite champion to play against, and for this one, I recommend making it as volatile as possible. So Doran's Blade, Lethal Tempo, Ignite, and make it really aggressive from level 1. So take the third lane bush, try to walk behind her, and get an extended trade. Big trade level 1, make her low. If she sits back on her tower, just sits by her tentacles and does nothing, go for a 3-wave crash. Always look for your level 2 vs 1 trade, of course, level 3 vs 2, but 3-wave crash, wave 4 comes back to the middle, away from her tentacle setup, and yet again, keep putting pressure onto her. Keep trying to make it volatile, because you want to get an advantage 1 to 5. Now, I recommend trying to bait her spells. When you run at her as Jax, with your chest sticked out with Ignite and Doran's Blade, she is going to expect you to Q onto her head. So fake it out, run towards her, click to the side, and bait her to use her E. When her E is on cooldown, she's a free kill, so make sure you play around that cooldown very heavily. You can even use your Q to dodge as well, so you don't even have to dodge with movement. Run towards her, she'll E, you Q away, and then when your next Q is up, and her E is still down, jump directly onto her head, and you want to be willing to take the extended trade. You need to fight her down. Of course, full HP versus full HP when she has ulti, you're going to lose, so try to make it volatile and get a kill before that point. Next up, we have Irelia, and for this matchup, I recommend Lethal Tempo, Bone Plating, and Doran's Blade, and you want to be looking to find her level 1. You can take Ignite as well, it's optional, depends if you trust your jungler. Again, if he has like a Pantheon, you can take Ignite. If your jungler is like a Kayn or a Graves, just take TP, and level 1, you need to fight her before she touches the wave. So try to find her, run at her, try to fight her ideally away from the minions, and just bash her down, because when she has 4 stacks, the trade's not going to go that well for you, but before she's stacked up, you're going to win, so try to find her, and fight her, and start stacking lethal tempo before she even gets her first Q down, and just be willing to bash her down and try to get level 2 advantage as well. So don't worry about 2-wave or 3-wave crashing this one, you just need to get prior no matter what. So hit the wave a lot if you can't get the trade onto her, just make sure you get level 2 before her, and then jump directly onto her head. Really put that pressure onto her, then cleanly crash wave 2, I would say. If you're going to be playing for level 2 rush, you probably need to crash wave 2, and then you just continuously look for long trades, lead with movement, look to dodge her E with your Q. So walk towards her, get your E going, start hitting her, and then if she chucks out her E, and you feel like you can't dodge it by walking, you can just stun her and then Q away. Perfectly fine. Just make sure in this matchup, if your E is on cooldown, you're a different champion. Jax without E, you're pretty much just Kayle, just defenseless, so do not play aggressive when your E is down. Run away from her, play chill, wait for your E to come up, give a couple minions, and then when your E is up, then you can play the game again. Next up, we have Jayce, and this guy's actually my band at the moment. The champ's just so strong and pretty popular in high ranks, but if you don't visit him that often, the way to play against him, Doran Shield, Second Wind, and Grasp. Q start level 1, so hit the wave straight away, get your Grasp backed up, Q auto him back into the bush. Q auto him back into the bush, make sure you're using bush control really well to not tank any unnecessary free auto attacks against him, and then the trading pattern when you have your E. If you just Q onto his head with E, he's going to knock you away. So what you want to do is try to lead with movement from a bush, lead with E, and then Q stun him if you can. Or you just Q onto his head, Q auto W is great. You can buffer W through his hammer E as well. And then when his E's on cooldown, it's very, very long by the way, then you can Q stun him on your next set of cooldowns. That's the optimal way to play this matchup, trying to play around that. Next up, we have Kayle, and for this one, I recommend Lethal Tempo and Doran's Blade. You can run Doran Shield if you're uncomfortable though, but I recommend Blade, and try to get a level 1 trade away from the minion wave. So chase her down to her tower. Make it so she can't get the 3 minions of XP. Your goal is try to zone that XP. If she walks up past you to get the XP, you're going to take a really big volatile trade with your Lethal Tempo, get a low HP in, and then of course, when you're level 2, jump onto her head whenever you can. You want to try get an early kill, 1 to 5, and if you get great trades, or burn her flash, something like that, try to call up your jungler for a tower dive. Don't be afraid to ping for a dive if it's good, it's Kayle, you don't want to let her scale for free, and if she can't get tier 2 boots on her first recall, the matchup just keeps getting easier and easier, so just make sure you're making that as volatile as possible, but as usual, crash your wave cleanly. I'd recommend a 3-wave crash in this matchup, so if you do that, wave 4 bounces back to the middle, and she's in the same position as level 1. If you walk up to get XP, I'm going to Q onto your head, so just make it as uncomfortable for her as possible. Now if somehow, let's just say jungle gap, we'll blame it on that, she gets level 6 and Swifty boots without being behind, the matchup actually gets a little bit trickier. So the trick to it in that situation is you just want to jump onto her head with stun and end your trade in CC. If you don't end your trade in CC, then she's going to run you down the lane and auto attack you a bunch of times. So if you Q onto her head auto W and she buffers her Q through it, she's going to be able to space you. So you need to make sure her Q's on cooldown, or you stun her and click into the bush straight away. Especially if she doesn't have a ward, that's going to be fine. But just be careful if she has Swifty boots or something like that, and you Q stun her and she buffers Q through it, she's going to run you down the lane and auto attack you a bunch. But the main point in this matchup, get your lead 1 to 5 so that doesn't happen. But even if it does, just play around her Q cooldown. Her Q is her main disengage in this matchup. Without it, she cannot space you, even when she's level 6. Moving on to Kennen, and this is definitely a matchup I put a lot of time into studying, and what I recommend, Q start with Grasp and Second Wind and Doran Shield. So Q auto back into the bush, Q auto back into the bush, that's the way to play it. Make sure if he takes bone plating, you play around that heavily, tracking the cooldown, making sure you're aware of it whenever it's up. And if you can get prior, that's great. You want to be crashing wave 3, and then wave 4 comes back to the middle, and you can keep trading. So if you make it volatile and abuse Second Wind and D-Shield, you'll be fine. If you just farm, sit on your hands and let him poke you down, it's not going to be fine, because you must dictate the first recall. If you get the first base off, I'd actually recommend, I almost never say this, just walk back to lane. Unless he's low HP and you feel like you can play for a kill, walk back to lane, hold your TP, and buy Null Magic Mantle on your first recall, or tier 1 boots and refill. And then on your second recall, you want to get Merc Treads and then TP back to lane. That's the goal. Because without Merc Treads, you're not going to be able to do anything. With Merc Treads, you can play it up. Now, the trade pattern, with or without them, you want to be trying to dodge his Q. So you run towards him with your E pre-spinning, dodge to the side, and if you dodge his Q, you jump directly onto his head. Because he cannot instantly stun you without Q. He needs to QEW, because your E blocks his enhanced shuriken, so you want to be trying to bait him if he Qs a minion, or if you walk towards him and dodge his Q and then Q onto his head, trade will be great for you. But if you just QE and he QEWs you and stuns you, clicks 2 steps backwards, and then chucks a shuriken at you 500 times on your way back to your tower, not going to be a great time, so play heavily around his Q cooldown. And one extra tip for this one is that when you're farming under tower, use your E to block his enhanced shuriken, be quite wary of that. And in side lane, when you have Triforce and Merc Treads, if you're not far behind at that point, you'll destroy him, so don't feel too much pressure in this matchup to explode it early game. In fact, going down around 20 CS is how it normally goes, so just be mentally prepared for that. Next up we have Kled, and I recommend taking Lethal Tempo, Bone Plating, and Doran's Blade in this one. Just don't let him break your Bone Plating for free, don't tank a Q for no reason and lose that spell, but the trick to this one is baiting him to use Q. So walk towards him, look staunch, dodge at the last second, when his Q is on cooldown, jump directly onto his head. Now the really good Kled 1 tricks have figured out this matchup, they take Exhaust, TP Exhaust or whatever they want to take, and that makes it quite annoying, so you can even match that and take Exhaust Flash yourself. Perfectly fine, but I'll just say take TP Flash for the average player, not a big issue, you don't need to make it too crazy. Now in this matchup, it's important that when you knock him off your horse, you most likely used your E. So if you used your E in the trade, knock him so you dodge his Q, bait it, when it's on cooldown you jump onto him. If you knock him off the horse, just click away straight away. He's going to be able to remount in time before you kill him. So you knock him off the horse and then wait for your second E, and then you go for the all-in onto him. Or if you can demount him when you don't have without using your E, and you can hold your E for when he's in mini form, that's going to be the most optimal, but it is pretty hard to demount him without E, it just depends on the situation. Just don't fall into the trap of letting him fight you mini form versus you. When your E's on cooldown, you're going to lose that one, especially if he takes exhaust as well. Now for this matchup, I'd say the later it goes, the better it is for you. You win side lane the whole time. The 1 to 5 is just the most scary part of it, especially if he takes exhaust. So make sure you're playing around his bone plating, you're playing around your own bone plating, not letting him proc it, going for a trade when it's up, things of that nature, and make sure you're insta-ending the trade in CC when you dismount him, or trying to dismount him without using your E. Those are the main points of this lane. Next up we have Cassante, and for this matchup I recommend Grasp, Second Wind, and D-Shield, and this one is all about your W usage. So start E level 1, of course we want to be able to get Prime, so big level 1 trade where your E hits the whole wave to make sure you're getting that priority. Go for a 3-wave crash if he's playing normally, and then wave 4 bounces back to the middle, and just make sure you're dictating the first recall. I recommend extending the lane, so trying to lane until Sheen, don't make it too volatile. Of course, if he's a kill, just take it, but don't make it too crazy early. Try to dodge his Qs, walk towards him, dodge Q at the last second, things of that nature, and get your Sheen for your first base. Now, the trick to this matchup is not QEing onto his head. If you QE him, he's going to fully charge W, it'll block your stun, you'll be stunned for 300 years, he'll stun, auto, Q, auto, rock away, and you'll get annihilated in that trade. So what you want to do is lead with movement, get your helicopter going, auto W him, he's going to put up his big shield, and then you Q away and dodge it. That's the trade pattern you got to follow. You cannot Q onto him when his W is up, or you're going to lose. You must lead with movement in this one, and make sure you're always trying to bait him to use Q. When his Q is down, then you can go for a trade, and once you have your grasp, or have your Sheen, even before that point, always looking to fish for a cheeky W on him when he walks up to farm. A whack on the head with W and grasp, or W grasp Sheen, is going to really add up in this lane. Next up we have Malphite, and for this matchup, D-Shield, Second Wind, and Grasp, and this one is all about his resource management. Make him go Oom. Your D-Shield and Second Wind is going to outperform any damage he does to you, as long as you're not trading too crazy. So when he's Oom, you just keep stacking waves together, play for early demolish procs. This matchup's actually pretty easy 1 to 5, but after first recall, it does get a bit tricky. So try to take big trades at 1 to 5 if you can, make him unable to recall, just try to extend the lane for a long time, I'd say. You don't want to be in a situation where you base for a sword, he bases around level 4, gets some armor and full HP, not really ideal. It's better for you just to extend the lane for a long time, and keep him stuck there, kind of bleeding out mana slowly, and then when he's just try to never let him recall, and always look to play for demolish procs if you can. So if you've got a cannon wave, walk up, E his combo, auto W the tower proc demolish, Q away, perfectly fine. You're barely going to take any damage doing that, and if you get a couple of plates in this matchup, you're going to be fine. Also, it's a little thing, but play around fruit in this one. The reason I bring it up, it's just so common. You're playing for plates, you're going to take a bit of damage, go eat your fruit, and play out that resource battle, because when he goes or very low mana, he's not going to have any options in this game. Keep in mind as well, you're going to be very gankable up against him, so play for good vision as well. This matchup's less about trying to solo kill the Malphite 50 times, and more about bleeding out his resources, keeping your own resources quite good, and playing mainly around wave control and tower plate demolishing. Now, as for Maokai, similar to Malphite, just go Grasp, Second Wind, D-Shield, and play to blow up this guy's tower. It's a lot easier than against Malphite, he doesn't have the big E, so you're just stacking big waves together and playing for Demolish. You can go Merc Treads early game, if their jungler is CC-based champion, like Elise or something like that, Merc Treads are going to be great. If not, just go early Sheen and make sure you're working on your buffering. You can buff your W through his Q, through his W, so make sure you're always trying to get those cheeky W's onto him whenever you can. But this matchup, again, less about solo killing him and chopping the tree down, more about demolishing his tower from underneath him. Moving on to Mordekaiser. In this matchup, I recommend Lethal Tempo, but just take Cosmic Insight and Cookies. Bone Plane's not that valuable in this one. You can run Ignite as well. Perfectly optional, depends on how you're feeling, but you want to be trying to take a big trade level 1, but end your trade in CC. Do not let this guy proc his passive. Of course, easier said than done, but that's the goal. If you end your trade in CC well, of course your E blocks auto attacks, he can never proc his passive, so you want to be looking to do that. So big trade to auto him down, he'll auto you once, don't either first auto, let him auto you, let him Q you, dodge it if you're the king. But for a second auto, you block that with E, he can't get passive, and then you end your trade in CC. Then when his passive kind of fizzles out, or the 2 stacks fizzle out, you try to get level 2, jump onto his head, make it volatile, make it explosive, just end your trade in CC well, do not give him his passive, and make sure you're always trying to bait spells. If you can walk towards him, pretend I'm going to last hit this minion, pretend I'm going to hit you, dodge to the side or backwards, dodge his Q, and then Q onto his head directly after, you're going to be fine. Now, when he has E, if you Q onto his head with your helicopter going, he is going to E every single time onto himself. So when you Q, do not auto attack him straight away. When you land on him, you move straight away. So move, dodge the E, and then auto W him. Do not get that greedy little auto attack in that gets you flying backwards with his E, because then he's going to be able to Q auto you and bash your head in with the passive, even though you have lethal tempo. It's not necessarily, well, it's not for stat checking him full HP versus full HP. When you get him low enough HP, Lethal Tempo gives you a bit of threshold to bash him down, and in the mid game it scales way better than Grasp for the 1v1 as well. But for the early trades, it's a little bit worse than Grasp. It's definitely a trade-off, but I recommend Tempo so that when you do get him to 50 or 40%, you have the added damage needed to burst this guy down and go for that all in, and you're able to fight him back if he tries to go on you as well. Next up, we have Nasus, and you probably expected a Lethal Tempo one, but I prefer Grasp in this one because he can just press the W key and your Lethal Tempo becomes useless, so I prefer Grasp with Demolish and try to play to blow up his tower if I can. Now, the goal to this one is try to get a lead 1 to 5. Level 6, if you Q onto his head and stun him, he can just W and pop Ghost and bash your head in, so do not Q onto his head when he's level 6 if he's even and his items look good. Make sure you're playing for nice short trades. If he ever walks up, whack him with W. Try to get Sheen on your first recall so your W slaps start to really hurt. And if he's playing quite safe or you've got him low, stack 2 waves together with your cannon wave and look to blow up the tower from underneath him. Next up, we have Nidalee, and hopefully none of you have to verse this champion in lane. It is a nightmare. My advice, Grasp, Darn Shield, Second Wind, and just keep in mind, this matchup is not going to be one where you should get a lead. Of course, if she makes a bunch of mistakes, you're going to be fine, but typically in this one, you just try to stay high HP. You can take trades around your E cooldown, especially if the wave is near your side, and mainly play for ganks and just outscaling her. In side lane, if she doesn't have a lead, her champion is horrible, so you'll be fine there. If she tries to poke you on the tower or hit your tower, you can Q auto W stun her and click backwards, but you're mainly playing to conserve HP, get as good farm as you can, and outscale her in this game, play for ganks. You cannot really beat this champion 1v1 if she knows what she's doing. Moving on to Olaf, and for the Olaf you can go one of 2 ways, Lethal Tempo with Ignite, and you need to be really willing to fight him, or you can go Grasp and TP and play for nice short trades. So I would say, no matter what, the trade pattern, if he's got his Q up, you walk towards him, auto WE, and Q away. This is the trade pattern 1 to 5, if he's stunned, you're going to be able to Q away and make enough distance that he can't run you down, that'll be fine. But with Lethal Tempo, I recommend trying to bait him to use Axe level 1, if he ever tosses Q at you, and he's not in range to pick it up, start fighting him. Just start whacking him with Lethal Tempo. Use your E kind of late in the all-in. Don't use it straight away. Do not use your E when you're slowed. He can space it with approach velocity. Use it when you are not slow, so that you can get the full value of the spell and hold your ground with Ignite. But with Grasp, it's all about short trades. So if he chucks his Q, walk up, auto W stun, Q away, click away, and then when he's low HP, you go in for the kill. Lethal Tempo, it's all about his Q is down. He overtossed it, it's go time. And don't Q onto his head straight away, lead with movement, start fighting him, and hold onto your Q onto, or your E until later on. But make sure you're willing to fight him and hold your ground with Lethal Tempo, and Doran's Blade, or Grasp with D-Shield and nice short trades, chip away at him, and don't Q directly onto his head when he has ulti. If he's full HP, he's going to kill you, always beat you then, even if you have Lethal Tempo. You need to kind of butter him up a little bit first, chunk him, before you go in for the kill. Moving on to Ornn, and this matchup is all about tower destruction. So grasp, de-shield second wind with demolish of course, and stacking big waves whenever you can. Even 1 to 3, you can go for a demolish proc straight away. Go for a wave 3 crash in this one. Don't make it too volatile. You're not going to kill an Ornn, that guy's too tanky. Just stack massive waves and play for demolish, and try to get a high tempo proxy recall if you can. Even the first recall is good. If their jungler passed down, you're going to be perfectly fine. Now, if you can dodge his Q, that's going to be great. So walk towards him, dodge to the side. If he can't slow you, it's very easy. Because if his Q is down, he can't knock you up. So Q auto WE, but when you jump onto his head, run through him straight away. He's going to try W your stun, but if you run through him and get behind him and you dodge the brittle part, you'll be fine. But to be honest, even if the brittle part is on you, if you stun him well and then click away, he can't proc it. If your E is going and you have brittle and he auto attacks you, he's not going to be able to proc that either. So you have a lot of room to play this one. I'd say don't expect to get a massive lead in this one. Like, you're not going to solo kill him 3 times or anything, unless he does something dumb. Mainly play for tower destruction and not putting yourself in a situation where you can be easily ganked. Moving on to Pantheon. Now, you're going to be running Grasp, Second Wind, and D-Shield, and 1 to 5, you want to take it very, very chill, very, very relaxed. When you have level 6, you have an ultimate, he doesn't, and you're going to be able to win the extended trade. That is going to be when you do your best work. So if you can get Sheen first recall with level 6, you're going to be in a really good position. So 1 to 5, just mainly play to bait Qs, fake go for a minion, pretend to go for him, dodge to the side, and when his Q's on cooldown, you can safely farm, maybe even trade onto him if you want to. Now, make sure you watch out for in this matchup. Do not E and then Q onto his head. He will stun you, he'll take 2 steps back, and you'll lose the trade. You Q auto W, bait his spells, and then you try to use Q on your next rotation with your E still being available. That's going to be the trade pattern that you want to go for. Now, if you can ever get an extended trade, level 6, go for it. Just pop your ulti early, start bashing him down. You're going to be in a good position, but it's kind of on him. He has the agency, so you're mainly looking to punish mistakes, especially if he W's onto you aggressively. Then it's going to be time to go. You mainly play for good farm, staying high HP, level 6 Sheen first recall, and then go for trades where you lead with movement, hold onto your Q, and then Q follow him if you can. After he stuns you, that's going to be the best case scenario if you can lead with movement in this lane. Next up we have Poppy, and for this one you want to run D-Shield with Grasp and Second Wind, and just go into the matchup with the right mindset. Your goal is not to kill Poppy 500 times, of course if you do that I won't complain, but she is a neutralizer to you. She has a lot of range poke with her Q and her buckler, her W just completely nullifies your Q, so if she plays well, you're not going to be able to get a lead in this matchup. However, every Poppy you verse is going to make a mistake, so the way you want to be playing it, you want to use E on the first buckler that she throws at you. You can use your E on the whole wave. Of course, if she walks up and you can E her, not a problem, but block that buckler, hit the wave, and get priority. Now crash wave 2 or wave 3, depending on how volatile you make it, depends how much you hit the wave, and try to dodge her Q. Her Q is kind of undodgeable, but bait her to use it. Fake to go for a minion, dodge to the side. When her Q's on cooldown, you can farm safely in. 2 rules for this matchup. Never give her a wall stun, no matter what. That should be your #1 goal. If you get shot on in lane, but you never got stunned from into the wall, I'll count that as a win. Just make sure you play around that. The second one is her W. So you do not want to get your Q cancelled by her W, so you have to lead with movement. Walk towards her, auto WE. And then you can hold on to your Q to get away in the trade and CC like that. Or just make it unpredictable, like you just randomly Q auto W her from close range. A max range Q is easy for her to W. If you're relatively close, just Q auto W can be hard for him. But a good Poppy should be able to do that consistently. So it's good to put your feeler in, skill check her a little bit at the beginning, before she starts to poke you down too much. Now, because you're getting prior, you want to make sure you get the first recall. Getting Sheen on your first base is optimal, but versus Poppy, she has so much poke it can be tricky, so it's not the end of the world if you can't achieve that. Now, leading with movement is going to be really important in this matchup, but if she's low and you want to burst her, just E, R flash E2, or to W her. She's going to panic, she's going to put her W up, so hold on to your Q. So you just full combo her with flash. Your flash can't be blocked by her W, of course. She'll flash W away, and then you can Q follow for the kill. Or hopefully you just kill her in your burst. That's going to be the way you do it if you do want to all in her. Don't be afraid to commit your flash if you feel like she's low enough for the kill. Moving on to Quinn, and this matchup can be quite tricky. I recommend going Grasp with D-Shield and Second Wind, and your trading pattern has to be very calculated. You need to use your Q onto her head to bait her E. So don't use your E on your first jump. If she kicks you on the head, now you have a 4-second timer to go onto her. Your Q cooldown's 4 seconds shorter than her E, so you want to be looking to Q onto her head during that window of a stun, get a big trade onto her, and really let her work for it when her E's on cooldown, really let her have it. Now, this is a matchup where you can go Tabby's Rush, that's perfectly fine. One of the few matchups where it's okay, especially if she has an AD jungler, that would be a good first buy. you can work towards that, that's perfectly fine. But this matchup, if she plays well, if you Q onto her and she kicks you away, and then she respects her in that timer when her E is down, you're not going to be able to get a massive lead against her. You can just play for ganks, and when you're going for an all-in, remember E with our flash E2 is a lot harder for her to react to with her E, and then you can just Q follow. So flash onto her, and then Q follow after she kicks, instead of Q onto her and get kicked away. Your flash is not really going to cut in that situation, so that's how you want to be mainly playing for all-ins. Moving on to Renekton, and this is a Renekton favored skill matchup. I'd recommend taking Grasp in this one. If you're playing in lower brackets, you can run Tempo if you want, but Grasp is more optimal in this lane. Now, you want to be trying to get Pyro level 1. If he plays very well, he actually does get push, but you want to be trying to ego it. Who gets Pyro in this one? It's probably one of the closest matchups that I've seen in terms of who should get the Pyro, so you definitely want to be trying to ego it if you can. So big level 1 trade with E, where your E absorbs the whole minion aggro. If he dodges your stun with his E, then your E's going to hit the wave, you're going to get Pro. He has to start Q if he wants Pro, and if he does start Q, you want to be trying to walk behind him and get a big extended trade level 1 before he has Fury. When he's level 6, this matchup is very, very tough. But 1 to 4, 1 to 5 is not too bad, so try to get some trades down, try to play for an early game advantage, and end your trade in CC. Your E will block his stun, so keep that in mind if he ever dashes onto you, but most Renektons will hold it and wait for your E to expire, so end your trade in CC. Auto WE, stun him and then Q away him, and then wait for your E to come up. If your E is down and his stun is up, you should never be walking up and giving him that stun, or you're going to be in a very, very tricky situation. But something to keep in mind as well is that Triforce, you just destroy him, so that's going to be a really good avenue for you to punish him. And one little extra thing, it shouldn't have to come down to it, but you can buffer your W through his stun. If you do make the mistake of walking up without your E, and he dashes onto you, at least get that W buffer through it. Next up, we have Rengar. In this matchup, you're not really going to be able to do anything 1 to 5. You have to wait until you have an ulti, and he doesn't, so that level 6 combat power, and I recommend running Lethal Tempo with Bone Plating. Now, do not ward for the jungle level 1. You need to use your ward on the lane bush closest to your tower, so that you can see him when he's going in and out, so that when he jumps to a minion, you can walk up and farm safely. Your E will block his Q, so keep that in mind, but the good Rengar players will jump onto you, use the empowered bowler and click away, or just empowered shout to get out of your E. So early game is not that much use trading with him, I'd say. I recommend D-Shield. You can go D-Blade if you're confident. I'd say it's half-half either way, but D-Shield's more consistent. And just making sure 1 to 5, you're mainly playing for a good farm. If he jumps onto you, sure, fight him back. But do not try to kill him, do not jump onto him, force anything. That's going to be his comfort zone. But at level 6, when you have access to your ulti, your trades will stick a lot more. And your all-in will be a lot stronger, especially with lethal tempo. So that's when you can start to play the game. Moving on to Riven, and for this matchup you want to run Grasp with D-Shield, and your goal is to get Prior Illigan. So try to hit the wave, she's going to be trying to bait you to use your E. So you can just hold on to it, just play for the wave, because it's pretty hard to get an extended E trade onto her. But if she makes a mistake, if she Q3s you, and then walks up to farm when your Q's on cooldown, go for it. The reason I say don't really use your E is if you use your E at a bad time, if you force onto her, and she kind of hops away a little bit, she's going to be able to all-in you. She's going to be able to take an extended trade with her Qs. If she Q cycles well as well, you're going to have a really bad time. Your E cooldown's way too long to be wasting, so just hold on to it unless she does something stupid, play for Prime, and try to take a level 2 vs 1 trade up against her. Now later on in this matchup, the biggest thing is buffering your W. So try to get Grasp on your first recall, and try to leverage your TP advantage. She's going to take Ignite, so if you can get Sheen and base and TP back to lane, in some cases it might be a longsword refillable, perfectly fine, but if you can do that and base and TP back to lane and she can't recall, you are golden. That is the win condition for your matchup, using your TP advantage to gain item and resource lead over her and then not letting her base. Now when you have your Sheen, even before that, always be trying to buffer your W. You can buffer your W through her Q3 and through her stun. You need to be quick, but when you see her shield go up and she's dashing towards you, just preload that W, get the W, the Grasp to Sheen proc. It's really going to add up. Riven doesn't have any sustain, so if you get 3 or 4 Ws onto it, she's not going to be able to play anymore. And then when you go for the all-in, because it's too easy for her to WE, and cancel and dash away from your combo. If you Q onto a head, use the old R flash trick the E, use the slick back, R flash E auto W, go for the burst when she's low HP, gives her a lot less time to react. But the biggest parts of this matchup is how you play the level 1, your E discipline, when your E is on cooldown, you fully respect her, when it's up, you make sure you're not getting it baited, and buffering your W through her CC are the most important parts. Next up we have Rumble, and I'd say for this matchup no rune really feels that good. But I'd say Lethal Tempo has the edge, so I recommend taking that. The reason for that, you can't really take a short trade versus Rumble. If you try to Q onto his head, he's going to EQW and just bash you down. You're going to get obliterated in that trade, and because he's technically ranged, all of his abilities are range, you're not going to be able to get a cheeky W with Grass proc anyway, so I recommend just going lethal tempo, playing the early game consistently, let him get prio. Even if he starts E, you could technically get push, he's going to poke you down that whole time. It's very hard to cleanly crash against him, just let him get prio. Be very delicate with the wave, don't take any volatile trades, let him push you in, and then look for an all-in trade, or if your jungler's pathing up, play around ganks really well. Playing for ganks is such a massive part of this matchup. Of course, receiving ganks makes any matchup doable, but this one, he's got no mobility. You can point-click stun him. It's very easy to play around your jungler in this type of matchup, so mainly play for staying high HP, getting good farm, playing with your jungler, and then going for an all-in later on. If you have Triforce and you're even, you'll destroy him. Of course, being even is the hard part, but just make sure you're playing around your jungler very clearly, communicating the angles when your wave's in a good spot, and making sure you're not trying to mindlessly push and getting your wave stuck outside of his tower. One extra tip as well, you can go Hex Drinker Rush in this one. I really hate Hex Drinker Rush on Jax, so only do it if they have AP on their jungle as well. Next up, we have Rise, and for this one, D-Shield, Graspin, Second Wind, and you want to be starting Q. So whack the wave back into the bush, stack up your Grasp straight away, and then just Q auto. Q auto every time your Grasp is available, get them lower and lower, and just make sure when you have access to your stun, you're preloading your E. You want to EQ E, because if you Q onto him and then E, he's going to root you. Your E has a little bit of a lockout where you can't cast E2, so he's going to stun you and click away, and then run you down the lane, so make sure you're preloading your E in advance before you go onto him. But this matchup's all about making it volatile, just Q onto his head and keep bashing him down. He has no sustain, and play heavily around your jungler as well. This champion is very free kills with your jungle ganks. Moving on to Set, and for this matchup you can run Tempo or Grasp. I used to prefer Grasp, but after the Jax buff, I prefer Tempo, so I do recommend that right now. So lethal Tempo with bone plating is going to be great, but if you do take Grasp, just make sure you have that short trade mindset. Now you want Doran's Blade and you want to be playing for Prime, so hit the wave straight away as it comes in, and if you can get a trade with him when he's away from the minions, that is great. The second you hit him, you're going to know if he started W or E, so if he started his W, you'll see a little bit of grip bar, so make sure you're always pre-moving, trying to dodge that. If he started E, just make sure you're not giving him the avenue where you E, and then he stuns you against a minion and clicks backwards and dodges your helicopter. Really want to avoid that. So you try to get pro, you try to get level 2, and then when he walks away, you Q onto his head. When he's not near the minions, when he doesn't have anything behind him to stun you off of, you can annihilate him in the trade. But if he does have a way to stun you, or it's a relatively close situation, lead with movement, walk towards him, auto WE, stun him, and then Q away him. You don't want to greet that little extra auto against him, because he's going to EW you and you'll lose the trade, and Qing onto him is risky as well. Same reasoning, he'll EW you, even if you stun him and he buffers W through your stun, not going to be a great trade. So leading with movement is going to be very optimal, and then when he's low, then you can Q onto his head and bash him down. Moving on to Shen, and for this matchup, go D-Shield and either Grasp or Tempo, depending on your preference. Both are perfectly fine. I'd say Grasp is a little bit more optimal. Now, you want to be running Bone Plating and Demolish no matter what page you take, because you want Demolish if he ever ults away, you just blow up his tower, or if you're doing well, you can bait him to use Taunt, Q to dodge it, and then walk up and proc Demolish. Really realistic patterns. Now, for the early game, Shen 1 to 5 is actually not Super Jack's favored, but when you have ulti, it's going to be great for you. You have an ulti and he doesn't, so you have to play it pretty patiently until then. But make sure you get priority. You need to get level 2 before him, or you're going to have a bad time, so try to do that. And the number one tip for this matchup, when you Q onto his head, he is going to try walk past you and taunt you back into the tower. So instead of Qing, walking through him like you normally would, with a different champion, you want to Q onto him and click backwards. Do a little bit of a moonwalk there, because then he's going to walk back as well. And if you're both walking backwards, then you can start bashing him down, autos, and you're going to be perfectly fine. So be very careful. If you QE onto him and he walks through you and taunts you, he's going to be able to space out your E and then bash you down with his 3 Qs, and your trade is not going to go well for you. So you have to have great movement in this matchup. But the most optimal thing is lead with movement, auto WE, and then just stun him and Q away, or Q follow him if he taunts away. That is great. Just make sure you end your trade in CC. You don't want to Q follow his taunt, stun him, get that one greedy little auto attack that all Jax players like to do, and then he just bashes your head down with Q. You need to avoid that at all costs. His W will also block your W, so make sure you hold it, anticipate it. If you cast your W and he chucks it up, just walk next to him, just chill, and make sure you don't waste that ability. Next up, we have Shyvana, and for this one, Lethal Tempo, second win, and Demolish. The second win's not super important, but you do want to blow up her tower. And for this matchup, you just go Deep Blade and try to walk behind her level 1. Take a big level 1 trade, make it volatile, get the big Lethal Tempo stacks going, abuse your level 2. And try to go for a wave 3 crash in this one. If she walks up and your E hits the whole wave because you're bashing your head in, you can wave 2 crash, that's fine. But if she's sitting really far away and just tossing little fireballs at you, then go for a wave 3 crash, it'll make wave 4 come back to the middle, and then you can continuously trade onto her. Next up, we have Singed, and for this matchup, I'd say it's not really a great matchup for Jax, but it's not really a bad matchup either. You're both going to be able to do what you want to do, so I wouldn't be too stressed about it. Just go Grasp with second Wind and D-Shield, and look to chip away at him with W. Every time he walks near you, just give him a little bonk on the head with W and Grasp, try to get Sheened on your first recall, and chip away at him like that. At level 6, you're not going to be able to kill him, so 1 to 5, you do have an opportunity if you can get him low enough. Just make sure you avoid the mistake of queuing onto him and then using E. He's going to flip you off him, you're going to lose your stun, so either you preload your E and then Q stun him, or you just don't use your E at all, and you can buffer your W through his flip. So always be looking to do that, and you can imagine with Grasp and Sheen, it's really going to add up. So I'd say for this, you want it, it's not really Jax specific, but make sure he doesn't get into the proxy position. So TP back to lane straight away when you base. Don't give him an opportunity to proxy. When he's there, you cannot stop him. But it's Singed if he does drop a wave or runs around the back, or maybe you make a mistake and he does get into that proxy position, you can also proxy as well, so don't worry too much about it. Next up, we have Sion, and for this matchup, I recommend Grasp if you're playing in higher ranks. I'll say Master Plus, maybe High Diamond, and for everyone else, just run Lethal Tempo. The reason for that, the really good Sion players are going to space you quite well to the point where you can't really use Tempo that well, but the average Sion player will not, so you're going to have an opportunity to just bash him down with Lethal Tempo, and if you wanted to go Bork second with Tempo, you're going to be able to one-shot him in side lane also. So this matchup, the 1 to 4 is very easy, the level 5 to 9 is very, very difficult, so make sure you're trying to get a leap 1 to 4, so get pro no matter what, big trade whenever he walks up, try to get extended trades, make it volatile, chasing down the lane, and make sure you're not getting spaced. If he hits you with a slow, do not put your E up. If he EQs you, just Q away. If he misses E or as he's on cooldown, then you can Q onto his head and there's nothing he can do about it. So his E is actually his main defensive tool in this matchup that you need to play around, because without it, you can very easily get a extended trade onto him. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you get a hit in this matchup, you can look to proc Demolish under his tower. Really a good strategy for this one. Moving on to Tahm Kench, and for this one I recommend Lethal Tempo. You can take Grasp if you want, either way it doesn't really matter too much. He is a neutralizer, he is a meatball, so you don't have to feel pressured to kill him or to get a big lead. His champion has pretty much no value out of lane, so mainly play to get early pro, get great farm, stay high HP, don't make it too volatile. Of course if he walks up to farm, you can whack him, chip away at him with W, that's fine, and if he's low you can go for the all-in. Or if he Qs for a minion or Qs and misses you and you can Q onto his head, you're going to win the trade, that's going to be fine. My advice for this matchup is just don't try too hard. He's a meatball, he's a neutralizer. If you get 10 CS per minute in the early lane or 9 CS, get your Triforce at 11 minutes, you're going to be golden in that game. And if you can proc Demolish along the way, that's going to be great as well. Next up, we have Teemo, and this is probably one of my least favorite matchups for Jax at the moment, so I strongly recommend D-Shield, Second Wind, and Grasp, and your goal in this one is to not take too much damage 1 to 3. He's going to get pro, you need to use bush control very, very well, so look to do that. If he ever Qs you randomly to poke you down, of course Q onto his head and beat him up, that's perfectly fine, but your goal is going to let him crash, you're going to get level 3, try to stay 80, 85, 90% HP if you can, and then go for a trade when you have access to all of your abilities and a minion advantage, because your wave is bouncing back towards him. That's going to be your time to strike, but you need to play for jungle ganks in this matchup, so try communicate when it's gankable, keep tabs of your jungler, and communicate the great opportunities for him. So for this matchup, I would say if you get to Triforce and you're only down 25-30 farm, you did pretty good, so don't go too crazy, but most Teemo players will make the mistake. They'll use blind at a bad time, or they'll miss a back timer, so always be looking to leverage your TP to gain an advantage. If you're both if he's half HP and let's say you're 20%, you base and TP back, and now you have item advantage and full HP, and he misses his recall timer, that's going to be a great opportunity for you, so always be looking to leverage your TP to gain an advantage, and utilize your jungler as a resource to shut down the Teemo. Moving on to Trundle, and for this one you want Lethal Tempo, Bone Plating, and Demolish, and don't be afraid to build split pushing items into him like Borg, because if you beat him in the 1v1, you're going to win the game. If you lose, his champion actually has some value. So the biggest thing about this matchup is you want to be playing around your E cooldown very, very well. If your E is down, he is a champion. If your E is up, it's not. So don't give him a trade when your E is on cooldown. End your trade in CC. Auto WE, hit him like 3 times, stun him, Q away or walk away, and you're going to be in a really good position. Be careful queuing onto his head, because he's going to pillar you after as you try to get away and then bash you down, so lead with movement. But this champion has no range ability, he has to walk up to farm, so leading with movement, trying to get behind him, take a big trade of Lethal Tempo, ending it in your CC, and then looking to all in him when he's low HP, a very realistic strategy for you. Next up, we have Tryndamere, and this matchup's actually not as easy as it may sound, because he just has way too much sustain, and Jax has none. However, level 6 is actually pretty good, because that's when you can really start to chunk him and get meaningful poke onto him. Early game, you just don't really have the damage. So the thing is, he's going to get power against you early game, and he's going to stack up his Fury and try to walk towards you and start fighting you. So the trade pattern is, you're going to E when he starts hitting you, of course, try to block his auto, try to react to it if you feel confident. He's going to walk through you and try to spin away. So it's important that you react to his E. You don't want to cast your E early if he's still holding E, because he's going to spin after you and bash you up. You need to react to his E animation with your stun, so that even though he will get away with the spin, he's going to get stunned and take the damage. Then you just need to make sure his E will come up when your E is on cooldown, so that's when you need to be very, very respectful, and don't let him just spin onto you and whack you 3 times in the head. That's not going to end well for you. So just make sure the trading pattern later on, when you feel more confident, you lead with movement, auto WE, he spins away, you Q follow him. Do not Q onto his head. It's not going to go that well unless he's low HP, anything like that, and you know you can tank him. Just make sure you're leading with movement at all times, and play the 1-5 a little bit more reserved unless he makes a mistake. Now, I also recommend for this matchup, going Ninja Tabbies. I'd still say after Triforce, to be honest. I don't really like delaying it unless the jungler is like a Graves or something. Of course you can, but Frozen Art second item is amazing in this one, so you should be doing that every time. Moving on to Udyr, and this matchup's just way too hard to short trade up against, so I recommend Lethal Tempo. Ignite's pretty good but not mandatory. I'd say TP's better most of the time. Really depends on your personal preference. Now, with this matchup, you need to be playing around his Awakened Shield. So if you start fighting with E, he pops Awakened Shield, just Q away. Even if he pops Awaken R, Q away. Don't fight him in his Awaken, and then when that's on cooldown, that's your time to trade on your second rotation of your E. So bait his ulti, you can tell by the bar down below, and then all in him when his ulti is on cooldown. Moving on to Urgot. Now for this matchup, I like to go D-Shield with Lethal Tempo. This is one of these matchups where no rune really feels good. It's hard to use Lethal Tempo a lot of the time, but you also can't really proc grass very often either. So just go Tempo so that if he makes a mistake, you can run him down, or in the side lane, you can beat him as well. Now, the goal for this matchup is to 2-wave crash and then just let the wave come back all the way towards you while utilizing the bushes to stay high HP. That's a pretty good strategy. And then when the wave is near your side, you go for an extended trade. So the trade pattern is, you walk towards him with your chest out, with your E going, bait him to use his E, and if you dodge it last second, pre-dodge it. Don't rely on just reaction alone, pre-dodge his E. If he wishes past you, you're going to completely bash his head in, so always try to do that. But be careful when his Q is up. If he hits you with Q, you're not going to be able to dodge the E, so it's good to go at a timer after he Q pokes you, wait for the slow to wear off, and then go for that trade pattern, and if he ever messes up, it's really easy for you to go for the kill. Or another good trade pattern, if you want to go for an all-in, especially at level 6, you Q onto his head with E, auto W, or Q onto his head without E, auto W, and just flash his E. If he E's towards you, towards your tower, and you flash off to the side, especially if his flash is on cooldown, you can run him down. It's really easy to play this matchup if you dodge his E. Of course, it's fully in his control. If he plays perfectly, you're not going to farm him, but 99% of Urgot players are not quant-tape, so you're going to be perfectly fine. Just always be thinking about his E and how you can avoid it by pre-dodging or even flashing it if you want to go for that all-in. Next up, we have Vayne, and for this matchup, you want to be running D-Shield, Grasp, and Second Wind, and there are 2 approaches to this one. You can either start Q, hit the wave, stack your Grasp, Q auto her, Q auto every time, my personal favorite, or you can start E and play kind of to conserve HP. When the wave gets near your side, you're level 3, then you can go, really depends on how comfortable you're feeling, but I'd say Q start is slightly more optimal. But if you feel like, their Pantheon could be clearing up, my Graves is clearing down, I don't want to make it too crazy, then you could just go with the E start and be a little bit more reserved. Now in this matchup, the goal is to make her use Condemn without using your E. If you can Q auto W her, So if she tumbles towards you to poke you down and you Q onto her, auto W, she has to E you. Then you have this massive timer where he's on cooldown, your Q will come back up, and if you can ever Q onto her stun, it's lights out for her, so that'd be a really good opportunity to go. Also, if you do hit your stun, don't be afraid to ulti auto W just for a bit of burst, even if you don't kill her. Make her flash away or chunk her. She's not going to have TP. She doesn't have really any sustain, so any poke you do onto her will really stick, so make sure you're abusing the fact that you have D-Shield and Second Wind, and trying to poke her down with Q auto W grass procs. But if she's good at condemning, if she condemns you pretty quickly, try to Q and then W quickly, your W will buffer through the condemn. So make sure you're trying to use your Q from bushes as well to give her as little time as possible to react. Also, if she's positioning poorly and not respecting the bushes, you can preload your E at the bush, even if she has condemn up, QE auto W, so she won't be able to condemn and dodge your stun. Next up, we have Vladimir, and this is one of Jax's hardest matchups in the game, especially if he has Ignite, so I recommend going Grasp, D-Shield, and Second Wind. Now, give him Prio. You can technically get Prio if you play for it on Jax, but he's going to poke you down so much that you're not going to be able to really do anything. You're not going to be able to crash the wave properly, and if the wave's stuck outside his tower, your game is just over, so let him push, use bush control really well, stay high HP. You do not Q onto his head with Grasp, he has too much sustain. Just play to survive, just play to pick up good farm, and if he tries to poke you under tower, of course you can go for a trade onto him. Now the trading pattern for this one, his pull cooldown is 28 seconds. So if you jump onto him, auto WE, he's going to W your stun, then you have this big timer where you can go onto him, but that's fully in Vlad's control. If he respects while his W is down and then walks back up when it's up, you're not going to really have that timer, so versus the good Vladimirs, not much you can do, but most Vladimirs will make that mistake. They're too keen to Q you on the head, so make sure when that 11-second timer, when your E is up, your second E's up and his pull is down, it's go time and you're looking for that all in. Now something else to keep in mind, not really Jax specific, but your goal should be to never tank an empowered Vlad Q. Never tank his Q2. Yet Q away if you have to. Never let him get that. It's too efficient of a trading tool. Too much damage, too much healing. So make sure you're not getting hit by that by any means necessary. And if you can ever crash a wave and get a free recall off, take it, hold on to your TP. You're going to need it in this one. He has way too much poke. He can stay in lane way too long. So even if you base and TP with a longsword advantage, in this matchup specifically, it's not going to really amount to anything. So it's better to hold your TP in this one. Moving on to Volibear, and for this one I recommend Lethal Tempo and Ignite, Ignite being optional, personal preference, and make sure in this one, the #1 rule, ending your trade in CC. So auto attack him with the auto WE, make sure you E early against him, you never want to E late. If he gets a free stun onto you, it's game over. Your E will block his Q, your E will block his W, so really good matchup for you. So make sure you're ending your trade in CC, auto WE, stun him, walk away. Even if you Q onto his head, it will be fine early game, as long as you don't greed that extra auto after the stun, and then just chip him lower and lower, and then when he's low enough, you go for that all in, leading with movement is optimal, auto WE, and then Q follow if you have to, and just make sure when your E is on cooldown, you're a different champion. You play very respectful. Do not give him ever an opportunity to QE or to W. When your E is down, make sure you're giving a couple of minions when that spell is on cooldown. Moving on to Warwick, and for this matchup I recommend Lethal Tempo with Teleport and D-Blade stun, and don't make it too volatile early game. You're not going to be able to do anything meaningful to him at the start. Of course we know Warwick's going to out-sustain everything, which is why Grasp isn't really good. You take a short trade, he's going to heal it back anyway. You want Lethal Tempo so that you can actually all in him when he's low HP, and beat him up in side lane. But he's going to get Prior, you want to take a trade with your E. So when you hit the minions as much as you can, if he runs onto you, your E will block his Q. So big trade, really milk your E duration as long as you can. Keep in mind, he can buffer his Q through your E. So if the Warwick player you're versing can do that, cut off your E a little early so that it really messes up with his timing. But when your E is on cooldown, when your E stun's finished, do not auto attack him one more time. He's going to get unstunned, he's going to hit you back, and it's not going to be worth it. Even if you did 200 damage to him, well, 300 damage to him and he did 100 to you, he's just going to whack the wave twice and be fine. So make sure you're ending your trade in CC very well, and be willing to give minions. You're going to let 10, 20 minions maybe even bleed out and die during the time when your E is on cooldown. Maybe 20 is a bit much, but you get my drill here. When your E is down, you cannot let him force a trade onto you. Now, the goal for this matchup is to get 950 gold on your first recall. 800 is fine. Well, 850 is fine, 950 is optimal. So for execution is potion or execution is refill on your first base, and get base and TP back the second you have that. This is going to be a deviation from our normal plan, rushing Triforce, but Warwick, you need executioners. Then when you have that, your trades are actually going to stick. you can take bigger trades, and when he's low HP, you can go for that all-in, but I still recommend leading with movement. Auto WE, bash him down E, and then Q away, or Q follow if you want to play for the kill. Just don't get barrier baited, and in this matchup, if you don't get behind, you get Triforce with execution is even or slightly ahead, you're going to run him over, his champ will be useless, so don't be too crazy during that 1 to 5 period, where his champion is just Thanos. Moving on to Wukong, and for this matchup I recommend Grasp and Bone Plating and D-Shield, and you want to be looking to chip away at him with W and Grass proc when he walks up to farm, as he can't farm from a distance. Now if he tries to do the same thing to you, chip away at you with his Q, use your E, react to his Q animation with your E, and then Q onto him, auto W, stun him, and click away, and you're going to be in a fine position. Just don't go for an all-in when your E is on cooldown. You want the short trade mindset. He wants long trades, you want short trades, and then when he's low HP, then you go in for the burst against him. Next up, we have Yasuo, and this matchup, even though it's very good for Jax, the 1 to 3 can be a little bit dicey. But I still recommend going Lethal Tempo and D-Blade if you're confident, D-Shield if you're not, and trying to get Prime. So bash the wave as much as you can, try to get one cheeky auto attack onto him first to break his passive, before you go for your big E ideally, but if he runs at you and starts fighting you, of course get that E going, hit him in the entire wave, and make sure you're getting Prime no matter what. Then when you're level 2 vs 1, jump onto his head, bash him down, you know the drill, you're going to be perfectly fine. Don't always rely on your E to block his Q. If you can dodge his Q just by movement, that's going to be the most optimal thing you can do, so try to pre-dodge it in advance, and then if you walk towards him, click backwards, dodge a Q, and then Q onto his head, you're going to be in a really, really good position. Also keep in mind, he can ride the wave to dodge your E, so if you walk towards him and use your E and he starts dashing through the wave, you have to be ready to Q follow him, but even if you stun him, it won't cancel a dash, so make sure if he does kind of cancel that stun animation by dashing away, you click away as well to the bushes and kind of wait for your next E to come back up. Moving on to Yone, and for this one I strongly recommend running Lethal Tempo. It makes the level 1 so much better for you, and you outscale him quite hard inside as well, where with Grasp, if you're even or even just slightly ahead, he'll beat you inside lane eventually if he has tempo and you don't. Now the goal, level 1 trade. Try to fight him away from the minions if you can, try to dodge his first Q, so walk towards him, dodge to the side or dodge backwards, and try to get behind him. Get behind him, make him run through you to get back to tower, and if you dodge even 1 Q, he's not going to be able to stack Q3 and you're going to be in a great position. Now your trading pattern in lane is going to be, he's going to W to poke you down, wait for the shield to drop off, and then Q onto his head at a timer where he doesn't have Q3 loaded. If Q3 is loaded, never Q onto him. He's just going to Q you, cancel your Q animation, do damage to you, and then W after. The trade's not going to be great for you. Now he's going to be trying to use E to dodge your E as well, so make sure you react to it. When you react to his E and cast your E early, your E too early, so that it stuns him, and then you click away, and then he's just going to snap back to his ghost, but you're already running away, and then you play off your next E cooldown. But if he's low HP, you can just camp the ghost and fight him, of course, it depends on the situation, but this is one of these matchups where you want to butter him up first, get him lower and lower, trade with your E, end your trade in CC, chunk him lower HP without taking much yourself, and then go for that kill. But level 1, if you dodge his E, and you can get a big spicy extended trade, where you do around 80% of his HP bar, he does 40 to you, perfectly fine, go for that. These types of trade patterns where you want to stay healthy is more so for the level 3 to 9, the later points of the matchup. You don't want to be low HP against this one, because you can trade and damage to him without taking that much yourself. Moving on to Yorick, and for this one I recommend going Lethal Tempo with Ignite. If you take Ignite, you should run Bone Plating and Demolish. If you run Teleport, you can go Cookies and Cosmic Insight. Either way is perfectly fine, depends on your personal preference. Now Lethal Tempo is really important because you need to get the big level 1 trade. Try to zone him from XP. Now if he plays well, he's going to get the XP, but play that way. Try to chase him to the tower, big Lethal Tempo trade, keep whacking him, try to react to his Q with your E if you can. If you block that ability, you're in a really good position, and just keep whacking him. Doesn't matter if his second Q comes up, just keep hitting him with Lethal Tempo level 1, make it volatile, make it spicy, because level 6, if he's even, you're going to have a tough time. So make sure you try to really bash him down and abuse that Lethal Tempo gap. Then you want to be going for a wave 3 crash. If he fights you near the wave and your E hits the entire wave, do a wave 2 crash. Wave 3 crash is a bit more optimal. Just make sure you get it in cleanly. Wave 4 bounce back to the middle, and then jump onto his head and run him down. Now ideally you try to bait him to use E, so pretend to go for a minion and dodge his E, and then directly Q onto his head when his E's on cooldown. That's going to be the best way to play it. And for our final matchup, we have Zac, and this is another one of these short trading matchups, so I recommend going D-Shield, Grasp, and Second Wind. Now, your goal for this matchup is to get early priority. I'll say to go for a 3-wave crash, don't make it too volatile. This champ is infinite sustain, so it's not that worth playing aggressive early game. Of course, if he does something dumb and you can bash his head in, feel free. But your goal is to get 850 to 950 gold on your first recall, get Executioners and Potion, or Executioners and Refill, and then you can play aggressive. Then your trades are actually going to stick onto him. Don't forget to be stepping on his blobs whenever you can so he can't sustain for free. And just make sure you're always whacking him on the head with W when he walks up to farm, chipping away at him, and if he does go on you, just make sure you're not in a situation where you E, walk towards him, he E's and clicks backwards, and you get your E cancelled. Make sure you're using your E from a space where he can't really E onto you without you being able to cancel it. Next up, we're going to be covering the mid game, and I wanted to showcase an example of a very difficult game. So as you can tell by this kill score and what the towers look like, me and my entire team are quite far behind. This is going to be a tricky game for sure. So in this situation, even though Dragon is next, I know we can't really fight it on this timer with no Twitch ulti and we're so far behind. So it's better for us just to give it, but I need to keep that in mind. I know I'm weak-sided right now. My team's playing topside, we're giving Dragon, so I have to respect. This is a really good rule of thumb to follow if you're playing on the side next to the next objective. So maybe your top lane when Herald's up, bot lane when Dragon's up, you have to assume that they're there until proven otherwise, because they should be here. They should be getting vision and taking the free Dragon and ganking me if I try to push in the bot wave. So I just have to catch as high up as I can without dying. That's going to be the rule of thumb that you follow. You pressure as hard as you can without dying. Of course, it sounds simple, but it's a really important skill that a lot of players fail where they try to pressure as hard as possible. That's not going to be your default. Just pressure as much as you can without risking your life. So I clear this wave, and then back out to eat a jungle camp. So the rule of thumb for if you can take a camp or not, if it's not a bad play, is if you've got nothing else to do. If I push bottom here, I'm going to get ganked by the Fed Diner and die. And if I join a fight, there's no real fight to take. You can look at mid lane right now. So there's nothing else for me to do. So if there's no fight or there's no pressure for you to do, that's your best time to eat a camp. I don't want to see you eating a camp on your way back to lane when your team's playing aggressive around a dragon or anything like that. You want to do it when you have nothing else to do. Now, this upcoming point is going to be very important for your Jax journey, as Jax is one of the best middle grounds between splitting and teamfighting. So here, a teamfight is happening, but my TP is not available right now. So we're going to pause as soon as I have TP, as soon as I can join this fight. The reason I don't come right now is because in my mind, the fight is already pretty much decided. My mid is dead, they killed support, everyone's kiting backwards. Maybe I TP, maybe I get one kill, maybe I save one teammate, but the outcome of this fight is already set into stone. Even though getting a kill might be nice, but a dopamine, it's going to make the next play bad. So you'll see what I mean very shortly. Now I'm maintaining good tempo. I'm not TPing, fighting for 40 seconds, and then basing and answering the Silas's bottom push. I'm maintaining my own good tempo for the next objective, which is Aatrox. So, of course, if Silas wasn't there, I'd break the tower, but he is. So I rotate to top, push mid on the way in, and the reason I'm going top, of course, Aatrox is next. I want to create that pressure ahead of time. So now I'm trying to push in top, make somebody answer me, and make a 5v4 around Aatrox. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I TP'd into this top fight. But I'm maintaining my good tempo and looking to make this numbers advantage fight. So I'm watching this play right now. It didn't look good straight away. This TF was like 0-4, something like that. Didn't really want to fight with him. So I was waiting for Lee Sin to rotate down. So I put a pressure onto the Urgot here and then TP and get here first. So I was able to make this numbers advantage fight. Even though Urgot TP'd in, like we just mentioned, being late to the fight, you might as well not be here. Look at the time when he arrives. Everyone is already dead. He might get a kill. He might save one guy. Spoiler alert, he's not going to. He's going to get shit on. But he's not the decider in this fight at all because he's late. So he made the mistake that we avoided in the previous sequence. Now you'll see, yeah, we push in bottom. And again, do I want to spend 20 seconds leashing my jungle on this Aatrox? No, our tempo is too important. So I push in bottom, break the tower, and base straight away. Great tempo for the next upcoming sequence. So you have to be very quick with your decision making on Jax. Very decisive. I want this fight or I don't want this fight. That's going to be better for your learning. And then the rule to follow is when the play is done, you base as soon as possible. I broke the tower as quickly as I can and recalled, and now heading straight back top. Everyone's still farming, junglers watering his plants, eating his camps, you know the drill. But we're already here. We're already making pressure and pulling people around. So their jungle support, again, I'm pressuring as much as I can without risking dying. But their jungle support's wasting time on me top. I'm pushing in the wave here. I made Urgot answer me. So I'm one step ahead again in terms of tempo here. So I'm going to be looking to push in top, rotate down to this dragon, and create another numbers advantage player. So I do just that. Remember our rule of thumb: if you can't pressure the tower 1v1, then look for a play. I cannot hit tower in front of Urgot, I'm going to get flipped. And so it's better for me to rotate down and look for a numbers advantage fight here. So I do that, I rotate here first, and they have to respect me. Even though I'm not hitting a champion right now, they have to respect me, which allows my team to get full vision of Dragon, and now they have to make the choice. If you want Dragon Soul, you have to face check here. If you face check, we have advantage on this fight. So you can see they face check into my combo, followed it by Ali combo, and we're able to win this fight even though our team is very far behind here. Of course, Lucian made a mistake earlier, but I still gave my team the highest chance of winning this fight by getting here early, getting full control, and making them face check us. And you'll see yet again, after I break this tower, instantly recall. These guys can waste time if they want. They can eat walls, they can eat one more wave. But as a top laner, we have the most important job in the game, not to pat myself on the back too much, but us top laners are just built different. We need to be very quick. We base straight away, straight back to side, creating pressure for the next player. So I push in bottom here, and my tempo allows me to get tier 2 as well. And then they come to gank me, of course, with Zhonya's, with Sundered Sky. We're not going to die here. We're going to be perfectly fine as long as we play it well. So playing it a bit slow here. And then waiting for my moment to Zhonya's. Right now, just before I die, one more auto off. And then we're able to win this fight. So, and yet again, base straight away and rock up to Baron here. So from this point, just a relatively straightforward Baron sequence. Get here early. When it's Baron, Dragon Soul, or Elder, you don't want to be in a situation where your team fights without you, especially if you don't have TP. So I'm just rocking here straight away, looking for the flank and playing for this fight and helping my team get full Baron control. So I don't play the fight the best here. You can see the Elise manages to get away eventually. I was a bit too greedy with my flash, but it's fine. We chunked them. We create a lot of space here. I think she jumped at golems or something like that, and we're here first. As long as you're the first team at Baron, getting full control, you're going to have the advantage for the fight, just like that one around Dragon. So I get control here, help my team a little bit, waiting for them to come in. I'm always going to jump the wall and try to put pressure on their jungler, not leashless the whole time, but their jungler was late, so I might as well help DPS a little bit. So kill this ward here, looking to go into Dinah if she ever walks up. But she goes over, good combo by Alistair, and then just put pressure on her. Just playing defense, not letting her get into the pit. Zhonya's the Urgot E here, and we're able to pick up the Baron. The fight didn't go the best, but you can kind of see the macro behind it went quite well. So we're in a really good position heading onto the map, even though a few of our teammates die in this fight. So I'd say the main takeaways for this mid game is going to be the rules that we talked about. If you can't make pressure inside 1v1, you look to make a numbers advantage play. So, and making sure you're maintaining good tempo. The second the play is done, the second you're done fighting, or you've got your tower or something like that, you base straight away, head back onto the map with good tempo, making sure you're always trying to be the guy there first. That's going to allow you to maintain good farm and XP. You can see here, even though I've died 4 times and fought a lot, I'm only around 20 CS behind the clock, maybe around 30. So we've maintained good farm in this game, even though we have been very impactful as well. So these are the rules that you're going to follow if you want to maintain good farm, but still be impactful in these mid-game team fights. Now, for our next example, I wanted to showcase a game where I'm winning through side lane. So in this game, I really didn't want a team fight. Everyone on my team is playing pretty poorly, including myself. Died to a lot of ganks, except for our jungler, he's doing fine. Bot lane's playing Jhin, so I didn't really want a team fight in this game. You'll also notice I'm building towards Blade of the Ruined King, even though they don't have a champ like Mundo. But it's like we talked about in the item section, I'm versus a full split pushing champion, Yorick, and I'm behind. So if I build Sundered Sky here, I wouldn't be able to beat him 1v1. So I'm building Bork because me being able to get side lane pressure up against him is more valuable than more team fighting power, especially in this game where it's unlikely we can win a 5v5. So here I'm pushing in bottom, looking to create pressure away from the next objective and play for this top tower here. So I push in top, break the tier 1, Yorick TP's in, and you can see just from my build alone, I've got lethal tempo and ignite, and even though the Bork's not done yet, bit of extra healing as well, I'm able to beat up this guy 1v1. Definitely recommend lethal tempo in this matchup, so you can do that even if you're behind. Try to get the Maiden Tomb. Now, this is going to be a really important concept for you split pushing. The time when you play the most aggressive in side lane is when your teammates are pressuring the map. And the time where you play the most passive in side lane is when your teammates aren't doing anything. So when they're basing or dead, farming Gromp, that's when you play more respectful. But you can see right now, even though I'm 800 HP and no mana, I'm a free kill, my teammates are pressuring, they're playing aggressive. So now they have to choose between helping their team fight in this top river, top jungle, or answer me in the top tower. So even if they killed me, that might be the difference between my team winning the fight or not, pulling somebody away, and if they don't answer me, then I get that big juicy tier 2. So here I back away, and the reason I'm going to stay here on the map is just because I'm close to Bork and I don't want a team fight. If this was a game where my team was playing well, or I wanted a team fight, I would base straight away, but here I'm going to stay and greed for my Blade of the Ruined King. But I notice Yorick walks up, Rixai's in the area, so of course I'm going to come up and play for this kill here. So we get a nice little freebie. I'm going to Q onto him, hold my E for a little bit to make sure I'm not Eing when I'm stuck in the cage. When I'm out of the cage, now it's time to go and just lethal tempo this guy's head off. Click away from the maiden, base straight away, and now I've got my block. Now my 1v1 potential is so high, as you'll see very shortly, and you can see Dragon and Artican's both up in 20-40 seconds in a normal game, where we're even or we can win a team fight. I would go there. This is not that case. I need to be creating pressure. I need to pull people away from those objectives, especially with my Bork build, my team fighting so weak. So I go top here. I notice TF greeds a little bit, so we're going to be going for this kill. So using the Rek'Sai tunnels as a little leapfrog, TF played this really well. I was holding my E, I reacted to his Q, thinking it was his W, and actually buffered W perfectly through my stun, so he actually does as best as he can, but I can still kill this guy. So notice I'm not flashing on him right now, and I little click back here, so he can't stun me when my E is down, but now my E's back up. I'm going to be flashing in as soon as he leaves this bush here. So flash in, waited for the stun card to drop off as well, and now it's time to go, able to burst him through. So you'll see, the time to play the most aggressive is when your team is doing stuff on the map when they're pressuring. Right now my team is pressuring Dragon, which is why I played that aggressive. Even if they sent 3 people to stop me, we get 2 objectives for free, definitely worthwhile. So I get the kill, I make Yorick answer me, and then I base and I run straight to this fight, because I don't really have time to pressure top before this Artican. So I go here, and you can see not leashing it yet again. I'm the jungler's worst nightmare, but it's just more important. We have way more important things to do, like pressuring side lane, so I do that here. But this was a mistake, so this is kind of a good showcase of what not to do. When your teammates aren't pressuring the map, that's when you play respectful. My team has to base. They just did Artican, they did a great job, so I should not be playing aggressive here. So Pantheon ulti's in, kills me here, but you can see the power of lethal tempo Bork versus strong side lane champs like Yorick. I'm able to turn and get a kill onto him. So it's not the end of the world. So at this point, I'm actually okay to team fight. Double Ruby, it might seem like a tiny buy, but look how big my HP bar is, and with a lot of resistances from Jack's ulti, I'm definitely more willing to team fight now than I was before I had this little spike here. So heading back onto the map, this is a situation where which lane you go to doesn't matter that much. Dragon and Baron both up in 3 minutes, so there's no real next objective for ages. The reason I'm going bottom is because tier 2 is up, so I'd rather be there than top. So I look to make pressure, Yorick does the same thing top, and while they answer him, they've got TF answering me, but again, Jax is such a great pick into TF here. He can just barely do anything. I can just ignore him and hit the tower, and get it in just 2 waves. So I break the tier 2, push the wave, and now I'm looking for a play. I push in bottom, made Pantheon answer. I'm okay to take a skirmish or a team fight now. So push in, just steal the wave because I have nothing else to do. And then I'm just going to ward jump away and be perfectly fine here. So this is a situation where, even though I have a split pushing build, this is Dragon Soul. It doesn't matter what you're building. If Dragon Soul or Baron or Elder's up, everything you do in the game must be for that objective. So I run straight here, out of base, looking to join this fight. Because if I win top and they take a 5v4 without me, and we don't get Dragon Soul, that could be a game-losing mistake here. But I went a little bit too early, so I had to flash out here. I thought TF would stun me, his stun card just dropped off, so I flash Q'd. Rek'Sai was a little bit late here. You know, junglers, they need to farm golems before a Dragon Soul fight. There's no way they can be here early, but I should have played around it 100%. So walking in here, trying to get Rek'Sai to go first. And now just going to be playing off this team fight. So this is a fight where I played you can see the weakness of Bork, where if I've Sundered Sky and like Seeker's Arm Guard here, I can go pretty crazy. But because I don't, you'll see I go in, get as much damage down as I can, and just die straight away. But I still got a lot of work done. Our team was strong at this point, so we're able to win the fight. So you can see the differences between this game and the previous one, where the previous game, I mainly focused on team fighting and great tempo. This game, I was trying to create as much pressure inside as possible and gain resources through them. And the reason for that, my team was so far behind previously, our comp wasn't that good at team fighting at that point in the game. That was better for me to do that through side lane, gain some resources, create pressure, get strong, and then join the team fights later on. Moving on to team fighting, and this game right here has a lot of good examples of what a good team fight on Jax looks like, and as you can see by the game, very, very close. Performance in the team fight matters a lot. You can see my mid and my AD carry, kind of aliens at this point. I'm the guy that has to be the difference maker here, as I'm the one that's the strongest in this game. So you can see straight away from my positioning, I'm trying to get at more of an angle. I really don't want to front to back. I'm trying to play up here, try to get a more creative angle from the side. You don't have to get a deep, super, Kennen Smith flank from the back, but a little angle from the side is perfectly fine here. Now, this is where it gets tricky. when they face check you, if they spot you, if they see you, you need to be very patient. You need to master the staring contest on Jax. Jax is the king of the staring contest because nobody can engage onto you. You've got ward jump, E, you're so hard to get to pin down, so Jax is really good at just pressuring the backline. The longer I stand here, the harder it is for them to walk up. Either you guys have to walk up, follow in your front line, follow up your Xin Zhao, follow up your Leona, and risk me flanking you, or you just have to stare at me as well. So my value is going to be high regardless. So they go in, my Zir goes in, I guess, and they go on to him. So I'm able to get a good angle in the end. So you can see the moment TF threw his stun card onto my Zir's head, good human shield there, I go in onto their Lucian here, burst him really quickly, I stun him before he dashes the wall, and just get as much damage as possible, and then kite out. Start fighting the Xin Zhao here. So you can see we won this fight purely from my positioning. It was so hard for them to follow up their team, and when they saw an angle they couldn't resist, my Zir trying to dash onto Leona for fun, I was able to get my flank. If they didn't go in, I would have stayed there until the moment looked right. That's the important part of flanking well. You need to hold your position and be confident, and wait for the moment to strike, instead of just rushing into all your abilities straight away. Really important to hold your spells on Jax, and wait for the right moment. So let's skip to the next fight. It was around 24 if I remember correctly. The next important fight. So this one was another difficult one. You can see here, they're engaging on my team. My jungle gets caught out. Mid is late to the fight. And I've got yet another flank position. I didn't group up with Pantheon here. I'm going from a flank, trying to jump over the wall, straight onto Lucian here. Now this is where holding spells becomes very important. Why do I need to E right now? When he's stunned. He's already stunned. I don't need to E. I have no risk of being auto-attacked, so I hold on to my E. I start hitting him. I wait until now, just before Leona turns and tries to Q me, I get my E up. So you can see I'm not just Qing straight away. Lead with Q, auto, and try to hold on to my E for the right moment. Able to use it here and block the Leona Q, and then kill the Lucian here. So really good discipline on E is really important on Jax. And here, if I use my Zhonya's correctly, I would have been the king. But I just got chain CC'd and died. But it's still fine. You can see a good example of holding E at the beginning of this fight. And my positioning as well, always looking for those flanks. And then for our final fight, around 26 minutes here. So you can see, yet again, the fight starts by my jungler getting caught out. We're seeing the pattern here. I'm just kind of watching him. You can see the staring contest doesn't just apply to the enemy team. If your teammates are inting, play it chill. Put my E up in case TF stuns me, and just burst him straight away. So go in here, I've got Seeker's Arm Guard, I feel confident to play this one a bit more aggressive, and here I'm trying to find an angle to go into them, but Lucian dashes away, not able to get it. So here I'm just clicking forward, following up my Pantheon, E, you can see here, the little click to the side, and then flash forward. The little slick back cannot be underrated. If they see you running at them, they're going to expect you to flash in, but if you do a little click away, like I did here, makes them get that false sense of security, then you can flash in and get the stun off. Really, really good to use flashy instead of QE, way harder for them to react to it. And for our next team fight, I've picked yet another difficult one, so a game where my teammates are all far behind. You'll see really shortly when I get the tab going. Jungle, mid, support, all really great players, so we're going to have to play well yet again. So these are the best fights to watch, as you can learn the most. A game where your team's all playing well, it's just way too easy. So you can see they're pushing in, 3 of my teammates are caught out, so I'm going to have to play this fight quite slowly. So playing it patiently, waiting for them to commit to the tower, dodge the Rakan W, and then I go in here. So you can see I'm walking towards them, trying to bait abilities, bait the Zerafi or the Rakan W, anything, and then go in for the stun and click back straight away. Sometimes you just want to end the trade in CC, not just in lane, and the team fight as well. I can't just sit here and bash the Lucian down, I'll die. So double stun and to click backwards, bait him in, then Zhonya's him and the Zeraf combo. You can see just buying a lot of time. Jackson team fights, I would say modern day Jax is less about jumping on the enemy AD carry and beating their hidden. It's more about buying time and making as much space as possible with your E, Zhonya's into E combo, which is why Zhonya's is such a powerful build on him. And then, yet again, we hate front to backing, we're going for a TP flank, so looking for these nice flank opportunities whenever you can, especially with your TP. And I'm going to lead with movement here. Never Q straight away. Lead with movement. And then the reason I jumped here, I'm walking towards him to put pressure onto him to use his E. Pretty sure he used it in hindsight though, but here I didn't know that. Click to the side and then Q stun him, ulti, and to burst him. Team's able to follow up here. So you can see I made it hard for him to flash my combo with the slick back yet again. The little step to the side before committing. It's just too easy if you run straight at them. The little click away makes it more difficult for them to react to it. So get his flash here, and then just let my Hecarim be the mid shield, go in, and then just bash everyone down, flash E onto Lucian. Yet again, flash E is such a powerful tool, really hard to dodge, and we're able to turn the game from this fight alone. After this, the next fights weren't anything special, but that was definitely the game-changing play. You can see that weaving in another fight style, really, really important. You need to be realistic. Can you jump on the AD carry and kill them and tank their CC, tank their damage in a close or a losing game? Probably not. So you need to be kiting in and out of that fight, and then that combined with always looking for flank opportunities was why we're able to win this game from that fight alone. And for our final example, I wanted to showcase my favorite Jax teamfight of all time. I refuse to make a Jax guide without showing this clip, as it's just the most impressive Jax teamfighting I've ever seen. So as you can see here, BLG is far behind. This is Bin's Jax, best Jax player in the world in my opinion, apart from me of course, and he's got this really good flank here, making it really uncomfortable for them. So his positioning alone really on point in this fight, but what's the most impressive part is how he held his abilities. So holding spells is one of the most important teamfighting fundamentals on Jax, and you'll see how he showcases it here. He's just constantly pressuring them, staring at them the whole time, making it really uncomfortable for them, kind of that sheepdog mentality, making it so hard for them. If they engage on his team, he'll get a flank. If they engage on him, like we talked about your Jax, you're so hard to get engaged on with your E, with your Q, in this case Flash as well. So just ease the Tristana, gets knocked back, burns the Rumble ulti, Tristana ulti, and yet again, still flanking, still holding this position. His jungler even completely entered here, but he's still holding his ground here, making it really hard for them to go in. Then Rao gets the combo the moment he's been waiting for, but you can see even though he got that good combo, he didn't try to flash follow because he's going to get locked down by Maokai. So wait for the Maokai CC, flashes onto the Tristana here, so instead of panicking and following up this engage, holds his ground, burns the Maokai W, the Maokai Q, and then flashes in, flashed on the Tristana, and then Q follows onto Kai'Sa, so able to really hard carry this fight from those two very important concepts alone. It's just my favorite fight to watch, as that amount of discipline in a high stakes game when your team's behind, the comms are going crazy, is just so impressive, so really showcases this class on this champion. So that can apply in solo queue as well, as we just saw from our previous examples. Make sure when you're in that flank position, you're being patient, you're holding your ground, and you're waiting for the right moment to strike. Moving on to common mistakes, and for this one, I'm going to be going through the top 3 laning mistakes that I've seen, and top 3 mid-game mistakes as well, from not only my Jax students from pretty much every rank, but also Jax players in general. So starting with the laning mistakes, and the number one mistake by far has to be not crashing your wave decisively. Jax has pretty bad wave clear, you have resource problems with mana and HP, so if you're not crashing your waves well, you are going to get stuck, and especially if you verse champions with trading tools like Ambessa or Aatrox or Gwen, your lane is going to be completely ruined. So it's really important not just for the first 3 waves, but at any point in the lane. The trick to it, the way to improve upon this, is every time you're pushing towards your opponent, you ask yourself, do I want to slow push or hard push the wave? And if the answer is hard push, you need to nuke that wave and get it in as quickly as you can so that your opponent cannot block it. Now the next mistake I see, leading every trade with Q. If your opponent is playing a champion that has to walk up to farm, which is pretty much most of them, you don't need to lead with your Q. Of course, if you verse a Jayce top, you're going to have to lead with Q, but if you verse Mordekaiser, Darius, any melee champion, they have to walk up to farm. So if you lead with movement, stick out your chest, approach them, hold on to your Q, you can either continue the trade and chase them down, or disengage the trade by queuing away. This is also important versus champions with disengage. So if you queue onto a Riven's head and get stunned, she's going to dash away, you're going to lose that trade. Same with Gragas, Poppy W, so many champions with disengage. If you lead with Q, you're going to lose the trade. But if you lead with movement, you have a much higher success rate. And the final one, not ending your trade in CC. There's that one auto attack I see almost every time where Jax jumps onto someone's head, stuns them, and greets that one auto. Because in your mind, they're stunned. I want to get damage down while he's CC'd. But now, because you took so much time to get that extra auto, they're going to retrade onto you. Of course, that doesn't mean to never order them when they're stunned. If you want to run them down with lethal tempo, of course you can. Or if they can't retrade, maybe they use their abilities onto you, and then you jumped onto them and stunned them. Yeah, you can get that extra auto down. But I've seen it way too many times where someone would stun a Set or a Gwen, something like that, and get that one little auto attack, and then their stun duration expires, and now they get retraded onto. Where if you just walked away when they were stunned, the trade is going to be a lot better for you. And for our mid-game mistakes, so the number one is of course over split pushing. The rule to follow for this one, it's relatively straightforward. If you can't make progress inside 1v1, you crash the wave and look for a fight. So make progress implies maybe you can kill them or break the tower out from underneath them. If you can't do that, because maybe you're 1-0 or 0-0, and you're just going to get ran down by whatever champion you're versing, if you try to ignore them and hit the tower, then you look for the play instead. So if you can't make that progress because someone's there and holding it and you're not strong enough to ego them 1v1, then look for a fight instead. Of course, that rule is easier said than done. How do you know if you can make progress or not? That's going to come with experience, and if you ever don't know, and there's no big fight that you're missing out on, you can experiment and see if you can do it, but just be wary, especially with champions with Conquer or Lethal Tempo, champs good in long trades. They might be able to kill you even if you're ahead, because they're starting the trade against you, by fully stacking up their rune. Now the next mistake I see is blowing your abilities the second a fight begins. Now this mistake's not Jax specific, I see this on every champion in the game, but on Jax it matters a lot more, because if you jump in QE, now you're stuck there. Sometimes you want to just Q, hold on to E, sometimes you don't want to Q at all. You need to be changing your default to when a fight breaks out, you're playing patiently, because Jax is not engaged. Even though, yeah, you've got a dash and a stun, you're not Alistar, you're not Leona, you don't want to go in, or you're not Malphite, you don't want to go in and tank all their ability and all their CC, you want to go in at a time that's good for you, get your damage down and your CC. So normally your follow-up secondary engage, or you go in onto the backline when the enemy front line is going onto your teammates instead, so that you can't get CC'd and locked down. And finally, poor E usage and skirmishing. So a good E is going to be in a situation where you can't get spaced out or cancelled or locked down. It's going to look a little something like you directly get into their opponent and stun them, or maybe you flash stun, something like that, get a 2 or 3 man. But if you just, let's say Nautilus goes in, hooks your teammate, and you put your E up and hit him and stun him, that is a bad E usage. You don't want to be using your CC on low value targets. It's pretty rare to get 2 E's off unless you have Zhonya's. Sometimes we can, but it's really important that you optimize your E usage in fights and review them and see, because if you go in with your Q but you still have your E up, you have a little bit of room to play. But if you go in with your E down, or if you go in and waste your E and you just get CC'd, so for example, you jump onto the enemy AD carry with QE, and then you get Alistar knocked away, really bad E, but the Alistar combos your teammate, or they combo you first and you held onto your E. Now you've got your E up, now you still have your Q, it's going to be a lot better. So of course it's really specific when to use your E, and it is a difficult skill to work on. Just make sure you're putting the time into it, and your default when a fight begins should not be to smash Q and E straight away. It should be to take a breath, approach the fight patiently, and wait for your moment to strike. Moving on to Jax's identity and the mindset you should have when playing this champion. And the best way to describe Jax, in my opinion, in terms of his identity, is he has the perfect middle ground between side laning and team fighting, probably the best out of all champions in the game, where he's really good at both. Where if you compare him to champions like Irelia, champions like Fiora, who are better than Jax at side laning, they really fall off in team fights compared to him, where another champion like an Aatrox or a Renekton might be a little bit better than Jax in a team fight early game, they don't have that same amount of side laning threat. So Jax is that perfect middle ground, which gives you a lot of options in the game. If you can play well in your lane consistently, you have more options in the mid game than most top lane champions, so your avenue to win the game is a lot more flexible. Now he also spikes extremely hard on his first and his third item, so when you hit your Triforce you want to be getting a lot of work done, and when you hit your third item, normally Zhonya's with level 16, you're really powerful in a team fight as well. Where his second item spike is just not quite as strong compared to other champions, where a champion like Camille, champions like Fiora, they just keep getting stronger. First item, second item, third item, it just keeps going up. Jax, you do have a little bit of a dip. I wouldn't say you're weak at second item if you played your lane well, but your first and your third item spikes are significantly better, so make sure you're playing around those as well if you can. He also has, I would say, out of all top lane champs in the game, one of the most complex matchup spreads out of all of them. The reason for that is most champions that you play have patterns that you can follow that work most of the time. Everyone knows Garen's pattern, Warwick has the pattern, of course, you just keep pushing, trading HP, Volibear's pattern. Most top lane champions in the game have these patterns that work a lot of the time. That doesn't mean matchup knowledge is not important on any champion, but Jax, your trade patterns are not really that intuitive. Where Garen's the easy example, QE, use W on the CC, relatively straightforward, and then play respectful until your abilities are back up. Where with Jax, some games you need to lead with movement, auto WE, some games you need to Q directly onto their head and hold your E, and sometimes it changes depending on in the exact same game, depending on the situation. They might be full HP, so you have to lead with movement, and then when they're low, you can lead with Q. There are so many different ways that you can play out your trade patterns, and we'll be going through them in this guide, but it makes it really difficult in terms of the matchup spread. So if you are planning to play the Jax, make sure you're committing long term, because you need to become very good at your matchups, not just good at the champion and more of an individual level. Now, in team fights, I'd say his identity is he's one of the best champs at making space. Again, his identity is different. Modern day Jax, where you used to just jump on someone's head and just beat them to death, but now you're really good at making space. Especially utilizing your Zhonya as well. You can go in, you can CC people, you can jump back out, or maybe you flash and Q out, jump in Zhonya's, stuff like that. You're really good at making space because you have a lot of threat on the back line. You don't have enough threat to just jump on them and kill them like you might be able to do on Ambessa or Olaf at times. Of course, if you're Tenno, of course you can do it, but in most games where you're just threatening the back line, you don't have the threat to kill them, but you have enough threat to make them really hesitant to walk up, really uncomfortable to play, so you make a lot of space for your team in that aspect, and then when you do go in, you can buy a lot of time. Now, the final point for his identity, you can break the game when you pick him in the right situations. There are some team comps you're gonna verse on Jax that are borderline unlosable if you play well, especially champions that have high auto attacks like a Graves, or champions that rely on auto attack based CC like Twisted Fate. Jax is going to be pretty much unbeatable in those games. Granted, you play well in your laning phase, even if you're counterpicked, the champ's value is still going to be extremely high, but we'll touch on that more in the drafting section. Now, for the mindset, so what do you want to be thinking as you head into a game as Jax? Keep in mind, you're a very, very resource-dependent champion in the early game. You have pretty high mana costs, and you don't have any HP sustain, apart from second wind or whatever you want to take, so you have to be very, very disciplined with your back timer. Your back timer has to be your top priority over everything. There's so many matchups on Jax where you might be winning, you might be doing well, you miss one recall timer, and now you're stuck there, low HP, low mana, anything like that. Maybe you greeted your Sheen, that's a really common mistake that I see, or greeting a tower plate. If you miss your back timer, you are going to be screwed, because the longer the lane goes before people base, it's going to benefit the enemy champion universe most of the time, because Jax is one of the more resource hungry champions that you're going to play. So make sure you're really aware of that and you value your back timer very highly. Now, if you get to your Triforce even or slightly ahead, you're going to be able to beat most champions that you verse. You're going to be in a really good position. However, it's not like Camille, where on Camille, I like to teach chill until Triforce. That doesn't mean do nothing. Of course, if you can win lane. But Camille, you're okay to play the game a bit slower. Jax, if you can win your lane, win your lane. Take good trades, play volatile, try to get ahead. But just keep in mind that you don't need to feel pressured to get fed. The reason you want to get fed, of course, it's easier to carry the game, and there are a lot of matches where you can realistically get guaranteed advantages. But again, if you're ever respecting jungle, you're getting pressured, don't feel like, I have to get fed, I don't want to respect jungle here. It's fine. If you can chill until Triforce, you're going to be perfectly fine if you're even or ahead, so don't feel too pressured to get fed to the point where it's making you make mistakes in the game. Now, you want to use your strong side lane threat always. Every game that you play, you want to be using it. Even in a game where you can just win every single team fight, you still want to use side lane as a way for you to get farm and XP, but also to create pressure. You always want to be pulling people to you. If they come to you, then you can make a 5v4 team fight. If they don't, you can break a tier 2. You need to be using that in every game that you play, even in a game where you can't break the tier 2, so maybe you can't hit it 1v1 or anything like that. You still want to use your side lane pressure to maintain good farm and XP, but also to pull people away so they can't just group up as 5 people, because a lot of champions might be stronger than you in a 5v5, or some games our bot lane might lose. I know it never happens and we're going to lose the team fight, so you need to be using your side lane pressure to be that difference maker, getting the most out of your champion, or else you might as well just play Malphite and ARAM. You don't want to be ARAMing on Jax, you don't want to be only split pushing on Jax. You need to really develop that skill set of using side lane to pull people away from where they want to be, probably a dragon fight or something like that, and then you can make that numbers advantage fight. And finally, for the mindset, in terms of team fighting, your goal on Jax in a team fight is not to kill the AD carry and make the 0-6 Ashe 0-7. Your goal is to make as much space as possible. So you want to play the team fights very patiently. You want to hold the backline, if they're in the backline. No front to backing. You want to be threatening the backline, but hold your abilities. Play patient. Put pressure on them. Make it really uncomfortable for them to play, because it's really hard for them to engage onto you, because you have your E, you've got ward jumps, you have flash. But if you go onto them and you tank all their CC and you queue in, you're stuck. You're probably going to get killed if you don't have Zhonya's, especially these mid-game team fights. So just put a lot of pressure onto the backline, wait for someone else to start the fight. Maybe your Alistar gets a good combo, maybe their Alistar gets a good combo on your teammates, and then you can go in because that CC is going to be down. So make sure you're playing team fights quite patiently. Next up, I'm going to be going through how to learn Jax step by step, just to give you a rough outline of what you should be prioritizing at certain stages of your Jax journey. So level 1 Jax. So at this point, you should have already watched this whole guide, of course the whole 3-hour movie. It's no light work, or at the very least a majority of it, so that you have a good understanding of what winning a game on Jax looks like. So the first thing you want to do is load into a training tool. I'd say every day would be great. 5 minutes before you play your first game of the day. Don't stay in there for an hour or anything like that. Just 5-minute warm up and get the hang of his auto attacks. So you probably expect me to say comboing, and of course some light combo practice will be great too, but Jax's auto attacks, you need to be very careful with them. They are a little bit clunky when you first play them, and you need to practice moving between autos, so auto move, especially with lethal tempo. The timing is going to change. The reason why Jax's auto attack animation has a bit of a build up, but also your attack speed changes because of your passive and in some games lethal tempo, so you need to become very comfortable with it. Now on top of that, you're practicing your auto reset, so auto W and Q auto W is important because a lot of Jax players QW. When Q auto W, you get the auto attack reset, extra auto in there, where QW you're really nerfing the amount of damage you're getting in your burst combo. So really important that you practice that and just become very confident overall with your auto attacking, with your resets and moving in general, and then some light combo practice as well at the end for a little bit of fun and just getting some comfort in that as well. Now, after that, your main goal every game that you play and for your review is your first 4 waves need to be consistent. You need to be either decisively crashing wave 2 or wave 3 every game. Again, I've got a full video on that if you ever want to take a look at it and get more of a better understanding of how to execute that. But if your wave gets stuck on Jax, you're going to lose most of your matchups. You need to become very, very clear, really concise on when we're crashing wave 2, when we're crashing wave 3, because if you fail that execution and your opponent knows what they're doing, you're going to be in a very tough spot. So that needs to be the step 1, the thing that you work on the most. Now, after that, practice ending your trade in CC. So this is going to be important in volatile matchups. So say up against a Set or a Darius, you stun them and you get that one greedy extra auto attack that Jax players like to get. Now they're going to hit you back. Now Set's going to E, punch your head in and W you. Darius will pull you back in. But if you end the trade in CC and disengage straight away, so they can't hit you back, then you respect until your E's back up. You're essentially getting a full burst combo for free. So make sure you're ending your trade in your CC and practicing that well. Some matchups you might not even be able to Q onto them. You might need to approach with movement, stun them, and then Q away. Again, ending your trade in CC. So you need to get the hang of that so that you're not winning a trade and then getting shit on after. So the trades are going pretty even when you could be gaining more so HP advantages. Now, after this, start to think about leading with movement or queuing onto their head. Think about it before you queue. Don't think with your queue, think with your head, and decide ahead of time what you think is going to be better in this situation. So for an easy example, if you're full HP and your opponent's half HP, let's say they're playing like a Jayce or something, and you Q auto W him and he knocks you away, that trade's going to be great for you. But what about the reverse? What if he's full HP and you're low? Now you don't want to lead with Q. You want to lead with movement, try to make him E your way, then Q onto his head, or maybe a Gragas as well. Lead with movement, he body slams you, and then you Q follow. Start to think more about when you're leading with movement, or when you just can Q onto their head, so that you don't get yourself in a situation where you Q in, you get fully bursted by like a Kennen, and then he chases you down the lane auto-attacking you, and you get destroyed in that trade. Try to think about it in advance, and if you actively decided, I want to Q on this guy's head, looks like fun, and you do it and you get shit on, you're going to learn a lot more than just mindlessly queuing every time. And finally, in the mid game, make sure you get your lane assignments fixed first. So the balance of when to split push and when to team fight is going to be a tricky one, but the level 1 of that is making sure lane assignment is good. If Dragon's up in a minute and you're split pushing bottom tier 2, you're just going to get ganked and die. You cannot make pressure next to that Dragon, because they all want to be there anyway. It doesn't matter if you pull them to bottom, they want to be there getting vision and playing for Dragon. You need to be pulling people away from the objective, so to do that, you want to be going to the opposite side of the next objective and trying to create a numbers advantage. Now, for level 2, at this point in your Jax journey, you should feel very confident in your first 4 to 5 waves. That doesn't mean you do it perfectly every time or you always win lane, of course nobody does, but what it should mean is you have a pretty good idea of when to crash wave 2 or wave 3 and how to do it decisively so that your early game goes quite smoothly the majority of the time, but again, not every time. You should also feel quite confident with your Q auto W, just in general weaving in auto attacks, your auto resets, and just autoing in general without cancelling too many, and just feel like mechanically on the champion you feel at a decent base level. Now when you get to this point, this is where you need to start the more advanced part of buffering your W. You can buff your W through pretty much any CC, Riven Q3, Gragas E, any foot Renekton W, stuff like that. So you need to be practicing this very consistently. You need to be thinking about it as you enter your matchup, any lane with CC, and trying to buffer your W through it. Even Camille eating you onto the wall, you can buff your W through that. So pretty much any CC you play up against, you need to be trying to buff your W through that, especially if you can proc your grasp as well. It's going to make the trade very efficient because while you are CC'd, your W is going to be ticking on the cooldown, you get the free damage, so you're probably going to get a second W up. But if you get Riven Q3'd, then Riven W'd, then she's going to dash away, you're probably not even going to get one opportunity to W her, let alone 2. Now after this is where you need to start to pre-plan the long trade versus short trade mentality. And this is something a lot of players struggle with on champions like Jax or champions like Yone that are good at both, but this is where you need to think about it in a lot more detail. So any matchup, and it might change depending on the game you're playing, but you need to be thinking, what type of trades do I want? So for example, up against a Set, you probably want to take a short trade against him until he's low HP and then go for your all-in, especially if he has Ignite, because his champion is really good at long trading, and if you tank his W, you're going to lose. Where another matchup, say versus let's say a Camille, she's good at short trading, you're going to win the long trade, so you need to be thinking about this in detail, and if you get it wrong, if you decide, I want a long trade, and you take it and you get killed, it's going to be very obvious very quickly, and then you review it, you see if it's execution, or if you just should have short traded there, and try to really build up that intention so that you can know when to do each one. So now, at this point as well, a lot of your review time and that should be in the early lane, but specifically on situations where your wave gets stuck. If your wave is ever stuck with kind of the casters under the tower, or they have a freeze or anything like that, you need to review that in detail and find out why, and try to prevent that happening again and improve on that skill set. Because Jax is one of the worst champions if your lane gets stuck, because you have no wave clear, you have no way to kill the minions under tower, you're a resource hungry champion, mana and HP, so if you miss your time at the base, your lane is ruined, compared to a champ like Aatrox or a champ like Mordekaiser, you've got these big abilities that can get you out of jail there. Jax, you don't have anything like that, so if your wave ever gets stuck, you need to review it, and unless it's very, very extreme jungle gap, then you need to work on what happened there. Now, on top of this, your back timer has to be your top priority on Jax, no matter what, so you need to make sure they're very consistent. If you greed for a plate, or help your jungler do grubs, I hope not, or help them in top river, and you miss your back timer, you need to take this very, very seriously, because this can ruin your lane. I've seen so many of my Jax students, they're winning lane the whole time, they maybe even get a kill, they greed one extra tower plate, their opponent comes back, and now your lane is ruined, because you're a low mana Jax with half HP, you can't play the game anymore, so back timer has to be the top priority. And then finally, this is where a little bit of your focus can be on team fighting. Start to review your patience. Jax is a champion where you need to pick your moment to go in very well. If you queue in and you tank the Rel combo and Ari charm and all that, you're just going to die and do nothing. But if you play it slow, you wait for someone else to engage or wait for the right moment to strike, you're going to have a much higher success rate. So make sure you review your moments in a fight and see, nice, that was a good time to go in. Or even though that fight worked, I think I went in too early, I got lucky, the Ari was missing charm or something like that. Start to review the moments you went in, even if they go badly or if they go well, and seeing if you picked the right moment, and then trying to optimize that in the long run. And finally, we have level 3, and at this point in your journey, you shouldn't have to really think about your ability usage that much. It should feel very natural to you when to short trade or long trade, when to lead with movement, when to lead with Q. You shouldn't have to be thinking about it that much, especially in lane, and which will open up your mental stack to work on other aspects of your gameplay. But if you feel like you're not even or ahead consistently in your matchups, because there's not really any lanes that you play where you should be getting killed, or it's, in their control to kill you or not. Worst case, if you're playing in higher ranks, maybe you're up against a great Kennen or Aurora player, you're down 20 CS, maybe a plate or two into Nidalee or Jayce or something. Other than that, if you're not even or ahead consistently, you need to be putting more time into that. You should be getting to Triforce and not be behind. Now, after that, make sure playing for plates in lane is your next step. Of course, if you get a kill or if you get a big CS gap, that's great, but playing for plates is the fastest way to progress the game. If you can break plates from underneath them, utilizing your demolish well, and explode the first tower especially, that's how you're really going to explode the game and carry. So especially if you're playing in ranks below Master, I'd say it's really important for you to develop that skill set when you feel really confident on Jax and the matchups that you play in. Now you need to start to make progress on the tower. The next step is, for the mid game, when to group and when to split push. So this is one of the most important skill sets on Jax in the mid game, because if you make a mistake, you miss a major fight that you should be at, or maybe miss a tier 2 and join a fight that you shouldn't, it can lose you the game. So you need to be really on top of it, on top of your reviews and thinking about it in the game. Dragon's up in 30 seconds, do I actually want this fight, or should I go top and make pressure? Or maybe I'm top, Dragon's up in 2 minutes, but they're playing aggressive mid, should I stay here and pressure or look for that flank? You need to be constantly thinking about it and not be that Jax player that only split pushes or the Jax player that ARAMs all the time. You need to really hit that middle ground, extremely important later on in your Jax journey when you feel like you have a good understanding of how to lane and team fight. And after that, for team fighting, I would say your positioning is going to be very important, because you want to be flanking, but you don't have to do a deep super flank like a Kennen 5-man flank. You can just attack from a side angle. So start to review your positioning heading up to the team fight and see if you could have made it a bit more pressuring. See if you could have stood in a situation that puts more pressure on the opponent's backline without giving any threat to yourself. And make sure you're not over-flanking to the point where they can just turn onto you too easily, or front to backing too much to the point where you're not threatening their backline at all, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're tanking their CC, and you can't threaten their backline without having to go through their front line. And then finally, develop your matchup understanding. So of course the matchup section for this guide should make it a lot easier for you, not to pat myself on the back too much, so you can always skip to that when you see it in champ select, but your journey is going to be different to mine. So you're going to make different mistakes than I'm used to seeing, so you need to be playing the matchup that you're versing and write down what's going wrong. Maybe you followed my advice in the guide and it went well, but then later on in the matchup you started losing. You need to start reviewing the matchups and writing down what went wrong. and then try and do one thing differently, one or two things better next time, especially matchups that you struggle with. If you beat, let's say, Set every time, of course, you don't have to put that much time into review. But if you feel like you normally lose to Renekton or normally lose to Garen, you need to be seeing what you're doing wrong. Maybe you gave them a trade when your E was on cooldown, or maybe you queued onto their head when you should have led with movement. You need to be thinking about what specific mistakes you're making to their matchup, take a note of it so that you remember it a lot better, and maybe even try to watch a VOD of it as well, and really try to kind of tick off your matchups one by one until you have a complete understanding of the majority of them. Moving on to a full game review where I talk you through exactly what I was thinking throughout this entire game. And this is a pretty recent one, I think a couple of days ago, and I wanted to pick this one because I ran Lethal Tempo and Ignite into Gwen, so volatile setup, volatile lane, and it really changes how you play the mid game, especially you don't really have TP. So there are a lot of good takeaways from this one, and my teammates also didn't play very well, so I definitely had to put on the carry pants. You can see straight away, not off to the best start, somehow Rakan getting caught out, so we're going to have to get to work. So level 1 versus Gwen, you can see I'm deep warding in the river because I know I'm going to play really aggressive, I'm going to play really volatile. And the number one thing for this matchup is holding your E. You cannot waste your E because then she has a lot of freedom to walk up and hit the wave. So I'm trying to fight her back here, away from the wave, and make her work for the XP. Make her walk through me to get the XP here. Look how long I'm holding my E. I've tanked a few autos, tanked the minions. I don't care. I cannot use my E at a bad time. One thing to keep in mind for this matchup too, as soon as she auto-attacks you, you know if she started Q or E. So now I know that she started E, so she's trying to dodge my E with her E, which is really common in this matchup. So I'm holding it. I refuse to use it. I'm waiting for you to E, because if she has her E enhanced attack speed and damage, and my E is down, I'm going to get destroyed. So I hold it until now. The reason I use it now is because I know she has to walk through me to get away, because she is close to my tower. So I'm able to get a lot of value from it, and then I flash to follow her E and get the stun, and then keep bashing her down. So this level 1 is taking me a lot of fine-tuning to get the hang of. It's definitely a little bit more difficult than it looked there, but just make sure holding your E is the most important thing. Being really disciplined with it, and trying to force that trade without touching the wave. A good thing about me not touching the wave here, you can see right after this kill, you can see I use my E, holding onto my Q until she dashes away as well. It's another good Jax fundamental there, waiting for the dash, get the kill. The good thing about me not touching the wave is now it's coming back towards me, so I can recall straight away. Remember, our back timer is our top priority, so I get that off, and come straight back to lane with a kill and 0 farm, so Ignite Lethal Tempo, special right there. So now the wave's hit, I'm going to be pushing out and looking for a trade. I missed a bunch of farm. It was kind of unlucky, to be honest, in terms of the HP threshold, but I want to use my level 3 verse 2. So another good Jax trading pattern, using your Q without using your E. So I Q here, auto W, just beat her down and don't use my E, because if I use my E here, she'll dash away. So I just hold on to it. My Q cooldown is significantly shorter than my E, almost half of it, so it's better for me to hold it here. So I had to use my Q there. Of course, can't give up the cannon, but I'm trying to make her miss it. So I'm putting a lot of pressure when her cannon gets low. You can see walking behind her, leading with movement. So many of the Jax fundamentals we talk about showcased in this matchup. Use my E now, hold my Q the whole time. The reason I popped E early here is because I didn't want her to walk out of the thing here. So I wanted to stun it before I was out of the range. So keep fighting her here, holding onto my Q this whole time, you can see. And then finishing her off with the Q. So really good start there. So triple sword. The reason I went triple sword, 700 gold, of course, best recall like best buy I could have done. But even if I had phage money, I probably still would have gone triple sword. As with lethal tempo, I prefer just having as many blades as possible. So coming back to lane here, and again, letting the wave come back in, leading with movement here. Got my E there, popped it early before she dashed away, and then playing a bit differently when my E is on cooldown. So even though I'm ahead, I still have to respect. If I tank a couple of Qs unnecessarily, get too low, it can get, it can fall apart. So I'm playing off my level 5 and waiting for my next E. So I'm likely going to take a trade here because my E is almost back up. So here we can see go for the W, Q auto, and click away. But because I have lethal tempo, I'm going to be holding my ground and fighting her here. So get up a kill. So now we're off it to a really, really good start. She's kind of stuck there. Even if she ran away and recalled and didn't fight me back, the wave would have been frozen. So she would have been in an unplayable situation regardless. So here I went Ruby over half-bound Axe just because half-bound Axe is pretty terrible. So I'd rather just have more so closer to getting Sheen Phage because half-bound Axe is just such a weak item. So coming back to lane now. So when the wave comes in, I'm going to look for a big trade. I want to take a trade now, level 6v5 ideally. But you can see I'm still playing discipline. I'm 3-0 that shit on this Gwen as hard as I can. I'm still trying to bait out her Q. So bait it out here. And then I'll be looking for a trade. So there, again, not using your E. You know what they're going to do. You know they might Fiora parry or Gwen Q away or pop PW, anything like that. You got to be anticipating that and holding onto your E. But here I use it. Put my ulti just for the chunk, because now she's so low that she can't really stay under tower. So even though my ulti doesn't kill her, it makes her too low to stay. but she does stay. So of course we're going to be playing for this dive. So stacking up my passive and my ulti on the minions before I go for it. And then here we go, auto W, put up my E, wait for the flash, and then Q follow her. So you can see I'm very, very patient with my Q all the time, waiting for her to E, waiting for her to flash away, never really being in a situation where I Q onto her, and then she dashes away, and then I'm just stuck there, sitting on my hands. So one plate in recall, because she has TP, and remember the back time is the top priority, more so than the plate. Her TP was actually still down, no, there it is, a couple seconds off, so right on schedule. So normally here, if I had enough gold for it, I would go Sheen, sorry, but my inventory is actually full. So better for me just to go Phage and an extra dagger, something like that. Even though I've seen people go the haste, the glowing mote thing, to get Sheen faster on your next recall, I prefer dagger, especially with lethal tempo, just because glowing mote's pretty much not buying an item. You're not going to get 2 E's or 2 Q's off in a trade or an all-in, so it's pretty much the same as not buying anything. I'd rather have that little bit of extra damage from dagger, a bit of extra attack speed, than going glowing mote. So slow push here. So this is where I've kind of got a switch in my mind now. Grubs are up soon. Their jungler could be playing top side. So I really want to be playing for grubs and not getting ganked. My priority is right now is surviving because their mid and jungle are really strong. Surviving the pressure they have over killing this Gwen for a 5th time. Especially in this game where I'm kind of the only guy playing well. If I make a mistake here, we can lose it. So you'll see, even though I'm quite fed, I'm not going to be playing that aggressively. Even though I'm Ignite Lethal Tempo Jax, not dying here is way more important than growing my lead even more. So slow pushing here, fishing for a little W and Q away. Saying a little trade, I had full HP, so I wanted to put my regen to work there. And then fogging down for these grubs. I'm not going to lease the grubs at all. Remember, we play for void grubs without really hitting them. So I'm just going to eat fruit, hit the scrying bloom, and be ready for the fight. But I saw Nautilus leaving, so I knew they weren't really going to fight it. So I just had a little look and go straight back to top. So you can see because I crashed the wave cleanly, the wave bounces back to the center here. So I can just slow push it as much as I can. It's kind of the pattern where you just stack 2 waves at a time. Cleanly crash it, bounce it back to the middle, and just make it so they bleed out farm. This feels a little bit nicer than letting the wave come all the way back here in the season. Sometimes I'll do that, but here it's pretty late into the game. She's already 0-4. I'd rather just slow push waves, make her bleed out, and Q onto her head whenever I can, just like this. Perfect timing, and click away. So never using your E when you know they're going to dash away. Really, really consistent. So this is where the game got a bit scary. I think my team got quadra killed, something like that. But my game plan's the same. Slow push this. And on my mind right now, I want to get to Triforce pretty cleanly without having any type of mistake. Because even though my score looks pretty nice, I've got Phage and 2 swords. I'm not actually super strong at this point. So I'd rather play a bit more disciplined, get my Triforce before I really turn on the gas. So quadra kill from bottom. That's what you love to see when you're ahead. Your team taking a 4v4 down there at Flipper. But we're going to be fine. So I'm going to go for the plate here, most likely. Just get the tower plate, Q away, and then grab my Triforce. But here she stopped my recall, so of course we went for the trade. We can't let her do that unpunished. So take a trade there, get in this wave. She ults the wave, so I just base. Again, she's 0-4. I might have been able to dive her here, something like that. But why take any type of risk when I'm so far ahead? Just get my Triforce without getting any type of risk. And now I can play more aggressive. So as soon as she gets back to lane, if you touch this cannon minion, I'm going to go. You can see I'm walking through her as I jump, utilizing the Triforce movement speed so that when she dashes back to tower, I'm already cutting off her escape. So as we talked about, walking behind them as Jax, making them run through you. So burn a flash there, not going to flash follow, not going to take 3 tower shots just to kill her, and maybe Viego was there, something like that. Better for me to take her flash and just wallop her tower down. So doing exactly that, she TPs in. Again, you can see I'm mainly focused on the tower. I've completely shifted. I don't really care about killing this Gwen that much anymore. Slow pushing waves and playing for the tower. So this was a kind of a good takeaway as well. My jungler wanted to come top and play for tower, but I actually backpinged him. The reason for that, I can get it anyway. You see me tell me I could solo it. Decided against it, just backping him as enough. I'd rather him kind of play around bot side, because if he comes top and we make Gwen go 0-5 and my bot lane gets double killed, it's going to be way worse. So I'd rather just do it individually. Of course, if I couldn't do it myself, I would call him up, but we definitely can. So nice big slow push here, crash in the wave, and play for the tower. Really important to play for it on cannon wave as well, because it takes him so long to kill the cannon. So you can see here, just chip the tower down a little bit, go for the trade, get her low, and then I'm going to go for the tower on the next wave here. So walk past her, just beat down the tower. You can see, shift your mindset. When you're ahead of your opponent, the tower is way more important than just killing this guy 20 times and making him go 0-10. So you can see even there, I'm not willing to flash follow for the kill. My flash is actually more valuable than her life. And then here, the reason I'm basing. The rule I like to follow, the rule I like to teach, when you need to base, you base as soon as possible. And there I had around 200 mana. Why would I want to stay on the map and push and potentially take a skirmish when I'm so and 1500 gold as well? Better to base. So I went Merc trades here. I don't typically like early Mercs into Gwen, but TF, Varus, Nautilus have a lot, and even Viego W, they have so much point-click CC that I just need Merc, so I'm going to get completely one-shot. Even though I can block Twisted Fate W, I can't really block any of the other CC. And of course, MR is pretty nice into Gwen as well, even though I wouldn't normally buy it just for her. So slow push this wave, fog down. So now that I have a lead, I want to be involved in the game. So I'm fogging down here, kind of looking for this, but they have support gap, they have jungle gap, so I'm not going to go. The worst thing I can do here is throw the game. I actually did do a couple of throws in this game actually, but in terms of my mindset, I'm looking to make a high chance play. So push in the wave, look for a play. Can I make progress 1v1? Not really this game, because their support has got such a big gap. 1v1 I could actually, but I know I'm going to get ganked by support or jungle if I try to hit that top tier 2. So I'm just controlling the vision, looking to flank mid whenever I can. So kill the wave, fog down, look for the play, and here we go. So this was my biggest throw of the game here. The reason I shouldn't go for this is because Xin Zhao is doing Rift Herald. So already it's probably not going to be a good play. I should have waited a little bit, played it slower. I felt pressured to go in because Xayah just got, caught out. But I should have not gone in, or even if I do go in, I should have played it slower here. So here I went on the Gwen, as she TP'd in straight away. She flashed out. Good combo by Ori there. And now I should stop. I've got nothing left. I've got no Q. I've got no E. My jungler's not here. And as soon as Varus flashes here, I should just back ping and leave. This was my biggest mistake. I had nothing left on the tank, and I still kept it going. Better just to click away here. It's fine if Nautilus dies and Orianna Nautilus for Orianna is a perfect 1-for-1. We could have just taken that. So just make sure we learn from my mistake here. When your abilities are down, play the fight very, very patiently. I just got too excited. Everyone was 1 HP. The Orianna got a big ulti, but I had nothing to follow it up with, so should have played it slow. So going Sundered Sky here, I typically really like going an MR item second versus Gwen. You probably heard me talk about it in the item section. The reason I'm not here is because I'm far ahead. I'm so far ahead I don't need to, but if I was even or slightly losing, I would probably go Kanek Rukun up against Gwen so that I could beat her in side lane, as Sundered Sky pretty much does nothing in terms of the pure 1v1 up against her, especially when she takes Ignite. So push in top, fog down, so I've made Gwen answer me. So I've created a 5v4 here, exactly what we like to see onto Jax. So I went opposite side of the next objective, which was top, pushed it in, and then fog down, leading with movement, holding onto my Q. Unfortunately, I got cancelled just before I could eat, but we still get a free kill onto the Nort anyway. So really, really good play. So other than that, around L2, nothing to see there. But you can see the mindset, push in the opposite side, make the numbers advantage, flank around mid, and try to lead with movement if you can. So this was my second mistake. After this, I started playing team fights well, I promise. I'm low HP. I should just call this off. Orianna's caught out, that's fine. Back ping, back ping, back ping. This is fine. I'm going in when I'm too low HP. Just no, not worth it at all. Way too risky here. So after this, I woke up a little bit and started playing the team fights a bit better. So here, next objective spawning is going to be Artican. So normally I'd like to go top here. But the reason I don't, Orianna was already going to go there. My team was already playing topside, so it's fine for me to play for bot tower here. So I do that just now. Go bottom, break the tower, get my item. When we need a base, we base as soon as possible. So I grab my Sundered Sky, and now I'm going to be looking to either kill the Gwen or look for a fight around Artican. So I push in bottom here, fog up, try to control this area. Playing it quite slowly. Orianna's TPing really far away for some reason. So this is where I start playing the team fights a bit better. We have way more patience here. So go in, play it slowly. Just go into the TF here. Really good target selection. Burst him down. And pick up a nice kill. So here we played slower. Orianna was farming mid, of course. That's what we love to see. Go on to the try. You can see I'm always looking for the flank positions. Even this fight here, it kind of looks like a front to back, but I'm still attacking from more so the side here. You can see they're all down here. I'm attacking from a side angle, really uncomfortable for TF. So able to get a good angle. And then here as well, I tried to reposition into the try to get a flank around them, but good holding from Viego. So play it slow here. Nothing really happened after this. We just held this position. I don't even think we could have got Artican here. No, we eventually do get it. Nice. And Xayah was pushing mid. So because Xayah's pushing mid, they had to answer and we got the Artican. Can win 80 no troll. Yeah, we don't want to see what he just did. It was very troll though. But now the next objective spawning is probably going to be the dragon. So normally I like to go top. The reason I'm going bottom here is because Orianna is already top. And I'm pretty sure they're not going to be able to kill her. They could kill her technically, but I was pretty sure it would be fine. So I just go bottom and make a play onto Gwen. So the opposite side next objective is a general rule that you should be trying to do whenever you can. But if your mid can hold top fine and they're already there, it is okay sometimes to be a little bit more flexible. So we go bottom here, try to go onto the Gwen. She flashes out though, pretty short, perfectly fine. and then I just overload here and play for the kill. So yeah, just holding this area, trying to get the tier 2, play for dragon. You can see how fast we can break the tower down, especially when we have the lingering lethal tempo stacks. Q buffer out of the Varus ulti, procs under sky, and then flash this and get out. Perfectly fine. I did stay a little bit too long. I should have queued just before Varus ulted, a little bit earlier, but it's not a issue. We're still going to be fine. Base straight away, Zhonya's straight back to dragon. You can see even though I've got like more of a split pushing build, if you want to call it that, with lethal tempo, I still want to be prioritizing team fights. Our comp is so good, even though my team was behind. We have Rakan and Orianna, a lot of good wombo combo. So I was really confident in team fighting this game. If my team was playing like Pyke and stuff, and I felt like we couldn't win a fight, then maybe I would have side laned a bit more. So TF ulti's in, I'm just going to go on him, of course. This fight's relatively easy. They have to fight in our vision. You can see we have such good control. It's very hard for them. Lead with movement yet again. You know the drill by now. Kill TF, and because I held my Q from leading with movement, I have it for this follow-up here, and able just to beat up the Viego and the Varus here. So this is where lethal tempo really feels good when you fight these types of champs like Viego, Vi, at least in those jungle champs, not just your matchup as well. So Orianna, another great ulti. Killed the Varus here. And then straight back to bottom. Do dragon because my jungle was dead. Normally I wouldn't like to leash dragon, but dead jungle, you got to. And then just finish farming my Zhonyas. So now, Baron is up. This is where I'm putting Orianna bottom on purpose because she has TP. You can see I hovered my mouse over it because I don't have TP. You don't always want to do that just because your mid has TP, but especially Baron or Soul or Elder. I can't afford a situation where I'm bottom and a Baron fight happens, so I'd rather put Orianna bottom, even though there is a risk of her dying, so we can get full control of this area. So we get full vision, we hold the area here, our Xayah bases for like an item, some crappy item, nothing I can do about that, so I just push in the wave, and then we play for Baron. So great pick by Orianna, she played well at this point, after the 73 missed ultis, and now we just hold our Baron control and kill them when they walk in. So I'm just going to go on to Gwen, Viego. Normally you want to throw in backline, but in a comp like this where Gwen and Viego are their more useful champions, especially Viego, playing for just disrupting them can be more important. But if they had more frontliney team like a K'Sante, maybe K'Sante Poppy or K'Sante Sejuani or something, just those types of champions in general, then of course I'd be threatening the backline a lot more than I am in this game. So we get Baron, we base, we're in a really good position now. You can see now I'm pinging mid, bottom, and bot jungle. I don't want to play 3 lanes with this Baron, I just want to play 2 lanes, kind of shrink that map so that we can make progress on their inhibs. So pushing top, pushing mid here. I know he's going to stun me over the wall, so I E just ahead of time, predicting it, and then able to pick up a nice free kill. You can see how good Jax is into TF, he's into any other champ in the game there. He can chuck a stun and click away. Versus Jax, it's not going to work, so feeling really good in this game. Pushing mid here, and from this point it's just a matter of closing out the game, just beating down the tower, making the Gwen answer me here, and it was a pretty clean closeout. So later on in the game felt quite easy when everyone got our items, but I would say the main learning from this full game was how I played the lane. If I was not able to play the lane that well and snowball the way I did, and maintain my lead consistently, I didn't throw it in the early game, didn't risk dying to a gank or a dive. If I was not able to do that, this game would have been very, very difficult and we wouldn't have scaled up to our good team fighting comp. So the main takeaways would be lane, and then if we go all the way back to the mid game here, kind of this formula. You push in top, opposite side the objective, try to create this numbers advantage, and this is how you get the favorable fights, which was the turning point for this game. So definitely a good pattern for you to practice in the mid game. Moving on to how to counter Jax, and this section can actually be more important than you'd think even if you're not playing up against Jax that often, because as a Jax player, there are a lot of things that if you notice your opponent's not doing, that you can take full advantage of. So for that I have 5 main points to keep in mind for how to counter Jax, and if your opponent's not doing them, then you have a lot more freedom in the lane. So the first one being bait Jax to use his E. So the main way to do this is pretend like you're going to auto attack him, but you click away at the last second. So right click directly onto him, lock eyes, stick out your chest, walk towards him, and just before you get into auto range, you click backwards. If you can bait him to use his E, so that either he misses it level 1, or he has to Q onto you, the trade is going to be a lot better than if you let him lead with movement and start hitting you and hold on to his E. You want to be baiting him to use his E, and then clicking out of the range, and then when the ability's on cooldown, that's when you go. Jax's E cooldown is 17 seconds, which is extremely high for an ability that's pretty much the champion's entire kit. So when that spell is down, you need to be punishing, you need to be playing really aggressive, trying to attack him, and make it so it's really hard for him to touch the wave, especially if your champion is pretty similar in early game power. Now this also applies if you're the Jax player. If your E is down, it needs to be a switch in your mind. There are so many matchups that you can win level 1, like Fiora, like Camille, you get Pro, you can win, but if your E is on cooldown, they can completely destroy you, so you need to play differently when that spell is down, and if you're playing up against Jax, you need to play extra aggressive if his E is on cooldown. Now after that as well, making sure it's hard for him to crash the wave. So just like I'm teaching you guys when you play Jax, you need to crash your waves decisively. If you verse him, make it hard for him. Trim the wave as it comes in. Make him trade on too so you can't just hit the wave the whole time. And then block the caster minions from reaching tower so that he can't get a clean crash, he can't get a clean bounce back, and it's really uncomfortable for him to play the lane. After this, make sure you're trying to extend the lane. So by extend it, I mean make the lane go for a long time, especially if you're playing a champion that's not as resource hungry, maybe like a Darius, or a champion with just no mana in general, like an Ambessa or a Garen or something like that. You want the lane to go for as long as possible, bleed out his mana pool, maybe even especially on a champ like Garen, you can bait him to full combo you, get your passive to work, and then he's just going to go eventually, and then you can trade onto him. So make sure you extend the lane. Don't just crash a wave and base early, letting him base as well. If you can keep the lane going for a long time, especially if you're playing a champion that's not that resource hungry, like an Ambessa or a Mordekaiser or an Aatrox, it's going to benefit you way more. And finally, abuse any range advantage that you have. You should be able to hit him with your abilities on the champions I just mentioned, actually, those big three, without taking any damage yourself. Don't lead up, don't walk towards him and let him trade auto for auto. Make him Q onto you, because if he has to Q onto you straight away and not lead with movement, then he can't disengage with his Q, or he can't keep the trade going with his Q later on. So make him Q onto you by using your abilities. Hit him with your range. Of course, if you're a range champion, that's easy, but most champions will have a little bit of a range advantage. So for set, maybe you can E him before he's in range to hit you. You can't buffer his W, but more clearly, it's going to be like Aatrox Q and Ambessa Q, stuff like that. Try to abuse your range advantage whenever possible, as Jax doesn't really have that. And then just one little bonus tip, take bone plating. To be honest, it doesn't matter what champion you're versing. It's really annoying, especially when I verse range shops like a Teemo or a Kennen and they have bone plating. It makes your options very limited. So whatever champ you're playing up against Jax, run bone plating. It's going to save your life a lot of the time and help you win trades, especially if you play around the cooldown. Moving on to drafting, and this section is actually pretty important for Jax, even though you're a relatively solid blind pick, because there are certain team comps that you're going to verse where even if you're in a really bad matchup 1v1, your champ's going to be borderline unbeatable, but the reverse is true as well. You might be in a great matchup, you might be counterpicking a Camille or something like that, but the rest of their comp makes it pretty unplayable for you, so it's important to know the conditions. So we're going to be starting with what you're good with, what you want to be seeing on your team. Just in case you're playing Clash with the boys, amateur tourneys, anything like that, it can be important to know what to look out for, but in solo queue, I wouldn't worry about this one too much. But for jungle, what you want to be playing with is any form of engage and frontline, so champs like Sejuani's really good, of course, Skarner, even like a Nunu just balling in, getting the fight started, because Jax is pretty good secondary engage, pretty good follow-up, but starting the fight yourself and tanking all their CC, not really optimal, so you want your jungler to do that for you. Now for mid, it's going to be dive buddies, so champs like Galio, Sylas, or Ari, really solid, where if you play with a champion maybe like Xerath or a Hui, where they kind of need a bit of peel, it's not going to feel as good for you. Of course, you'd never not pick Jax, just because of middle AD carry champions. Jungle support are more important, but it's still important to know what to look out for. So AD carry, yet again, you're probably going to guess dive buddies, so Kai'Sa, Lucian, or Tristana. Any champion that wants to go forward with you and not rely on being peeled is going to be great, especially if they're more self-sufficient like Kai'Sa. And for support, one more time, dive buddies, so champs like Rel, Alistar, or Leona feel amazing. Any champion that can just go in, just get killed or tank the spells for you, and then you come in and steal all the glory, is going to be what you're looking out for. The most important of this section, of course, what you want to be playing with, always jungle and support. I'd never really worry about middle AD carry that much. Now for jungle, what are you bad with? What do you really want to avoid? And it's going to be the same as good with. The jungle and support are the most important. So starting with jungle, you really don't want to play with champions that kind of rely on frontline and rely on CC. Even though Jax does have a stun, you still don't want to be playing them with like a Graves, a Kayn, a Master Yi, anything like that. Especially if you're up against a Bruiser and they just go Ninja Tabbies, you're going to be pretty nerfed pretty quickly. So you want to be playing with champs that go in, not champs that are sitting there doing nothing waiting for you to go in. Especially Jax likes to play a more volatile early game. So if you have a Graves or a Kayn, whose only volatility is just tracking Raptor spawn, anything like that, it's not going to feel as good compared to champions that want to get stuck in and get a lot of early ganks going. Now for mid, it's mainly AD champions like Yasuo or Akshan don't feel that good. Even a champion like Malzahar, to give a harder example, where of course it makes a lot of sense. Yasuo's not good with Jax, you're pretty much doing the same thing, waiting for someone else to get the fight started, and he doesn't really have any CC as well. But Malzar's a champion that relies pretty heavily on peel, and he doesn't really have follow-up. So if you play Jax with like a Hui or a Xerath, at the very least, if you go in, they can follow you up. They can dump spells, so it's not too bad, but Malzar doesn't really have any follow-up for you, so those types of champs aren't really optimal with Jax. Now for AD carry, champs that rely on peel, so Kog'Maw, Aphelios, Caitlyn, they're going to bring the damage, so when you play with those champs, you typically want to be more of a frontline, front-to-backy champ, and Jax really hates that playstyle. And for support, pretty much any champion that sits back and does nothing, like a Sona or a Thresh, Senna support, anything like that, you really want something to go in, playing with an Alistar, and then the next game playing with a Sona, you're definitely going to feel a difference in how useful you are in team fights. Now, moving on to what you're good against. So this section is the most important by far, because if you know what to look out for, you're going to be able to pick Jax in games that are pretty much free wins. So for top, it's going to be matchups that are heavily auto-attack based champions. It's going to be consistent across every role, but for top as well, most matchups that are auto-attack based champions, like Yone or Kayle, are going to feel quite good for you. But to give a harder example, a matchup like Irelia, I wouldn't even say this matchup's relatively Jax favored. I'd say it's a slight Irelia favored skill matchup at the top level. However, Jax is good into Irelia across the whole game. You can mark her in team fights. She can't really do that much damage to you. And later on, if you build like Frozen Heart, your E cooldown gets quite low. It's quite hard for her to really do anything against you. So even though in lane it might not be amazing, if the Irelia is really good, if you come up against a Rel King, something like that, it's still going to be fine because your champion does well into Irelia across the whole game. But of course, chances that you win lane and win the mid game and side lane as well, like a Kayle or a Yone, is going to be even better. And for jungle, heavily auto-attack based champions. Graves, Kindred, Viego. I won't give the easy ones like Master Yi, of course that's great as well. But these types of champions is the most important for me by far. If I'm blind picking on blue, and I see they have a Master Yi or a Viego, Graves, anything like that, I'm really happy to play Jax, even though I might get hit with a Kennen or an Aurora, anything like that. Because I know my champion's usefulness in the game is going to be relatively high, even if I struggle in lane a little bit, compared to if I verse maybe a Lilia jungle, and then I get counter-picked top, I'm not really going to guarantee that I'm going to be useful at all, so seeing what the jungle picks is quite important, so even if you're blind picking, try to pick 4-5 as late as possible. Now for mid, auto-tech based champs again, Yasuo Akshan of course going to be great, but Twisted Fate is another champion that I'll see, so even if jungle's not playing that, auto-tech based champion, maybe they're playing Lee Sin or something like that, if I see a Twisted Fate, that's another great sign for me, Jax is going to be great this game. Because Jax E, for those of you who don't know, you block CC as long as it's an auto-attack based spell, like a Leona Q, Twisted Fate W, so Jax feels really good into TF, so even if your matchup's tough, your usefulness in the game is going to be high. TF can pretty much never gank you if you're aware of it, holding onto your E. So when you see especially from TF mid or like a Graves jungle, Viego jungle, you already know your champ's going to be useful, even if your matchup is difficult. Now for AD carry, it's pretty much good to every AD carry to be honest, but the ones that aren't that mobile, like a Twitch or something like that, is quite good. But to give a harder one, like a Zeri or a Lucian, even though they have mobility, they have relatively low threat. It's not really that much of a problem for you. And as long as you stun while mid-air, you're still going to stun them even if they dash away. So even those matchups with a little bit of mobility still feel great as well. And for support, pretty much just champs that don't have a lot of threat or lockdown onto you, like a Sona or a Pyke, even like a Blitzcrank has low threat. You can block Blitzcrank E as well. So those types of champions feel good, but the most important are jungle and mid, so look out for that when blind picking. Now for bad against, so what you don't want to be seeing, for top, it's just going to be a lot of disengage. So I'm not just going to give the 3 hardest matchups, but champions like Kennen, champs like Gragas or Cassante, even though Gragas and Cassante aren't really the hardest matchups you're going to run into, it's really hard to play Jax into them. Let's say you verse Gragas, you do really well, he just picked it because UGG told him it's a good counter, and you get 2 solo kills. If he knows what he's doing in a team fight, and he just keeps his eye on you, you can't really do anything. He's just going to E you every time you go in, Q, auto, like run away with phase rush, it's really hard to do anything versus disengage. Cassante as well, really easy for him to mark you, the matchup slightly in his favor too. So champions that win the lane and they have good disengage as well, they are the most annoying. I'm going to give a special mention, you're probably waiting for it, for Poppy. The reason I'm going to bring him up is because Poppy top, jungle, and support all make it hard to pick Jackson to. It makes it very, very difficult. So I'm not just going to say Poppy 300 times. Just keep in mind, if you see Poppy anywhere in the draft, Jax's value is going to be lowered significantly because she just has so much disengage, and the matchup is hard as well. Now for jungle, champs like Zyra, champs like Lilia, we'll just put Poppy in here for now. Does any form of disengage like a Sejuani maybe? Not quite as bad, but those types of champs are quite annoying, especially the high damage ones like Lilia, Zyra. Disengage where you just go in and get kited or just get beat down by plants. Really, really brutal. Most AP junglers are quite tricky for you, except for like a Nidalee, doesn't really do anything. So keep an eye out for those, more team fight based AP champions. Now for mid, it's going to be champs with either a lot of disengage, like a Hui, where if you jump in, fear, ulti, you're just going to sit there like a little shit stain, getting destroyed, or champions that can mark you really well. So champs like Akali, champs like Blanc, you can't make any progress against him in side lane, especially Akali, it's quite brutal for top lane and for mid lane. She can kill you inside kind of whenever she wants to, unless you're really far ahead, so you do need to watch out for that. My advice for Akali is to go MR item second, go Kayle Matchup, or you're not going to be able to really play the mid game against her, but even in team fights as well, you're going to be looking for a flank, and if she just goes onto you, it can be really, really annoying. And for AD carry, it's just champs with a lot of disengage like Tristana or Kai'Sa. It's really easy for them to slip away from you, especially Tristana is really brutal. Big jump, big knockback, really hard to play. Varus is another one too, as you're just going to get ultied in the head if you ever go in, but it's not quite as bad as the others. And for support, disengage. So champs like Braum, it's probably my least favorite. Champs like Alistar just got to W away or combo you. Janna as well. You don't really see Janna that often, but those types of champs that have a lot of disengage and make it hard for you to go in is what you want to be watching out for. So we've gone through all the champions, but I'll just say the TLDR, if you just want to simplify when he looks good, the more auto attack based champions they have, the better, especially from jungle and mid. Those are the most important, because those are what you're going to be interacting with for the majority of the game, and you're always good versus an AD carry anyway. So jungle and mid, what you want to be looking out for to know if Jax is the highest value pick. So high auto attack based champions is going to feel great for you, and then high CC or disengage or self peel type of champions like LeBlanc or Hui, and from jungle like Zyra, those types of champions that make it really hard for you to go in without getting destroyed is going to make your value very low. So mainly watch for jungle mid when you're deciding to blind pick Jax or even counter pick him, depending on how their comp looks. Now, we're going to be wrapping up this guide with the 5 main takeaways for you to keep fresh in your mind before you queue up, because of course this is a relatively long guide, so it's important that you prioritize the right things. So point number 1, lead with movement. Be patient with your E and your Q. You don't always need to queue onto your opponent straight away. Lead with movement in lane, lead with movement in team fights, and just play the champion a lot more patiently. Hold onto your Q until the right moment. Make sure as well in the early game, crashing your waves decisively is your top priority. This is what you need to be putting most of your time into to learn and master, because if you're not crashing waves well, your lane's going to get stuck, you're going to miss your back timer, and you are going to lose a lane pretty consistently. So this is going to be your number 1 skill to get the hang of before you move on to other things in terms of laning and trading and things of that nature. Now on top of this point, missing a back timer can completely ruin your lane. So your number 1 priority while you're in the game, while you are playing the lane, is your back timer. It has to be more important than helping your jungler, more important than leashing grubs, a tower plate even. You need to prioritize your back timers as number 1, because if you're winning lane and you miss one base, you're going to lose a lane after that if they come back to lane and you can no longer recall. Now for team fighting, the number 1 thing is holding your spells is extremely important. This kind of ties into leading with movement, but I'm just going to reiterate it, because if you don't lead with movement in fights, if your instinct is, oh shit, a fight's starting out, I see a champion on my screen, or that AD carry looks pretty tasty, and you just queue onto their head straight away, your impact is going to be way lower, it's not going to be very consistent. You need to start the fight with a patient mindset, walk towards them, hold Q, hold E, and wait for the right moment to strike, because if you lead with Q every time, and they flash, or you get CC'd, you're not going to be that impactful. And finally, our rule for the mid game, the number 1 rule. If you can't make progress in side lane 1v1, look to create a numbers advantage team fight. Now, if you don't know if you can make progress or not, it's fine to experiment, try to figure it out, but don't be delusional about it. Just because you're 1-0 up against the Kennen doesn't mean he can't just ult you if you walk up and hit the tower. You're not going to be able to make progress, so make sure you follow that rule. If you feel like we can't make progress, you look to attack them on mid, you look for a 5v4 on dragon, TP flank, anything like that, and not just farming inside and trading waves with your opponent when your champion is very useful in team fights as well. Alright everyone, that's it for now. If you made it this far in the video, congratulations, it was definitely a long one, and I hope you do well in your games, and best of luck on your Jax journey. This video definitely took a lot of time and effort to make, so I'm excited to see what you guys think about it, and any support is greatly appreciated. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you all for the next one.